Rain lashes the manor as a terrified boy hears a monster's voice from the shadows. Duke Rubelite trembles, convinced the monster hidden underground is coming to take his life. A narrative description introduces Duke Rubelite as the leader of a nation blessed by God. His son's auditory hallucinations force the Duke to remember a dark incident from 10 years ago. The Duke's memory fixates on the underground cell where he imprisoned his young daughter. A vision of the Duke's cursed eldest daughter, Reyna Rubelite, appears as a dark omen. Narrative text explains that Reyna wielded sinister black magic at 8 and was eventually entombed. Duke Rubelite bites his thumb nervously, vowing to keep the girl's existence a permanent secret. Guards descend into the lightless dungeon following the Duke's sudden command to retrieve Reyna immediately. The Duke and his retainers stand in the hallway, sweating profusely as they wait in fear. A man questions what is happening as dark energy begins to swirl around 2 bare feet. A bound, silver-haired girl emerges from the darkness, prompting a horrified shout from the Duke. The Duke orders Reyna taken to the carriage, expressing his physical revulsion at her appearance. Ancient prophecies regarding the world-ending power of the Demon King flash through the Duke's mind. As prophecy predicts the start of a demonic era, the bound girl radiates terrifying dark power. Recoiling in panic, the Duke identifies the silver-haired girl as the prophesied Demon King of Ruin. Staff members fear the ancient prophecy is true while a woman desperately grabs a stone figurine. The woman throws the stone angel at Reyna's head, causing a momentary silence among the staff. The small angel statuette falls to the floor after striking the bound, silver-haired girl. Convincingly terrified, the Duke believes they will all be slaughtered just as the prophecy foretold. A maid points out that various household treasures are also being claimed for the journey. Reyna stands amidst the swirling darkness, asserting that everything in the mansion now belongs to her.
A servant reports that the carriage is fully loaded as Reyna is escorted toward the exit.
Reyna casts a piercing glare at the Duke, causing him to flinch in absolute silent terror. Bound by rope, Reyna walks past her cowering father and the servants toward her new life. Duke Rubelite collapses to the ground, paralyzed by fear as his daughter passes by him. The Duke grovels on the floor, pleading for the silver-haired girl to spare his miserable life. The heavy ropes binding Reyna's body suddenly snap and burn away under her intense dark power. Reyna leans down over the trembling man, her presence looming over him like a dark shadow.
She smiles, explaining that these treasures are merely repayment for the suffering of her lost childhood.
Reyna stares out of the carriage window as she is finally driven away from her prison. The Duke and his staff watch the carriage leave, questioning if their ordeal has truly ended. Duke Rubelite worries that Reyna's treatment means she will never be satisfied with just their survival. A voice from within the carriage suddenly commands the driver to stop the vehicle immediately. The carriage halts, and Reyna pulls the curtain back to look once more at her family. Seeing her gaze, the Duke and his wife are seized by a fresh wave of panic. Reyna asks for a brief moment of their time, causing the group to gasp in anticipation.
Well, that's one way to ruin a dramatic exit. She just wanted a pillow for her neck.
The carriage finally departs for good, leaving the stunned household behind on the mansion's driveway.
The Duke and his servants stand in an eerie silence, their faces completely drained of life. A close-up shows the Duke taking a nervous gulp as the carriage disappears from his sight. While Reyna sleeps comfortably with her statuette, the Duke prays for her to quietly vanish forever. Dark energy erupts from the carriage, causing the panicked driver to wonder what is happening. The driver looks back in horror at the dark aura, fearing the rumored Demon King's return. A hand smashes through the carriage wall, sending the terrified driver into a fit of screaming. The horses are jerked to a stop as the driver's screams echo through the quiet woods. The driver lies unconscious on the grass, foaming at the mouth from the sheer mental shock. Reyna smiles sheepishly and admits that she has messed up her plan to act normal. Standing over the unconscious man, Reyna sighs and laments her repeated failure to control her strength. Reyna reflects on her failed attempt to knock gently, realizing she accidentally demolished the carriage wall. Reyna Rubelite radiates a dark aura, presented as the infamous antagonist of her world. In a game flashback, the heroes pity the villain while Reyna demands their silence.
Watching her former self's defeat, the silver-haired girl finds the power of love pathetic.
She questions the circumstances that led her to inhabit such a miserable, defeated character.
In a past life, she was the sickly youngest daughter in a struggling, large family.
The black-haired girl lies in her hospital bed, weary from a lifetime of physical weakness. Bedridden and exhausted, she spent her final moments harboring deep resentment toward her unfair fate. A wide view of the hospital room emphasizes the girl's isolation during her terminal illness. Resigning herself to the end, she prepares to fade away into an eternal, quiet void. Following her death, she walks through a bright, ethereal realm toward a mysterious new destination. She pauses in the white void, looking back at the life she left behind with uncertainty. The black-haired girl stares ahead, waiting to see what lies beyond the threshold of mortality. She identifies a presence as God and critiques its pity given her difficult human existence. Expecting punishment for her defiance, she questions if she is destined for a dark afterlife.
The girl gazes upward, wondering if her bitterness toward God will result in eternal damnation.
She clenches her fist, recalling how her previous life was devoid of joy until the end. A divine light surrounds her as a voice announces she will be given a second life. Surprised by the sudden offer, the black-haired girl questions the reality of being reborn once more. A narration describes her personality as eccentric while she considers the possibilities of her new life. A vision of a heroic, blonde-haired figure appears, representing the ideal life she hopes for. She desperately wishes to be reincarnated as the beloved heroine rather than a tragic side character. Convinced of her choice, she looks forward to finally experiencing a life filled with love. She focuses her resolve on the specific person she wants to become in her next existence. As she transitions, she tries to recall the name of the protagonist from her favorite game. She struggles to remember the heroine's name, noting the game was titled With the Power of Love. She realizes the protagonist's name is unknown since players chose it themselves at the start. Her memory shifts to the level 99 mastermind and demon king, the villainous Reina Rubelite. A sudden realization hits her chibi-styled self, causing her to panic at a looming mistake. Caught in a swirling vortex, she shouts in alarm as the reincarnation process goes horribly wrong. She understands too late that she intended to be the hero, not the master villain. Waking up as Reina Rubelite, she finds herself trapped in a dark, lightning-filled dungeon cell. Kneeling in the straw, she realizes with horror that she has inherited a prisoner's life. Seeing the Duke's mansion through the bars, she begs for a different chance to start over. The silver-haired girl screams in terror as cockroaches swarm the floor, shattering her composed facade. Clutching her chest, she resolves to devise a survival plan despite her grim current situation. Aware of the game's tragic plot, she vows to prevent the impending destruction of the world. She decides her primary goal is to gain wealth and distance herself from the narrative. Standing by the carriage, Reina radiates a dark aura as she prepares for the next journey. The silver-haired girl warns the trembling driver that his fainting would be a major inconvenience. She sharply commands the cowering man to pull himself together and resume his duties immediately. Reina smiles darkly and asks the driver how he feels now that he has regained consciousness. The driver grovels on the grass, frantically apologizing for his weakness in her terrifying presence. Reina insists she was merely worried about his safety, but the terrified man only apologizes further. Sitting comfortably inside the carriage, Reina watches the forest pass by as they travel onward.
Leaning out the carriage window, the silver-haired girl asks the driver when they will finally arrive.
The driver explains they will reach the teleportation stone soon and asks her to wait longer. Reina realizes that using restricted teleportation stones proves her family's desperate rush to exile her. Accepting her fate as the world-destroying demon king, Reina reflects on her family's cold treatment. Hooded guards check the Duke's official request before allowing the carriage to pass through the gate. The silver-haired girl gazes at the massive, glowing teleportation stone, impressed by its power in person. Peering from the carriage window, Reina reflects that she has truly entered the game world. A figure in a white cloak holds a glowing staff upright against the bright white light. The silver-haired girl flinches as a blinding light suddenly erupts from outside of the carriage window. Squinting against the glare, Reina thinks to herself that the outside light is incredibly bright. A massive gust of wind blows across the snowy landscape as the carriage reaches its destination. Stepping out of the vehicle, Reina's bare feet sink into the cold snow as she pauses. Reina looks at the distant frozen mansion and asks if this is really the correct location. The driver explains that they have safely arrived at the Mansion of the Abyss, located in the Winter Snow Duchy, though Reina looks visibly annoyed. A title card identifies the new setting as the Winter Snow Duchy, north of the Empire. Narrative text explains that a man was once entrusted with the duty of defending the Empire. Narration describes the family's ancient abilities that have been passed down for over 1,000 years. A curse from the Demon King fell upon the ducal family, bringing ruin to their home. Legions of monsters began flooding the northern lands, overwhelming the defenses of the frozen territory. Tragic narration reveals the deaths of the previous Duke and Duchess amid the overwhelming chaos. The eldest son, Rothstein, survived the tragedy and eventually inherited the family's great ancient power. Ancient prophecies state that the Demon King's primary goal is to eventually occupy the northern lands. The High Priest warns that the ducal family is the first target and apologizes for his inability to prevent the Demon King's curse. Bowing low, the priest offers his condolences while Rothstein stands silently in the empty white void. A close-up shows the blue-haired man, Rothstein, looking stoic despite the weight of his responsibilities. An unknown demon lord sits upon a throne, described as a silent existence none have witnessed. While workers bury the late Duke and Duchess, the narration questions if the Demon King exists. Rothstein stands before the graves of his parents, surrounded by mourning staff in a somber ceremony. Overcome by grief, Rothstein kneels before the gravestones as snow falls quietly over the funeral grounds. Years later, the blue-haired man works at his desk, focused on writing with a white quill. A servant's legs are seen running down a hallway while he shouts for the Duke's attention. Entering the office, the messenger reports that a new prophecy warns of monsters coming from the Mansion of the Abyss. Standing at his desk, Rothstein sighs and remarks that another prophecy has arrived once again. Looking toward the door, Rothstein asks about the status of the preparations for their upcoming journey. A messenger confirms that everyone is currently on standby at the barracks and ready to leave at a moment's notice.
Rothstein announces they will depart immediately as his heavy blue cloak snaps behind him. Rothstein sets his sights on the Mansion of the Abyss, resolved to carry out his family's duty.
A final thought confirms his intent to eliminate every last monster and leave nothing behind. Reyna looks up at the massive mansion and lets out a sudden, mocking laugh. Standing in the snow, Reyna remarks that the mansion's name is accurate since she might freeze. Reyna's dark energy flares as she mumbles insults toward Duke Rubelite, terrifying the poor carriage driver. Reyna realizes the driver passed out again and notes that her power goes wild when she is angry.
Pushing against the handle, Reyna wonders why the massive mansion door will not open for her.
Dragging the driver, Reyna realizes the door is frozen shut while struggling with cold, hunger, and anger. As dark energy melts the handle, Reyna decides to try controlling her power like she did previously. Narration explains that Reyna intends to control her power just as she did in the castle. Recalling the dungeon, Reyna remembers a mysterious voice commanding the Demon Lord to control the surrounding darkness. She wonders who is talking to her. The voice in the flashback tells the Demon Lord not to escape from the shadows within her. Focusing her will, Reyna is relieved to find that her attempt to control the energy worked. Dark purple energy flickers and burns around Reyna's inner strength. A massive burst of magical energy explodes from the mansion, illuminating the dark, snowy woods. The mansion's doors finally open, and Reyna thinks to herself that she has successfully completed the task.
The driver sleeps soundly in a warm bed, having been moved inside the mansion by Reyna.
Reyna stands alone in the dark room, observing her new surroundings with a serious expression. Walking through the hallway, Reyna places her hand on the wall to maintain a comfortable, warm temperature. Reyna relaxes in a hot bubble bath, sighing contentedly as she finally feels at home here. Reyna notes that while the mansion has food, everything is frozen and requires melting. The silver-haired girl grips the handles of a large wardrobe, preparing to open it.
Reyna pulls open the doors to reveal a closet full of colorful, elaborate dresses.
She finds several dresses and notes that despite the outdated style, they will suffice.
Dressing in a grand red gown, Reyna poses confidently and lets out a satisfied sigh.
Hearing a knock, Reyna permits the coachman to enter the room as she adjusts. The terrified coachman grovels, desperately begging to return home to his family and in-laws. Reyna considers his request but worries about the consequences if he actually returns to the capital. She realizes that her father, the Duke, will not treat the witness with any mercy. Recalling the original story, Reyna remembers how the Duke slaughtered everyone who saw her power. She concludes that the coachman and his family are likely already targeted for elimination. Looking solemn, the silver-haired girl whispers a quiet apology to the man for his situation. Reyna manifests a dark aura and sternly forbids the terrified man from returning home. She commands him to remain and serve her until a better opportunity for his safety arises. A golden statue of a man in uniform stands tall, glowing with a bright celestial light. A segment of the golden statue falls to the ground, surrounded by a magical purple energy. The golden hand of the statue sits on the floor, sparkling with an expensive, brilliant light. Reyna presents the golden treasure, informing the man that there is plenty of food available. The coachman cries tears of joy, vowing eternal loyalty to Reyna as his new master.
At his desk, Duke Rubelite bites his thumb in anxiety while thinking about Reyna's potential.
The Duke envisions Reyna transforming into the Demon King and bringing ruin to their noble family. Slamming his desk, the Duke demands to know if Reyna has reached her destination yet. A messenger confirms that Reyna should have arrived at the Mansion of the Abyss by now.
Duke Rubelite resolves to send an assassin to ensure that Reyna is removed from existence.
A central message emphasizes his ruthless intent to erase her from the world completely. Standing in the snow, Reyna clutches her chest as she feels her heart beating rapidly. She clenches her fist, sensing an intense internal pressure that feels like it might explode. A small, round, white creature sits in the snow, catching the excited attention of Chibi Reyna. Reyna's eyes sparkle with delight as she asks if the tiny creature just growled at her.
She gently pets the creature, trying to comfort it despite the animal's clear, visible discomfort.
The creature quickly scurries away, leaving Reyna surprised as she asks if it is fleeing. Chibi Reyna blushes with excitement, imagining herself as the master of all kinds of monsters. A dreamlike vision shows Reyna happily hugging a variety of colorful and cute monster creatures. Overcome with joy, the silver-haired girl shakes with excitement at the prospect of new friends. A dark, towering shadow looms behind Reyna, asking what she is doing in this place. Rothstein stands before the cowering girl, his presence marked by a long, heavy blue cloak. The blue-haired man looks down with a stoic and cold expression at the small girl. Reyna gazes up at him in awe, struck by his impressive and handsome appearance. Rothstein identifies the area as dangerous and commands Reyna to leave the mansion immediately. Reyna's expression shifts to shock and frustration as she processes the man's rude demand. Pointing her finger, Reyna angrily tells him he has no right to order her around. She huffs and complains about his rudeness while a nervous soldier stands behind the Duke. Rothstein stares at her in confusion, wondering what is wrong with the girl's strange behavior. Radiating a massive, oppressive aura, Reyna declares the property is hers and orders him out. Rostin agrees to leave for a monster hunt but promises to return for her later. The Duke and his soldier walk away through the snow, leaving Reyna standing her ground.
The soldier remarks that this is the first resident at the mansion in a long time. Rostin maintains that the mansion is too dangerous for anyone to be living in now.
He pauses and looks back, sensing that something unusual is happening around the mansion grounds. The massive mansion of the Abyss stands silent and imposing under the Winter Empire sky. Reyna takes a bite of dried meat while looking ahead with a mischievous lot. Observing the blue-haired man, Reyna wonders if his handsome looks mean he is a key character. Reyna sits dejectedly inside the mansion, feeling stressed by the sudden demand for her departure. Crying out in frustration, Reyna mourns the loss of her peaceful and wealthy retirement plan.
A bold message appears declaring Reyna's absolute refusal to leave the mansion of the Abyss.
A formal document reveals the mansion's ownership was transferred due to 5 years of unpaid taxes. A soldier informs Reyna that the house belongs to Duke Rostine, ordering her to leave immediately. Rostine asks for confirmation regarding the girl's stubborn refusal to vacate the mansion grounds. The messenger identifies Reyna as the princess of the Rubelite family, surprising the stoic Rostine. Rosentine dismisses the problem, assuming monsters will eventually scare the princess into leaving on her own.
The full moon glows brightly in the silent, star-filled night sky above the snowy duchy. Heavy footsteps echo through the quiet mansion hallway as someone approaches a bedroom door.
Rostine stands in a dimly lit bedroom, observing a small, glowing white creature on the bed. The blue-haired man softly calls out to the creature, identifying the tiny being as Luca. Looking weary, Rostine notes that the increasing monster activity signals the Demon King's imminent arrival. Rostine looks down at Luca, gently encouraging the creature to endure just a little while longer. Staring out the window, Rostine vows to definitely eliminate the Demon King once and for all. He resolves to lift the curse from the boy, Luca, who is currently sleeping nearby. Narration explains the mansion is now livable thanks to magic and the coachman's diligent cleaning. Looking out from a window, Reyna realizes a major problem exists with her current living situation. She observes the soldiers outside, noting the official transfer of ownership to the Duke of the North. The food warehouse is revealed to be empty, lacking any fresh vegetables or fruit for sustenance. Reyna learns that a constant blizzard now prevents any crops from growing in the Northern Territory. A somber thought reflects on the fact that Reyna has done nothing to deserve this hardship.
At the palace, the high priest informs Duke Rubelite that the prophecy is beginning to deviate.
Duke Rubelite looks worried, questioning the implications of a prophecy that no longer follows its course. A fine steak is sliced as the narration marks a critical turning point in the timeline. The high priest notes the Demon King should have already appeared in the East by now. Duke Rubelite stares intensely, feeling the weight of the priest's unsettling news about the Demon King. Eating calmly, the high priest blames the current issues on his own lack of divine virtue.
Panicked, Duke Rubelite denies the priest's claim and insists there must be another underlying cause.
A servant interrupts the meal to announce the arrival of Duke Wintersnow from the frozen north. The messenger adds that the Duke wishes to discuss food shortages and the young lady Reyna. The high priest remains silent, observing the tense atmosphere as their unexpected guest finally arrives. Rostine enters the room, his presence commandingly cold and dignified as he prepares for the meeting. Gathering together, Rostine explains that the food shortage in the north has become a serious crisis. Rostine directly requests food support from Duke Rubelite to save his people from starvation. Duke Rubelite looks on with a grim expression, processing the sudden and heavy request for aid. The high priest agrees that the food shortage is a concern that affects the entire empire. He suggests using grain from the eastern regions to support the struggling residents of the north. Rostine shifts the topic to the blizzard, looking toward the high priest for a deeper explanation. The blue-haired man expresses his deep concern for the residents suffering in the harsh, constant cold. Looking solemn, the high priest admits his pity for the people enduring the blizzard's relentless conditions. The priest warns that the blizzard is necessary to maintain the body of the Duke's brother, Luca. A close-up reveals Rostine's pained expression as he thinks about the safety of his younger brother. The high priest asks Rostine for his opinion regarding the young princess currently staying at the mansion. Rostine hesitates to answer, looking away as he reflects on his brief encounter with the stubborn girl. Duke Rubelite looks increasingly uncomfortable as the conversation shifts toward the daughter he abandoned. Back in the Northern Duchy, townspeople celebrate as the Duke returns with much-needed food supplies.
Rostine oversees the distribution, commanding his soldiers to provide one portion to every waiting resident.
Citizens receive meager rations as an old woman thanks the guard while he calls, "Next." The man's hand sifts through the grain, noting it is heavily mixed with soil and gravel. Veronica asks if they truly expect people to eat this as a man behind her calls her name. A man and woman urge Veronica to be grateful for the Duke's supplies from the east. Veronica decides she can no longer live like this and contemplates leaving the north for good. Someone calls out to Veronica as she stands alone in the middle of the snowy courtyard.
Reyna thinks Veronica must be heartbroken after losing the ability to harvest her own high-quality crops.
The silver-haired girl stares ahead with a cold, analytical gaze reflecting the gravity of the situation. Reyna tells the coachman to wait, explaining that she needs to speak with the Duke personally. The coachman watches in shock as Reyna walks away with a determined and graceful stride.
Rothstein looks back with a stoic expression, his sharp blue eyes fixed on the approaching girl. Passing through the crowd, Reyna moves with urgency, her purple cloak billowing in the winter wind. A profile view highlights Reyna's focused expression as she prepares for a difficult confrontation. Rothstein maintains a cool, detached look, seemingly unmoved by the chaos of the rationing process. Duke Rubelite states Reyna is not his daughter and her fate is irrelevant to his family. Watching Reyna from a distance, Rothstein thinks her behavior is shallow despite her noble upbringing. A violent red splash emphasizes the narration describing Reyna as a fundamentally vicious and cruel woman. Narration notes that Reyna discovered land formerly used for farming while surveying the Abyss mansion grounds. Reyna looks at the frozen wasteland, realizing her power is the only thing keeping the mansion warm. Standing in the town square, Reyna calls out to Veronica, who is busy with her work. Veronica turns around, looking exhausted and weary from the constant struggle against the harsh elements. Text boxes describe Reyna's noble appearance, noting her purple eyes, silver red hair, and luxurious dress. Veronica recognizes Reyna while the girl asks if she has been growing high-quality crops in secret. Veronica confirms she worked tirelessly to cultivate crops despite the North's incredibly barren and frozen soil. A sepia flashback shows Veronica happily sharing a successful and bountiful harvest with her fellow villagers. With a pained look, Veronica laments that their days of agricultural success are completely over now. Heavy winds whip across the mountains as Veronica explains no crops can survive this endless blizzard. Cheapy Veronica declares she would rush in and fight the devil responsible for the snowstorm. Reyna asks if building a greenhouse would make growing crops possible despite the constant snowstorm. Reyna smirks confidently, telling a confused Veronica that her unique power will provide the necessary heat. A soldier reports the end of rationing to Rothstein, who acknowledges the team's hard work. Rothstein turns his head, his sharp profile silhouetted against the backdrop of the snowy village. A soldier asks where the Duke is heading as Rothstein begins to walk away with purpose. Rothstein looks grim, stating that he must go and warn the princess once again. Reyna finds Veronica fallen on the ground, extending a hand to the frightened and surprised woman. Veronica stares up in terror, her face pale as she looks at the intimidating silver-haired girl. Reyna looks down with an intense, unreadable expression that further unnerves the woman on the ground. Rothstein arrives on the scene, sternly asking Reyna if she is harassing the local townspeople again. Reyna turns back to look at the Duke while Veronica remains seated on the snowy path. Rothstein commands Reyna to come with him, stating his intention to take her back home immediately. Reyna looks surprised as Rothstein promises to return her to the mansion she'll soon be leaving. Inside the quiet carriage, the two sit across from each other in a tense, silent atmosphere. Rothstein states that under normal circumstances, he definitely would have asked her to leave the mansion. Reyna feels déjà vu, comparing being scolded by Rothstein to her past life's trouble with landlords. Reyna resolves to buy her own home and asks Rothstein why he won't sell the mansion. Caught off guard by the question, Rothstein looks at Reyna while she asks if he needs money. Rothstein explains the mansion is unsuitable for a noble lady due to the blizzards and monsters. Reyna privately insults Rothstein for treating her like a naive girl while claiming her devilish identity. Reyna smiles broadly, claiming she believes the legendary saintess will appear and save the entire world. Rothstein stares at her with a calm, stoic expression, seemingly processing her strange and unexpected claims. Reyna stares forward with a cold, piercing gaze during the tense and silent carriage ride. Rothstein notes that while the devil remains hidden, its malevolent influence is already being felt. Rothstein dismisses the idea of a savior, stating that legendary saintesses only exist within ancient prophecies. Rothstein refuses to rely on superstitions for northern safety, while Reyna recalls his insignificant game presence. Reyna observes the Duke's intense sense of duty, acknowledging his solitary struggle to protect the North. Rothstein maintains a silent, stoic expression as he continues to reflect on their dire current situation. Rothstein warns Reyna to stop harassing commoners, condemning nobles who act solely on their selfish whims. Deeply frustrated by her perceived behavior, Rothstein thinks that he has no desire to witness it. Stunned by the sudden accusation, Reyna looks at the Duke with a shocked and confused expression. Reyna urgently defends herself, insisting she did not harass Veronica despite the Duke's stern and judgmental assumptions. A heavy, oppressive atmosphere suddenly descends upon Reyna as she reacts to an unexpected external sensation. Rothstein quickly senses something unusual in the air, questioning the strange phenomenon that just occurred nearby. The scene shifts as the carriage speeds across the snowy plains with a mysterious figure perched atop. Noticing an imminent threat, the carriage driver's face pales with intense fear and overwhelming shock. A northern knight on horseback remains alert, sensing the approaching danger through the heavy winter winds. From above, the carriage appears vulnerable as a group of red-cloaked riders begins their coordinated ambush. The group of hostile riders closes in on the carriage, tracking their target through the relentless snowstorm. A scarred rider threatens the panicked driver with a sword, demanding the carriage come to a halt. The rider narrows down the target, identifying that they are looking for a specific noblewoman. Rothstein prepares for battle while the rider demands the woman with silver hair and red eyes. Violence erupts as a knight is struck down by the attackers during the chaotic opening of the skirmish. The bald attacker ruthlessly pursues the northern soldiers, determined to break through their defensive line. Rothstein leaps from the carriage into the fray, his dark cloak billowing as he joins the battle. With a powerful strike, the Duke easily overpowers an attacker, sending the man tumbling into the snow. The remaining bandits recoil in shock, realizing that they have underestimated the strength of their formidable opponent.
Standing tall with his blade drawn, Rothstein is revealed as the legendary and powerful Duke of the North.
Rothstein stares down his enemies with focused intensity, ready to eliminate anyone threatening the safety of his carriage.
The ambushers find the situation strange as Rothstein's overwhelming presence begins to turn the tide of battle.
Narration emphasizes that the primary goal of the attack was to capture a specific woman at any cost. The carriage remains stationary in the frozen wasteland as the confrontation between the Duke and bandits escalates.
Rothstein stands alongside his last remaining guard, both men prepared to defend Reyna against the surrounding enemies. Rothstein wonders why such a large group was hired for this mission as the enemies begin retreating.
The panicked riders realize they were not warned about the Duke's personal involvement in this transport. Rothstein issues a final warning, demanding the enemies surrender immediately or face instant and cold-blooded execution. Intimidated by the Duke's cold command, the bandits flinch and hesitate to make their next move.
From a distance, a hidden figure in purple robes watches the failure, insulting the incompetence of the riders.
A mage reveals himself, raising a staff to conjure a massive spell intended to stop the Duke. The mage decides to take matters into his own hands, intending to personally capture the silver-haired lady.
Rothstein realizes too late that a mage had been using invisible magic to hide during the initial attack.
The mage unleashes his true power, summoning dozens of glowing ice blades that hover high in the sky.
With a violent gesture, the mage commands the ice weaponry to rain down upon the trapped carriage.
A barrage of magical ice blades streaks toward the target, threatening to impale everything in their path.
Rothstein continues to fight off the riders even as the deadly magical storm begins falling all around them.
The carriage is bombarded by the mage's ice magic, creating a scene of total destruction and frozen chaos.
Rothstein swings his sword with desperate speed, trying to protect the carriage while fighting multiple opponents at once. Feeling the weight of the situation, the Duke grits his teeth and curses the mage's unexpected interference.
Rothstein shouts an urgent warning as a particularly large magical projectile hurtles toward the carriage's vulnerable side.
Inside the carriage, Reyna sits motionless as the ice blades approach while a guard shouts for her safety.
The ice blades surround the carriage in a deadly cage, yet Reyna remains calm amidst the encroaching shadows.
Reyna's eyes glow with a menacing red light, signaling the awakening of her hidden and dangerous powers.
A massive explosion of pink and white energy erupts from the carriage, obliterating the surrounding threat.
Shards of ice are pulverized into dust as the overwhelming magical shockwave ripples through the air.
The Northern Guard grits his teeth, bracing himself against the intense pressure of the sudden blast.
The powerful wave of magic sends the attackers flying, clearing the path around the stationary carriage.
Wide-eyed and trembling, the mage watches in absolute horror as his ice magic is easily shattered.
The force of the explosion strips the mage of his robes, leaving him vulnerable and exposed.
Bandits are thrown backward into the snow, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the princess's power.
Reyna emerges from the wreckage, surrounded by dark flames, while the attackers shiver in the snow.
Rothstein realizes that the ominous black flame possesses the terrifying power to incinerate everything in existence. 3 defeated mercenaries huddled together in the freezing cold, stripped of their clothing by Reyna's magic.
Rothstein stares at the silver-haired princess, his expression a mixture of profound shock and growing suspicion.
Dark, wispy flames lick at the ground as Reyna takes a deliberate step toward her defeated enemies.
Reyna explains to Rothstein that she was merely showing Veronica the specific type of magic she uses.
The shivering mage gazes up at Reyna, desperately wondering what kind of terrifying power she truly possesses.
The mage laments that his contract to kill a girl never mentioned her use of black magic.
Reyna's eyes glow as she notes her power is identical to that of the legendary Demon King.
Reyna expresses her hope that the Duke will finally clear up the misunderstanding regarding her recent actions.
The silver-haired princess stands amidst the falling snow, her long hair billowing in the cold winter wind.
Rothstein looks away, deeply troubled by the display of dark magic he has just witnessed firsthand today.
The Duke remains silent, his sharp gaze fixed on the horizon as he processes the current situation.
Reyna reaches out, her small hand coming to rest near the hilt of the Duke's unsheathed sword.
Reyna maintains a calm and regal composure despite the chaos and violence that recently surrounded the carriage.
Rothstein grips his sword tightly, his knuckles turning white as he stands his ground in the snow.
Dark energy continues to swirl around Reyna as she stands victoriously beside the heavily damaged transport carriage.
Rothstein demands that the princess provide him with a truly convincing reason for her strange magical display.
An extreme close-up focuses on Rothstein's intense blue eye as he stares intently at the mysterious girl.
Rothstein questions Reyna about why she is utilizing such a dark and ominous form of black magic. Reyna stares back with wide red eyes, looking surprised by the Duke's direct and forceful interrogation.
The purple and black aura of her magic slowly begins to dissipate as the tension remains high.
Back in the village, a banner bearing a lion's head emblem flutters against the snowy backdrop.
A commoner reaches out with both hands into the falling snow, highlighting the harsh northern winter conditions.
Veronica admits that she was greatly surprised by the events that unfolded earlier with the noble lady.
Veronica recalls being engulfed by the lady's harmless yet intense black flames during their recent encounter together.
Looking downward with a solemn expression, Veronica reflects on the princess's true intentions and mysterious inner nature.
A man in the village calls out to Veronica as she prepares to ride away on horseback.
The man shouts, asking where she is going and expressing disbelief that she would leave them behind.
A woman informs him that Veronica isn't leaving permanently, leaving the man confused about her actual destination.
Veronica gallops away on her horse, heading toward the mountains through the heavy and relentless winter snowstorm.
Text confirms that Veronica has made the bold decision to head toward the dangerous abyssal mansion alone.
Villagers gossip in a tavern about the Rubelite princess moving into the notoriously dangerous mansion of the abyss.
Two men clink their wooden mugs together, laughing as they discuss the scandalous news regarding the princess.
A soldier observes the scene, privately thinking that the princess must be completely and utterly insane.
Reina smirks as the narration wonders if she is actually a crazy version of the Demon King. A chibi witch floats above Rostein and Reina, reminding readers to visit the website for more updates.
Rostein thinks that Reina burned everything in her path while the naked mercenaries shiver in the snow.
Gazing at the princess, Rostein concludes that the true limits of her power are simply beyond imagination.
Rostein asks why she approached Veronica and if she intended to brainwash the woman into a subordinate, which Reina repeats.
Reina reacts with shock and indignation, asking if the Duke is actually interrogating her at this moment.
Reina points her finger, telling Rostein that he should be questioning the mercenaries instead of her right now.
The defeated mage huddles on the ground, shivering uncontrollably after being stripped of his dignity and magic.
The attacker screams for a retreat as the battle turns against his group. Shivering and defeated, the naked mercenaries huddle together in the freezing northern snow.
A fallen mercenary lies motionless against the backdrop of an ornate, glowing magical circle.
Terrified by the sight of Reina, the shivering survivors cry out in absolute panic.
Surveying the empty wasteland, Reina notes that all their attackers have finally run away.
A lone figure flees the scene, blaming the Duke for the catastrophic failure of their mission.
Reina looks on with a mixture of shock and exhaustion as the immediate threat dissipates.
Rostein remains on high alert, his sharp gaze fixed intently on the silver-haired princess.
Pointing his sword, Rostein declares that black magic is forbidden and impossible for any wizard to learn.
Reina stares back skeptically, asking if he truly believes she is the legendary Demon King.
Defiant and indignant, Reina questions if her use of magic is the only basis for his accusation.
Panicked, Reina's face contorts as she realizes he is right and decides to deny everything immediately.
Reina maintains her innocence, insisting to the Duke that she was simply a victim of the attack.
She argues that regardless of the magic's origin, she only acted in self-defense against her pursuers. The Duke remains silent, his expression unreadable as he processes the princess's desperate explanation. Eerie narration confirms that the terrifying power Reina displayed is undoubtedly that of the Demon King.
Reina looks downward, her eyes reflecting a profound sense of sadness and isolation in the snow.
Rostein finally speaks, stating there is one definitive way to confirm her true identity today.
He reveals that his parents died from the Demon King's curse, yet he miraculously survived it. A bead of sweat rolls down Reina's face as the tension between them reaches a breaking point.
Rostein begins to sheath his weapon, his movements deliberate and calm despite the heavy atmosphere. With a cold and challenging stare, the Duke of the North commands Reina to attack him.
Rostein believes his past survival makes him a litmus test, while Reina wonders how she could attack.
A dark, monstrous voice bellows for blood, commanding the princess to kill the man before her.
The shadow within her whispers that this is the perfect opportunity to strike him down. Reina's red eyes glow with murderous intent as she considers ending the Duke's life right now.
Suddenly, her expression softens into pure joy at the thought of finally owning her own home.
The frantic attendant rushes between them, screaming that this whole situation is just a big misunderstanding. He explains that her magic provided hot water and warmth, leaving the Duke completely baffled.
The attendant zealously defends his lady, claiming her usefulness far outweighs any concerns about her identity.
In a dramatic display of loyalty, the attendant pleads for mercy before the confused royal pair.
Reina looks at her servant with disbelief, hurt that even he thought she was the Demon King.
From a distance, the group watches as a lone rider begins a journey across the frozen landscape.
Galloping away, Veronica wonders what bizarre events are currently unfolding back at the transport carriage.
Blood drips onto the cold stone floor near the feet of a man standing over the carnage.
A man walks through a hall filled with bodies, surveying the results of a brutal cleanup operation.
A subordinate reports that while the mercenaries were eliminated, a single wizard managed to escape their grasp.
The master bites his thumb in a nervous frenzy, regretting that he didn't send a full army. He fears that if they don't silence the survivors quickly, ruinous rumors will spread throughout the land.
Reversing his strategy, the man realizes they should be the ones to spread rumors of the princess.
His servant looks on with a grim expression, noting the master's descent into desperate, conniving madness.
The master gleefully shouts orders to inform every mercenary and knight about the supposed Demon King's return.
A grand mansion stands isolated in the snow as news of the Demon King's appearance begins spreading.
A carriage arrives at the gates of the lush green garden surrounding the massive northwestern mansion.
Entering the mansion, the Duke notes that the tension was cleared up thanks to Veronica's earlier explanation.
A majestic golden statue stands before a window, basking in the soft light of the northern sun.
Rothstein looks at the statue, privately questioning the princess's true motives for journeying to the north.
The guard is horrified to find that the wrist of the first Duke's statue has been severed.
Magical faucets are highlighted, providing the luxurious comfort of instant warm water for the mansion's residents.
The attendant gleefully leads the way through a hallway where the indoor temperature is perfectly maintained.
Rothstein gazes at the mansion interior, wondering if the lady's magic created this warmth.
The Duke asks Reyna if monsters appeared recently or if she managed them alone.
Reyna smiles and tells the Duke that a single monster has indeed been appearing. Reyna describes the visitor as cute, while Rothstein remains skeptical of her specific description.
A round, white, rabbit-like creature lies playfully among the flowers in the garden. Narration explains that this peculiar monster visits the mansion every single day to play.
Rothstein looks visibly shocked and confused by the appearance of the small, round creature.
Reyna calls out to the white ball of fluff, identifying the creature as Luca. The classical white mansion stands majestically against a backdrop of snowy mountains and gardens.
Someone wearing a long white gown stands silently before a row of lit candles.
A blond man wearing long earrings keeps his eyes closed in a peaceful prayer.
The high priest stands alone in the center of a massive and ornate cathedral.
The high priest mentions a mercenary rumor that might be worth investigating for the truth.
A robed subordinate asks for clarification regarding the specific nature of the rumors mentioned.
The subordinate reports that a rumor about the Demon King's appearance is currently spreading.
The high priest reacts with intense and troubled eyes to the news of the return. He notes that the current situation is different from the prophecy he has followed. Despite the contradiction with the prophecy, the high priest resolves to investigate the matter.
A separate thought box confirms his decision that the rumor is worth checking out.
Reyna's hand gently pets the soft, round body of Luca as he rests outside.
Reyna notes that monsters can be cute while the Duke observes her from a distance.
Rothstein acknowledges the creature's name but remains doubtful that it is actually a monster. Narration explains Luca has a snowflake body and shouldn't survive the current garden temperature.
Reyna continues petting the creature, unaware of the Duke's confusion over Luca's unharmed body.
Rothstein remains silent as he watches the princess, his expression unreadable and deeply contemplative.
The Duke calls for the princess's attention and she looks back at him curiously.
Rothstein suddenly executes a high-speed sword strike that creates a powerful gust near Reyna.
Reyna remains seated and unmoving as the air from the blade rushes past her. The princess closes her eyes and flinches slightly but makes no move to counter.
Rothstein stands tall with his sword drawn while Reyna huddles on the grass nearby.
The Duke stares intently at the princess, his blue eyes filled with cold suspicion.
Rothstein admits he expected her to counterattack instinctively even if he had no malice.
Reyna looks up at him and asks if he still believes she is the Demon King.
Reyna tells him to stop the interrogation, claiming she is just a skilled fire wizard.
Rothstein closes his eyes, appearing to concede or temporarily set aside his deep-seated suspicions.
Walking away, the Duke declares that he won't return mansion ownership until doubts are cleared. He explains that protecting the North is his responsibility and he will find the mastermind.
Reyna realizes that the client he intends to find is the one she also suspects.
Rothstein and his subordinate gallop away on horseback through the snowy, mountainous northern landscape.
Reyna stands alone by the mansion doors, watching the horses disappear into the winter snow.
Reyna looks forward with a somber and determined expression as the cold wind blows.
An orc stands on a snowy ridge, peering down at the lush mansion grounds.
The monster roars with intense killing intent as it prepares to attack the green sanctuary.
A massive blast of dark purple magic obliterates the orc near the mansion's garden border.
Narration confirms that anyone harboring killing intent is unable to survive inside this specific mansion.
Reyna watches the Duke leave, reflecting on his presence and his recent direct confrontation.
The princess thinks that the Duke should consider it lucky that he lacked real malice. Text reinforces that the Duke only tested her without actually intending to take her life.
Villagers in a tavern discuss the crazy princess who has moved into the abyssal mansion.
A hooded man reacts with visible shock upon hearing that she is the Rubelite's eldest daughter.
Tavern patrons discuss the Rubelite family, questioning how a daughter ended up in the north.
A hooded man listens in, sweating as he reacts to the mention of the Rubelites.
He thinks the power witnessed was the Demon King's, noting Rubelite's attempt to hide it.
The man quickly exits the tavern and walks across the stone courtyard in the snow.
He realizes that the information he possesses is extremely valuable and could be used for profit.
A white void emphasizes his greedy realization that this secret could earn him significant money.
The isolated mansion stands in the mountains as a surge of purple magic flares within.
Reyna asks if the temperature is okay, while Veronica confirms it is sufficient for crops.
The group stands inside a vast glass-roofed structure that allows light to pour into the room.
Veronica watches the silver-haired princess closely while Reyna maintains a calm and focused expression. Veronica wonders privately if the magic being used really originates from the power of the devil.
Reyna kneels down to examine the soil, considering the logical requirements for a successful harvest.
The narrative states that providing the right conditions is essential for anyone who wants crops. Reina stares intently at the earth, her expression a mix of hope and deep concentration.
Questions if it is possible for such a gentle-looking person to truly be the devil.
The scene shifts to a massive white cathedral surrounded by intricate gardens and stone fountains. Sunlight shines through the large window, offering a wide view of the town and mountains. The high priest stands silently by the window, his white robes catching the morning light.
He reflects on news from an informer regarding a disturbing event that has recently occurred.
A chaotic vision of flames and destruction appears as he considers the necessity of ruin.
The blonde priest remains still in the grand hall, his back turned to the windows.
He wonders what happened as a robed subordinate approaches him with urgent news from afar.
The subordinate reports that a man from the north claims to have encountered the devil. The high priest turns sharply, his boots clicking against the polished stone floor of the cathedral.
His face is cold and determined as he processes confirmation of the devil's potential return. The informant from the tavern arrives at the cathedral to speak with the high priest.
A hand reaches out to touch a withered brown leaf belonging to a dying plant.
Reina observes that the crops are dying at a fast rate despite her magical efforts. Veronica is distraught, thinking that she followed all necessary conditions, but the plants still failed.
Reina looks on with a somber expression, her eyes reflecting disappointment at the failed experiment.
Rows of small plants lose their vitality instantly, turning brown and brittle in the soil. Reina wonders if her devilish power is the reason nothing can survive or grow nearby.
Dark swirling wisps of energy begin to wrap around Reina's neck as she feels bout. A terrifying shadow with a glowing red eye looms behind Reina as she remains distracted.
The shadow mocks Reina, urging her to realize her power is meant for causing destruction.
A dark void echoes the shadow's claim that all her efforts to grow life are useless.
Veronica mentions encountering a long queue of people while traveling to the mansion earlier today.
She recounts her encounter with many people waiting in a long line along the path. A group of travelers and commoners are shown lined up outside a wooden gate. The group stands together in the greenhouse, surrounded by the rows of failed and dying crops. Veronica tells the princess that she doesn't need to pay for the failed crop experiment.
The attendant pleads with Reina not to give up on her goals for the mansion.
Reina's eyes widen as she absorbs the encouragement from someone who should fear her.
The princess clenches her fist, her resolve hardening after hearing Veronica's words of support.
Reina realizes she never intended to share the harvest, driven by her own survival needs.
She opens the mansion doors while carrying a person across her shoulder in the rain.
Luca the rabbit monster lies upside down, looking content despite the chaotic magic in the air. Veronica watches the princess with a hopeful gaze, waiting to see what Reina does next.
Reina places her hands against the glass, acknowledging she doesn't know if this helps others.
Reina resolves to try once more, unleashing a massive pillar of purple magic into the air.
The high priest asks the informant if he is referring to Duke Rubelite's founder. The informant claims she hid her identity while taking refuge in the north.
The high priest asks the man to repeat the name of the one.
The informant declares that Reina Rubelite is the devil as purple magic swirls below.
A lush green herb with white flowers grows successfully inside the mansion's glass greenhouse.
Reina, the butler, and a woman observe the rows of healthy plants they've grown. Reina holds up the blooming herbs, celebrating the successful completion of their growth experiment.
The princess crouches over the soil, relieved and exhausted after putting her magic into the crops. The brown-haired woman looks on with a soft, appreciative smile at the princess's hard work. The group stands together among the thriving greenery, having finally achieved a successful harvest. Narrative text notes that Reina is a lady who uses black magic despite her kind actions.
Reina looks down thoughtfully, her silver hair catching the light as she reflects on her success.
The high priest stares ahead with a dark, intense shadow cast over his cold blue eyes.
A jagged blade points toward a dark bubble containing Reina Rubelite's name amidst chibi credits.
The butler beams with pure joy as he finally receives a reply from his wife and daughter.
He tells Reina that his family was away in the capital, missing his previous letters.
Reina wonders to herself if they were safe and out of the Duke's reach.
She realizes that the family likely avoided harm by being away during the Duke's recent investigation.
Reina suggests that the butler should bring his wife and daughter to the mansion.
She asks if it wouldn't be better for them to stay together at the Abyss Mansion.
The butler is moved to tears of gratitude by the princess's generous and thoughtful invitation. He explains his daughter went to culinary school and he hasn't seen her in ages. The butler describes his daughter as mature and sincere while showing Reina a small prosek. Reina looks at the portrait with interest, finding the young girl in the drawing quite charming. The portrait shows a young girl with purple eyes wearing a traditional red hat and tunic.
A young woman with long, light brown hair and a bow introduces herself as Mia.
Mia and Reina stand together in the garden as the butler's family finally arrives at the mansion.
Reina greets the young woman warmly, happy to have her join the mansion's household. The butler and his wife share a long-awaited and emotional hug in the mansion's garden.
He tells her how worried he was and promises they will never be apart again.
The couple shares a romantic kiss while Reina and Mia watch with a mix of embarrassment.
Mia bows deeply to Reina, asking for forgiveness regarding her parents' overly affectionate public behavior.
Reina and Mia walk through the mansion's grand hallways as they begin their new arrangement.
Mia looks downward, admitting with a worried expression that her cooking is actually quite terrible.
Reina stops and looks at the young woman with a surprised and slightly confused expression.
Mia explains that the princess will likely be very disappointed if she tastes any of her dishes.
Reina stares intently at Mia and asks if she genuinely enjoys the process of cooking.
Mia looks down thoughtfully and quietly confirms that she does indeed like to cook.
Reina smiles gently, telling Mia that liking it is more than enough for her.
The princess notes she's currently living on beef jerky and isn't in a position to be picky.
Reina asks Mia to be the mansion's chef, and the young woman agrees to try. A cooking pan erupts with swirling dark purple flames as Reina uses magic to heat it.
Mia observes the black fire in shock, noting she has never seen magic flames like this.
The chef asks straightforwardly if Reina is a devil, causing the princess to pause.
Reina looms behind Mia with a dark aura, jokingly promising not to destroy the world if fed.
A lavish feast of roasted chicken, steak, vegetables, and pizza is spread across the dining table. Reina sits at the table, noting that the food looks good despite Mia's earlier warnings. The princess prepares to eat, resolving to finish the meal regardless of its actual taste.
Reina takes a large, eager bite of the steak as she experiences her first real meal. Her eyes widen in complete shock as she processes the unexpected flavor of the cooked dish. Mia watches the princess with a nervous and uncertain expression, awaiting her reaction.
Reina sits at the dining table while the butler asks if she is feeling unwell. The princess is frozen in shock, privately thinking that the meal is incredibly delicious.
Mia asks the princess if she was taken aback by her supposedly poor cooking skills. The chef looks at her hands, repeating the myth that women cannot cook fine cuisine.
Reina is visibly stunned and confused by the bizarre claim regarding gender and culinary ability. She stands up suddenly, declaring the dish amazing and the best thing she has ever eaten.
Mia remains silent, staring downward as she processes the unexpected praise from the princess.
The young woman looks away, quietly agreeing with the princess's assessment of the meal.
The guard weeps openly as he eats, completely overwhelmed by the flavor of the food.
Reina watches the sobbing soldier with a bewildered look, questioning why he's eating there. Tears begin to well up in Mia's eyes as she reacts to the positive feedback. Reina looks at the chef with a surprised expression, caught off guard by her emotional state. Mia breaks down in tears, covering her face as years of discouragement finally fall away.
She explains that she was always told to quit because her hands were unsuitable for cooking.
Reina is furious, shouting that the idea of women being unable to cook is absolute nonsense.
The princess places her hands on Mia's shoulders, granting her permission to cook anything here.
Reina promises to provide whatever ingredients Mia needs, no matter where she must find them.
Mia looks at the princess with deep gratitude, her face still wet with emotional tears.
In the grand dining room, Mia bows and kisses Reina's hand to show her devotion.
The little guard continues to eat enthusiastically, his cheeks stuffed and his eyes full of tears.
In a distant hall, a man screams as he is completely encased in a jagged iceberg.
The frozen man remains trapped in the ice, a chilling monument in the center of the room.
A subordinate observes the frozen informant from a distance, looking on with immense fear.
The man trembles as he reports the recent findings regarding the devil to his superior. The high priest stands with his back turned, expressing a desire to hear from the duke.
He turns with a cold, shadowed face, specifically mentioning the duke's daughter, Reina Rubelite.
Duke Rubelite sits in his study and asks his subordinate if the food was truly delicious.
The guard confirms the meal was incredible, while the duke looks on with silent disbelief.
The Duke dismisses the guard, noting that his assignment was monitoring, not reporting on meals.
He reads a scroll, reflecting on his failure to locate the mercenaries who escaped.
A vision of a mage appears as the Duke considers the motive behind targeting one woman.
The Duke stares intently, realizing the grave implications of the mastermind's interest in his daughter.
He concludes that whoever is behind the plot understands the true nature of Reina's power.
The scene shifts to the mansion exterior where the greenhouse stands amidst the fallen snow.
The guard happily carries heavy sacks of supplies, clearly motivated by the promise of more meals. Reina and Veronica work together to move bags of grain through the snowy garden.
Reina notes that the guard has become a very diligent worker after receiving some free food. She doubts the Duke sent him for manual labor, but welcomes the extra help regardless. A horse-drawn carriage loaded with crates travels through the snowy landscape toward a village. A massive pot of soup is stirred as the princess prepares to share the harvest.
A group of orphans watches the cooking process with wide, hungry eyes in the cold.
Reina and her staff serve soup to a long line of commoners in the snowy courtyard.
The princess stops and looks up, surprised by the appearance of a specific person in line.
A young boy with silver-white hair and blue eyes stands calmly among the local children.
The boy wears a high-quality, sparkling blue suit that stands out against his drab surroundings. Veronica and Reina look toward the boy as Veronica identifies him as a young master.
Reina looks at her attendant with a questioning gaze, asking if she truly knows the boy.
Veronica explains that the child is well known throughout the North as part of a noble family.
The boy is revealed as young Master Luca Wintersnow, the second son of a prestigious house.
Reina reflects on the prestigious Wintersnow name while observing the young master before her.
Reina is visibly shocked to realize the boy is the younger brother of the Northern Duke.
The local children eat bread and soup heartily, finally enjoying warm food in the village.
The scene shifts inside as Reina and Luca walk through the bustling dining hall together.
Luca acknowledges his family's duty to protect the North and expresses gratitude for Reina's assistance.
Reina offers a kind smile, explaining she simply cannot ignore the plight of starving people.
Luca laments that the North was not always such a harsh and difficult place to live.
Snow falls heavily over the rooftops, illustrating the relentless winter that has gripped the land.
Luca makes a heavy confession, claiming personal responsibility for the eternal snowstorm plaguing the North. Reina stares in silence, deeply moved and troubled by the young boy's shocking revelation.
Luca explains his curse forced the high priest to cast the magic that caused the storm.
The boy struggles with immense guilt, unable to bear the weight of his people's suffering. Reina looks at Luca with a soft, sympathetic gaze as he finishes his painful story.
Reina stoops to his level, offering her full support for any future needs he has.
The princess confidently notes her own magical prowess, hinting she might be able to help.
Luca remains silent, his expression unreadable as he absorbs the princess's generous and unexpected offer.
Luca offers a gentle smile, stating that he has already received significant help from Reina. Reina looks completely confused, wondering what help the boy could possibly be referencing right now. In the capital, a subordinate informs Duke Rubelite that all mercenaries have been successfully withdrawn.
The officer reports that those who dared to ignore the orders faced swift and severe punishment.
The subordinate trembles with fear as he nervously addresses the Duke regarding the situation.
A heavy, foreboding tension settles over the room as the scene shifts to the priesthood.
Narrative text warns of the grave consequences for the crime of harboring the Demon King.
The high priest confronts the Duke, promising not to press him regarding Reina's hidden nature.
The frozen informant stands as a chilling reminder of the high priest's absolute cold power.
The high priest asserts total dominance, demanding that the Duke follow only his specific orders.
He specifically commands the Duke to withdraw the mercenaries currently stationed in the frozen north. Narrative text refers to a divine law that governs the current actions of the priesthood.
The atmosphere grows increasingly dark as the full weight of the high priest's threat sinks in.
Duke Rubelite clenches his fist in silent rage, forced into a corner by his superior.
The Duke recalls his earlier claim about Reina being the Demon King to the priest.
The high priest's face is shown glowing with a disturbingly joyful and excited expression.
Narrative text emphasizes that the priest was actually delighted by the prospect of Reina's identity. The Duke shakes with dread, realizing the true terrifying intent behind the mention of divine law.
Reina stands in the mansion's garden, still puzzled by Lucas's mysterious claim of past help.
A sudden rustle in the grass catches Reina's attention, causing her to turn her head.
A large, round white rabbit hops out from the greenery, looking directly at the princess.
Reina observes the plump rabbit standing peacefully in the middle of the lush green garden.
An attendant begins to explain a secret to the princess regarding Master Luca's unusual condition. She reveals Luca is cursed by the Demon King, appearing in true form only monthly. The woman expresses deep pity for the boy, who cannot even enjoy a normal youth. Reina looks at the rabbit with wide eyes as the pieces of the puzzle fit.
The white rabbit makes a happy expression, seemingly delighted to see the silver-haired princess again.
The princess looks at the rabbit with a start as she makes a shocking connection. Reina looks down at the round creature, finally understanding that the rabbit is actually Luca. Narrative text introduces the Northern Labyrinth, a place that strikes fear into the local populace. It is described as a vast, complex maze of tunnels carved deep into the mountainside. Historically, the labyrinth was known for occasionally releasing dangerous monsters into the surrounding snowy lands.
Orcs and lizard-like creatures creep through the shadows of the cave, preparing for a hunt.
A massive wave of monsters surges through the tunnels, threatening to overrun the peaceful north.
A narrative beat emphasizes that the situation is unfolding with a relentless and unstoppable fury.
The snowy mansion stands tall as the narrator warns that the current situation is spiraling.
During a meeting, Reina learns that monster activity shows no signs of decreasing despite regular patrols.
Reina listens with a somber expression, deeply concerned about the escalating danger facing the northern lands. Snow falls over a quiet village marketplace where locals gather among striped tents and stone paths.
A blonde man suddenly sprints past Reina, striking her shoulder as he makes a desperate escape.
A woman screams for help, identifying the running man as a thief while Reina turns alertly. Narrative text explains that castle security has failed as Duke Wintersnow leads soldiers against rising monsters. A mental resolve underscores the Wintersnow family's unwavering duty to protect the north at all costs. Young Master Luca is shown with a gentle expression, his blue eyes reflecting a quiet, internal strength. A simple expression of gratitude hangs in the air, acknowledging the assistance Reina has provided him. Reina spots a round white rabbit in the grass and begins to suspect its true magical identity.
Standing in the snowy garden, Reina calls out to the rabbit, confirming it is indeed the boy.
The plump white rabbit offers a small knowing nod in response to being recognized by the princess.
Back at the marketplace, Reina stands motionless as she observes the chaotic atmosphere of the fearful village.
A fierce purple energy begins to spark around Reina's face as she prepares to take action.
Forced by circumstance, Reyna unleashes a massive wave of dark magic to intercept the fleeing thief.
A streak of violent purple power tears through the village square, pursuing its target with lethal precision.
Distant villagers watch in absolute horror as the dark, crackling magic surges through the public street.
The thief continues his frantic run, unaware that a magical force is closing in behind him.
Sensing the approaching danger, the thief looks back with a face full of sheer, unadulterated terror.
The purple magic strikes with a flash, cutting off the thief's escape route in an instant. Dark energy swirls around the thief as the ground beneath him shatters under the weight of magic. The magical aura completely envelops the man, trapping him within a column of glowing purple light. Reyna warns the thief against stealing while surrounded by the intimidating swirling flames of her dark magic.
The surrounding crowd stares with wide eyes and open mouths, paralyzed by the sight of the power.
Fear spreads through the locals as they witness the princess wielding magic they perceive as truly evil.
A trembling villager identifies the display as dark magic, confirming the town's worst fears about Reyna.
Reyna stands alone in the center of the village as the commoners scramble away from her presence.
The silver-haired princess looks on with a grim face, realizing the unintended consequences of her magical intervention. Reyna shouts in frustration, pointing out that the captured man is the thief, not herself. The villagers offer no sympathy, looking at the princess with expressions of deep-seated distrust and mounting panic.
Reyna observes the hostile crowd, recognizing that the entire village is now on the verge of madness.
She reflects on the people's fear of the Demon King, realizing her magic has confirmed their suspicions. A wave of regret washes over Reyna as she concludes that using her power was a mistake. Whispers of the Demon King ripple through the crowd as the villagers cower in the cold shadows.
A bald man points a finger at Reyna, hysterically accusing her of being the dreaded Demon King.
Veronica watches the escalating chaos with a worried gaze, unable to stop the villagers' growing resentment. Reyna decides to retreat, telling Veronica that further explanation is useless as the townspeople gasp in fear.
The locals mutter among themselves, casting terrified glances at the silver-haired princess as she begins to move.
Panic fully takes hold as feet scramble across the pavement, everyone fleeing from Reyna's ominous magical aura.
A group of villagers rushes through a stone archway, desperate to find safety away from the marketplace.
A heavy wooden door slams shut with a resounding thud, sealing the villagers inside their homes. Silence falls over the snowy village square, leaving only the sound of the wind and falling flakes.
Veronica stands near Reyna in the empty street, both of them reflecting on the sudden, cold isolation.
Narrative text confirms that the entire populace has been seized by a deep and paralyzing fear.
Veronica suggests they return home immediately, noting it is better for the princess to leave the village.
Two mysterious hooded figures watch the departing pair from the shadows of a stone-walled alleyway.
High in the frozen mountains, the wind howls through jagged rock formations covered in deep snow. A commander orders his troops to check their gear and rest before the expected monster assault begins.
Exhausted soldiers stand defeated and weary in the relentless northern snow.
Duke Wintersnow notes that everyone has reached their absolute breaking point.
The Duke worries about stopping the impending and dangerous rampage of the labyrinth. A vision of a burning village warns of the North's total annihilation. In a grand hall, Winters now discusses the Demon King activating the labyrinth. The dark-haired Duke somberly reflects on the Demon King's terrifying power.
The priest asks if anyone in the north is suspected of being the Demon King. Duke Wintersnow remains silent, his face showing signs of deep inner turmoil.
A grand mansion stands isolated within the dense, snow-covered northern forest.
Veronica reports with terror that the village has been reduced to ashes. Veronica reveals that the marketplace residents suspect Reyna is the Demon King. A vision shows houses engulfed in flames as suspicion turns toward the princess.
Reyna is struck with grief upon hearing that all the houses were destroyed.
The Duke and his punitive force finally return to the mansion. Duke Wintersnow refuses rest, stating there is no time to waste.
The Duke decides to seek urgent military support from Duke Rubelite. Duke Wintersnow determines that he must secure more soldiers for the defense. A cheerful chibi witch character waves to the audience with a smile.
The scene shifts to a magnificent, sunlit palace in the Eastern Territory. Duke Wintersnow apologizes for interrupting Duke Rubelite during his busy schedule.
Duke Rubelite bluntly states that providing military support is completely impossible.
Rubelite explains that farmers must remain in the fields to pay taxes.
Duke Wintersnow pleads for even a small group of knights to help. Rubelite dismisses the request, seeing no profit in defending the dangerous north. Duke Wintersnow clenches his jaw, barely containing his anger at the refusal. Rubelite suggests that Wintersnow seek assistance from the West or South territories. Wintersnow stands to leave, accepting that he will find no help here.
Duke Rubelite stops him to ask if Reyna is Strema.
Rubelite mentions fatherly worry, but Wintersnow simply notes she is fine. Rubelite grows angry, demanding that Wintersnow stop calling Reyna his daughter. Duke Wintersnow looks back at the man with a cold, piercing gaze.
Duke Rubelite issues a chilling warning to be extremely careful of Reyna. The mansion remains quiet and still against the backdrop of snowy mountains.
Reina stands alone in her room, contemplating the events unfolding around her.
The silver-haired princess wonders if these disasters could actually be natural.
Monsters surge from the cave as the northern labyrinth begins its activation.
Luca stands shrouded in shadow, burdened by the weight of his curse. The young boy agonizes over whether all the suffering is his fault. Reina fears that her very presence in the world causes these disasters.
A hand reaches out to touch a plant bearing dark purple berries.
Reina kneels alone in a barren landscape, looking down at the plant. Malevolent purple energy begins to swirl and coalesce in the air. A massive, dark shadow looms over the terrified and trembling princess.
The grinning shadow addresses Reina, its presence filling her with dread.
The entity blames Reina for the labyrinth and the curse's existence. Dark narration claims the deaths of the villagers are Reina's responsibility. The shadow tells a panicked Reina that destruction is her true role.
The monstrous entity commands Reina to slaughter everyone in her path. A dark force urges Reina to surrender and follow her instincts. Reina whispers a dark confirmation as she begins to succumb to the malevolent shadow's influence.
Reina considers if committing mass slaughter is the only way to resolve the ongoing northern crisis.
A massive, snow-covered mansion stands silent and imposing against the backdrop of the jagged northern mountains.
Duke Wintersnow informs his aide that while the East refused help, support arrived from other territories.
The Duke orders his men to prepare for departure once the supported soldiers reach the teleportation zone.
Duke Wintersnow leads a column of soldiers on horseback through a desolate and frozen mountain pass.
Duke Wintersnow ponders how he managed to secure military support during such a dire and difficult time. The wind howls through the jagged, snow-capped peaks of the unforgiving and desolate northern landscape.
Wintersnow somberly wonders if there will ever be an end to the relentless and escalating situation.
A blonde-haired noble asks if anyone in the north is truly suspected of being a devil.
Duke Rubelite issues a chilling warning to be extremely cautious regarding the princess's true nature. A sinister purple aura pulses with the claim that Reina is merely a gateway for evil.
Duke Wintersnow's face remains stony and unreadable as he processes the chilling and dark accusations.
A soldier shouts in alarm as the horses rear back before a sudden, powerful magical disturbance.
The Duke's eyes widen in shock at the powerful magical energy manifestations suddenly blocking their path.
A soldier breaks into a cold sweat while watching the dark magic intensify on the snowy road.
A massive pillar of purple energy erupts from the snow, halting the advancing military force abruptly.
Dark magical power surges through the frozen ground, crackling with intense and dangerous purple energy.
Reina appears amidst the swirling purple flames, riding her horse with a cold and determined expression.
Duke Wintersnow gazes at the princess with a mixture of profound confusion and growing dread.
The Duke's expression shifts to one of grim realization as he identifies the princess in the magic.
Duke Wintersnow acknowledges the princess as the dark magic continues to flicker around her black horse.
Reina looks on with an intense gaze, her silver hair flowing amidst the purple magical aura.
The princess mentions hearing that they are having a difficult time because of the northern labyrinth.
Reina explains her intention to assist the Duke while remaining shrouded in her intimidating magical power.
Reina maintains a calm but unsettlingly steady gaze as she confronts the wary and surprised soldiers.
The princess offers a chilling proposition to burn the Duke with her dark magical purple fire.
Reina speaks in a low, eerie tone, suggesting that the Duke should be warm like her.
A cheerful chibi character appears above the silver-haired princess as she stares forward with intent.
Reina asks the Duke for his opinion on the overwhelming magical power she is currently displaying.
The princess notes that her method of protection might appear odd or strange to others. The aide stammers in confusion, unable to comprehend the princess's bizarre and seemingly threatening comments. Duke Wintersnow remains silent, his face etched with deep suspicion toward the princess's sudden arrival.
Reina questions why the men are so startled by her presence and her sudden appearance.
The aide panics over Reina's threat to burn them and asks why she came this way. The silver-haired princess simply states that her only purpose for being there is to provide help. Reina boldly declares her plan to personally clear the entire northern labyrinth of its dangerous monsters.
The princess smiles brightly, asking if destroying the labyrinth will finally solve their many problems.
Duke Wintersnow watches the princess, his suspicion remaining clear even as she offers a potential solution.
Narrative text suggests that borrowing the princess's immense power could eliminate all the monsters immediately.
A bubble emphasizes that the continuous generation of monsters can finally be brought to a halt.
Reina points out that monsters are being continuously created deep within the heart of the labyrinth.
The princess explains that destroying the stone at the labyrinth center will stop the monster production. Reina claims the task is easy, prompting the Duke to demand the source of her information. Duke Wintersnow reflects on his lifelong struggle against the labyrinth and its many hidden dangers. The Duke notes with suspicion that he has never heard of a central labyrinth stone before. Reyna stammers and avoids the question, her confident demeanor momentarily slipping as she attempts an excuse. The princess panics internally, realizing she cannot reveal the true and forbidden origin of her knowledge.
Reyna awkwardly claims she heard the information from rumors circulating among various high-level wizards.
Duke Wintersnow clenches his horse's reins, concluding that the princess's explanation is highly suspicious, as expected.
Duke Wintersnow questions Reyna about rumors while she rides her horse shrouded in magic.
Reyna blushes and looks embarrassed as Winters now recalls her act of feeding local children.
Duke Wintersnow looks away with a serious expression, preparing to address a darker topic.
Rostin mentions the rumors concerning Reyna burning down the houses of the village residents.
Rostin asks if toying with people is her hobby. Reyna looks down with profound sadness. Reyna frantically denies any involvement with the burnt houses as she rides her black horse.
Duke Wintersnow refuses to travel with anyone utilizing black magic to hunt down various monsters.
The scene shows the Duke's horse riding forward while purple magic wisps through the air.
Rostin observes that the princess's magical power bears a striking resemblance to the Demon King's.
Duke Wintersnow bluntly states his lack of trust as he continues leading his military force.
A sunlit palace stands grandly as narration confirms a certain matter was handled quite well.
Attendants report that the northern residents will surely direct their suspicions toward the young princess.
The blonde noble smiles with cold satisfaction, acknowledging the success of their manipulative political scheme.
He remarks that the gears of his elaborate plan are finally turning in his favor. A lone figure stands before a massive glowing orb in a grand, light-filled temple sanctuary.
The blonde man walks calmly through the temple, a faint smile playing on his lips.
Duke Rostin Wintersnow is seen riding his horse through a desolate and snowy northern valley.
Rostin looks down somberly, admitting that he also finds the princess's current situation quite pitiable.
The man raises a gloved hand toward the light, mentioning his ongoing and secret mission.
He describes the suffering as a beautiful sacrifice necessary for the sake of the saint.
A blinding celestial light erupts within the temple, signaling a moment of significant magical activation.
The isolated mansion is shown from above, nestled among the frozen trees of the north.
The family sits together in the dining hall, a heavy and tense silence filling the room.
Narrative text bubbles emphasize the danger of attacking humans instead of the monsters of the north. Reyna stares ahead with a hollow gaze as thoughts of being untrusted weigh on her. A close-up shows a silver fork being pressed into a slice of cooked meat.
Veronica sighs, feeling guilty about their comfortable meal while the local villagers continue to suffer.
The older man dismisses the villagers' suffering, claiming their current plight is entirely their own fault.
Veronica wonders if the residents didn't previously refuse the princess's sincere offer to provide help. The man argues that the villagers only suspect the princess because they lack true knowledge.
He shouts passionately, claiming the princess's flames are pure and far beyond simple, ordinary arson. Reyna is visibly startled by the older man's sudden and intense outburst of loyal defense.
The princess looks toward the dining room door after hearing a sudden and suspicious sound.
A gloved fist strikes the heavy wooden door, creating a series of loud and rhythmic bangs.
Reyna stands to investigate the door, wondering who could possibly be visiting at such a time.
The door creaks open slowly, revealing the feet and cape of a person standing outside.
A battered and wounded soldier stands in the doorway, his blue uniform torn and bloodied.
The soldier looks at Reyna with tears in his eyes, his face marked by a scar. The injured man collapses to the floor, his strength leaving him as he reaches for Reyna.
The soldier's face is shown in close-up as he weeps, overwhelmed by physical and emotional pain.
A dark panel features a desperate plea for help written in bright red text. The dark void continues as the urgent request for assistance continues to echo through the silence.
The soldier begs the princess to intervene and save their lord from a certain death. A glowing text bubble emphasizes the soldier's final, frantic cry for the lord's immediate salvation.
The mansion remains quiet beneath the swirling snow as a winter storm begins to intensify. The dining party watches in stunned silence as the soldier remains collapsed on the floor.
The family reacts with shock and horror to the soldier's sudden arrival and desperate plea. The soldier looks down in shame, his bandaged head bowed as he reflects on his situation.
A narrative frame reveals his internal thoughts about how easy he initially believed the task.
He recalls that the monster threat originally seemed small and manageable before the situation escalated.
The team ventures deeper and deeper into the dark and treacherous labyrinth. Duke Wintersnow finds the labyrinth stone that the princess had previously mentioned.
The Duke's men stand behind him as they finally face the source of evil.
Rostin draws his blade as ominous purple magic begins to stir around them.
Shadows and monsters overwhelm the soldiers in a sudden burst of dark magical energy. Demonic creatures howl as the purple energy consumes everything within the cursed chamber. Darkness completely envelops the scene as the battle in the labyrinth reaches its end.
An injured soldier's eye widens in panic while cold sweat pours down his face.
The soldier informs the group that the Duke is still inside the monster-infested labyrinth.
The family reacts with sheer terror as they hear the news of the Duke.
Reyna stares ahead with a grim expression, processing the weight of the soldier's news. Hands tremble uncontrollably as the reality of the Duke's dire predicament becomes clear. The battered soldier hunches over, completely drained of strength after his desperate escape. A final, echoing plea for help hangs in the air as hope begins fading. The soldier warns the group that the entire North is now in immediate danger. A narrow, snowy path leads toward a settlement as the monster threat draws closer. Goblins and monstrous creatures march through the falling snow toward the unsuspecting village residents. Sentinels on the town walls watch the horizon as the storm and monsters approach.
The guards curse under their breath as they witness the sheer number of monsters.
A soldier's hand tightens around his spear as he notes the monsters' growing numbers.
An aerial view reveals the town's buildings as the monster invasion draws near. A terrified mother pulls her children close as the threat nears their front door.
The mother attempts to comfort her children, lying that everything will be just fine.
Jagged, icy peaks surround the region where the monsters have begun their brutal advance.
A massive explosion of purple magic ripples through the frozen mountains, shifting the battlefield.
Monsters inside the labyrinth stop in their tracks as a powerful presence suddenly manifests.
Intense purple flames swirl violently, heralding the arrival of a massive and terrifying power.
Reyna appears amidst the dark magic, her silver hair flowing as she stands alone.
Reyna insults the Duke's arbitrary suspicion and wonders why she is obligated to save him.
The dark tunnel of the northern labyrinth stretches forward into an absolute lightless void. Reyna walks into the labyrinth, reflecting on Rostin being an unfamiliar character.
Silhouettes represent the known characters as Reyna considers the anomalies in her current life.
Reyna concludes that Rostin was definitely not listed among the characters she previously knew.
Reyna reflects on how beautiful the Duke is while he is surrounded by flowers.
Reyna admits that despite his looks, Rostin's personality is incredibly harsh and quite unkind.
Reyna reaches the massive glowing doors leading to the heart of the labyrinth stone.
The silver-haired princess wonders if the Duke is indeed trapped behind these heavy doors. Reyna resolves to neutralize the labyrinth and claim a massive reward from the Duke.
A voice calls out for the High Priest as the scene shifts to a palace. A man in a red military uniform demands that the High Priest show himself immediately.
The blonde High Priest acknowledges the man, noting that he was specifically being asked for. The purple-haired man in the red uniform glares back with a suspicious and impatient expression.
The soldier asks the High Priest why he is not sending support to the north.
The High Priest listens calmly as the soldier presses him for immediate and direct answers. The man in red notes that the High Priest's prophecies have always been correct.
The soldier bluntly asks if the High Priest has lost his spiritual strength recently. The blonde High Priest maintains a serene and enigmatic gaze as he is questioned.
The High Priest reassures the soldier, claiming he was simply fulfilling certain required conditions.
Reyna's eyes are filled with pure shock as she gazes at a horrific sight.
A mountain of corpses lies at the base of the glowing and cursed labyrinth stone.
A shoe steps heavily into a widening pool of blood on the dark floor.
Reyna gazes forward with wide eyes, reflecting on her frequent experiences in this world.
Narrative boxes detail her confusion over why she cannot recall the identity of Duke Rostin.
The silver-haired princess stands alone amidst a field of casualties within the dark, expansive chamber.
A close-up highlights the chilling intensity and focus within Reyna's striking red eyes. Duke Rostin is seen trapped within a jagged, glowing block of ice in the dark labyrinth. Reyna looks down at a fallen soldier, noting that the Duke's death always precedes her realizations. A frantic attendant rushes into the Grand Temple, urgently calling out for the High Priest.
In the temple, a soldier reports that the altar is suddenly and mysteriously glowing with light.
The High Priest's eye widens in pure shock upon hearing the news regarding the shining altar.
Narrative frames listing critical events like Rostin's death and the Devil's arrival appear over a dark void.
Glowing red text against a dark background confirms that all necessary conditions have finally been met.
A sinister and wide grin spreads across the High Priest's face as his plans come to fruition.
A massive and intricate blue magic circle erupts with light, signifying a powerful ritual activation. The scene shifts to the bright steps leading up to an ornate altar within the grand sanctuary.
A single word of relief and anticipation marks the long-awaited arrival of a specific individual. The back of a young woman with long blonde hair is shown as she sits on the floor.
Many bodies lie scattered around the glowing labyrinth stone deep within the desolate northern tunnels. Reyna looks on with a somber expression as she faces the grim reality of the battle.
The horrific face of a massive, deceased demonic monster is shown in a chilling close-up. Reyna stares at the massive creature, recognizing it as the corpse of the northern labyrinth boss.
Duke Wintersnow remains completely immobilized within a solid and jagged formation of translucent ice.
Reyna looks down at the frozen Duke, finding it highly unusual that only he was targeted.
An ornate narrative frame notes the absence of ice magic-wielding monsters within the entire northern labyrinth.
The princess reaches out, placing a gloved hand against the cold surface of Rostin's icy prison.
Reyna stands solemnly before the frozen Duke, her silhouette cast against the darkness of the chamber.
Narrative text emphasizes a desperate and recurring need for assistance in the northern regions.
A cheery mascot floats above the Grand Temple as sunlight bathes the white stone architecture. A young blonde woman has just manifested in the temple, sitting dazed on the blue carpet.
The saint winces in pain, grumbling about the lack of cushions while the High Priest calls her.
The high priest stands tall before the seated saint, greeting her within the expansive white sanctuary.
A close-up shows the high priest wearing a gentle and welcoming smile as he gazes at the saint.
The camera focuses on the saint's light blue dress as she begins to stand up.
Violent bursts of purple magic erupt in the dark labyrinth as Reina begins her rescue attempt.
The princess channels her dark magical energy to carefully melt the ice encasing the duke.
Reina focuses intently, knowing she must proceed slowly to avoid causing any physical harm to Rostin.
She calls out a desperate plea for Rostin to return to life as magic swirls around them.
Duke Wintersnow's bloodied sword lies abandoned on the cold stone floor of the dark chamber. Reina collapses to the ground in exhaustion as the intense magical manifestation finally begins to fade. The silver-haired girl looks up with a weary and sorrowful expression after her magical exertion. Rostin slumps forward, his head bowed and eyes closed, showing no immediate signs of recovery.
Reina wonders if Rostin's death is an unchangeable law governing the world she currently inhabits.
Narrative text reflects on his tragic life spent fighting monsters only to freeze alone in the dark. A glowing orb features a somber question regarding whether this was Rostin's intended final fate.
Reina reaches out and grabs the Duke's shoulders, attempting to rouse him from his unconscious state.
She demands that he apologize to her and leave, clearly upset by his previous lack of trust. The princess berates the unresponsive man for doubting her and pushing her into a difficult corner. Reina shakes Rostin's shoulders with increasing desperation, shouting for him to wake up and open his eyes. She lets out a final, heartbreaking cry for him to please wake up as she clings to him.
The Duke remains slumped and motionless, his fate still uncertain despite Reina's frantic efforts.
Reina leans over the motionless Duke Rostin within the dark northern labyrinth.
The silver-haired princess cradles the unconscious Duke against her, mourning his apparent death.
Reina's red eye reflects a deep sorrow as she stares at the man she tried to save. Silhouetted figures stand over a hospital bed, representing a tragic end in another lifetime.
A small purple-haired mascot cries, reflecting the heartbreaking mood of the current scene.
Reina smiles sadly, murmuring that things were difficult for him because of her.
Reina gazes at Rostin's face, reflecting on the heavy burden of this current life.
Her hands clench into tight fists, determined to make a final significant decision.
Reina reflects on the northern region that the Duke was so desperate to protect.
She stands over Rostin, vowing that his noble sacrifice will not be in vain.
Determination fills Reina's gaze as she resolves to take up the mantle of protection. Reina begins to turn away, only to be startled by a sudden booming sound. The silver-haired princess looks back with a shocked expression, her eyes wide with disbelief. A soft violet light fades, signaling a sudden and dramatic shift in the scene. In the temple, the man in red asks if this was planned. The priest confirms God's flow. The high priest foretells that the saint will save the north and become a hero. The purple-haired soldier remains silent, processing the high priest's cryptic and grand predictions.
The man in red mentions a concerning rumor about the devil appearing in the north.
The blonde saint stands trembling in the dark labyrinth surrounded by a field of corpses.
Reina notices the presence of another person and looks toward the frightened young woman.
The saint spots Reina sitting by Rostin and stammers out a question about her humanity.
Shaking with fear, the blonde saint asks Reina if she is indeed a human being.
Reina's eyes widen in absolute astonishment as she realizes who has just arrived.
The princess stares intensely at the newcomer, identifying the woman as the long-awaited saint.
A tense silence settles between Reina and the nervous saint as they lock eyes.
A dramatic proclamation declares that the young woman standing before Reina is the saint. A cheerful mascot floats above the scene, contrasting with Reina's shock at seeing the saint. Bold text reaffirms the saint's identity as she stands amidst the carnage of the labyrinth.
Reina wonders how the saint could have possibly arrived in this dangerous location so quickly.
The princess reflects on the impossibility of the saint reaching the heart of the labyrinth now. Reina dismisses her confusion, concluding that the saint's arrival timing no longer matters. She looks back at the fallen duke, noting that even a saint arrived too late. A somber narrative frame declares that the situation has already reached its tragic conclusion.
Reina bows her head in grief while the saint watches her from a distance.
The blonde saint watches Reina with a look of intense suspicion and mounting worry. Reina thinks the saint is being rude for staring at her so strangely in this moment. The saint accuses Reina of attacking an unconscious person, leaving the princess completely flabbergasted.
Reina shouts that it is a misunderstanding, demanding to know what the saint is thinking.
The saint stares back with a deadpan expression, clearly unimpressed by Reina's frantic explanation.
Reina feels incredibly flustered and indignant as the saint continues to judge her unfairly.
A sudden realization strikes Reina as she stares at the woman with light-filled eyes.
Reina remembers that unlike her, the saint possesses the power of healing and resurrection magic.
The camera pans across the numerous fallen soldiers scattered across the cold labyrinth floor.
Dark purple energy tendrils begin to snake around the bodies of the deceased soldiers.
Reina looks back at the saint with a newfound sense of urgency and hope. A terrifying realization hits as Reina sees the labyrinth is actually absorbing the corpses.
The silver-haired princess shouts for the saint to listen to her immediately.
Reina formally addresses the newcomer, stating that she has a very important request. Reina commands the saint to use resurrection magic to save Rostin from the brink of death.
She desperately implores the saint to also revive all the soldiers who fell in battle.
Reina insists that since she is a saint, she is obligated to save the fallen.
The blonde woman looks on silently as the princess explains the expectations of her role. The saint stares blankly, clearly overwhelmed by the pressure of the princess's sudden, heavy demand.
She secretly questions whether the silver-haired princess is actually a human being given her intensity.
Violent bursts of purple magical energy flare up within the dark and oppressive labyrinth chamber. Reina senses the nearby presence of monsters as dark energy swirls around her majestic silhouette.
The blonde saint grips her ornate staff tightly, gulping nervously while looking toward the shadows.
Reina shouts in disbelief, demanding to know why it is impossible to perform the requested magic.
The saint sheepishly admits that she is level 1 and hasn't unlocked any resurrection skills yet.
Reina stands completely frozen and speechless, her face blank with shock at the saint's pathetic confession.
The scene shifts to the snowy mountains as Reina spots a target and signals the arrival.
A purple-skinned demon monster appears, and Reina orders the saint to take immediate action. The princess commands the saint to kill the creature while the blonde woman raises her staff. Lacking magical power, the saint simply bludgeons the monster over the head with her heavy staff. After much grinding, a system notification confirms the saint reached level 30 and learned resurrection magic.
Reina reflects on the effort spent finding monsters while the saint prepares to finally use magic.
The saint shouts and swings her staff, finally unleashing a bright flash of pure healing energy.
Reina watches the magical manifestation with an expression of intense focus and desperate anticipation.
The princess is horrified when the magic fails to work, questioning why Rostin remains dead. Reina despairs over Rostin's fate until the saint realizes she accidentally targeted the wrong body. A massive, terrifying boss monster roars back to life directly behind the unsuspecting silver-haired princess. Reina's eyes bulge in absolute terror as she realizes the magnitude of the saint's colossal mistake.
Anger quickly replaces fear as the princess fumes over the saint's incompetence during this critical moment.
Reina strikes out with a concentrated blast of dark purple energy to correct the saint's error. The massive demon is completely obliterated in a single, devastating hit from the princess's magical power.
The blonde saint is left in total awe, amazed that the creature was defeated so easily.
Reina demands that the saint resurrect Rostin immediately and properly this time without any further mistakes.
A close-up reveals that Duke Rostin's eyes have finally flickered open, signaling his successful return.
The saint asks if he is awake while the duke sits up on the coal floor.
The blonde woman looks down at the resurrected man with a gaze full of immense relief.
Rostin remains silent, staring ahead with a solemn and somewhat distant look in his blue eyes.
The camera focuses on the duke's piercing blue eyes as he begins to process his surroundings.
Reina looks on with a soft, melancholy smile, watching the man she saved from a distance.
Rostin turns his head slightly, his expression unreadable as he takes in the dark labyrinth chamber.
The duke bows his head, seemingly lost in thought after his narrow brush with eternal darkness.
The duke reflects on the fact that the saint was the one who saved his life.
The saint and the duke lock eyes, sharing a quiet moment of profound and mutual understanding.
Reina stands alone in the shadows, her red eyes reflecting a deep and hidden inner sorrow.
The princess feels a sudden, sharp twinge of pain in her chest while watching the pair.
Dark purple flames consume the altar within the labyrinth as the ritual's energy finally dissipates completely.
A massive crowd of citizens gathers in the city, cheering loudly and clapping their hands enthusiastically.
The townspeople celebrate the return of the duke and the saint after their victory in the north.
Reina walks alone through a path of deep snow, heading toward a large, ornate stone building. The silver-haired princess sighs, reflecting on how things should finally be more peaceful and quiet now.
A close-up focuses on Reina's red eye as she senses someone approaching from behind her. The sound of horse hooves crunching through the thick snow echoes through the quiet winter woods.
Rostin catches up to the princess on horseback and quickly dismounts to speak with her.
The duke hands a document to Reina, asking if the current arrangement is officially completed. Reina reads the paper, surprised to find it is a certificate of ownership for the mansion.
Rostin stares at her with a calm, steady gaze, waiting for her reaction to his gesture. Reina and Rostin stand together in the snowy landscape as she reviews the ownership document.
The silver-haired princess looks up from the paper, her red eyes wide with sudden surprise.
Rostin gazes down at Reina with a calm expression, awaiting her response to his gift. Reina remains speechless, her gaze lingering on the man who just handed her a mansion.
Holding the document tightly, the princess asks why he is giving it to her so easily.
Rostin explains that the Mansion of the Abyss is located in the desolate and frozen north.
A chibi-style Reina looks flabbergasted as the duke notes nobody wants to buy that property.
Rostin describes the mansion as a dangerous and completely uninhabitable place despite its grand appearance. The duke claims she made a foolish choice, prompting an indignant Reina to ask for clarity. Rostin closes his eyes, stating that even basic food is a luxury in the harsh north.
A vision of shivering townspeople huddling around a fire illustrates the extreme poverty of the region.
Snow-covered trees stand lonely in a wasteland where the Duke claims no nobles ever visit.
A horse-drawn carriage travels through a blizzard, underscoring that there is absolutely nothing to gain.
Looking back at the princess, Rostin insists that living in such conditions is a poor decision.
Reyna stares at Rostin with an unreadable expression, absorbing his harsh assessment of the Northern Territory.
The Duke remembers Reyna choosing to live among the common people despite the region's many hardships.
Rostin reflects on how Reyna saved both his life and the lives of the northern citizens.
A close-up of Rostin's face reveals a hint of a smile as he continues his reflection.
Looking directly at the princess, Rostin admits her actions were like a final mercy for him.
The Duke believes that the princess's presence was a divine gift bestowed upon him by gods. Rostin explains that the residents of the north were the ones who told him the truth.
Purple flames roar along the fortress walls as the princess realizes her secret actions were seen. Reyna remembers galloping toward the labyrinth on her black horse to rescue the dying Duke Rostin.
A memory shows the fortress surrounded by protective purple flames while the soldiers watched in awe.
Rostin explains that the residents survived solely because those black flames kept the monsters at bay.
The Duke looks at Reyna with deep sincerity, finally acknowledging her role as the hidden savior.
A small white creature rests in a field of grass during a peaceful and sunny memory. Rostin's gaze becomes intense and focused as he prepares to make a very difficult personal confession.
The Duke admits that his constant doubting and cornering of the lady was driven by insecurity.
A dark thought bubble reveals the simple and painful truth that Rostin was deeply jealous. Rostin confesses that he envied the immense and mysterious power that the silver-haired princess possessed.
The Duke suddenly drops his weight, his knees sinking into the deep and cold winter snow. Rostin kneels before Reyna, pleading for her to forgive his previous foolish and disrespectful actions.
The Duke looks up at her, asking if the pledge to protect the North still stands.
Reyna looks down at the kneeling man, her expression softening into one of quiet, thoughtful contemplation.
Rostin reaches out a gloved hand, offering a gesture of complete submission and renewed loyalty.
The silver-haired princess remains silent, her face partially obscured as she processes the Duke's sudden apology. A tall man stands before a woman, vowing to protect the North that she loves. A grand proclamation states that the sacrifice made for the North will never be in vain.
Reyna looks forward with a determined gaze, reaffirming her vow to protect the entire northern region.
The princess realizes that Rostin was present and heard her entire vow to save the North.
Rostin watches her with a steady and admiring gaze, his loyalty to her now fully solidified.
3 members of the mansion staff peek through the doorway, watching the dramatic scene unfold. The onlookers stare with wide eyes and open mouths, stunned by the Duke's display of humility.
From the safety of the mansion, the staff watches the 2 figures standing in the snow.
A gentle and genuine smile finally graces Reyna's face as she looks down at the Duke.
Rostin gently takes Reyna's hand in his own, a silent agreement forming between the 2 leaders.
The Duke bows his head low, pressing a respectful and devoted kiss to Reyna's gloved hand.
Rostin remains in his kneeling position, showing his absolute fealty to the woman who saved him.
The staff members watch the touching moment with smiles of relief, sensing a new beginning approaching. Coral and Anna watch with warmth as a new chapter begins for the mansion's devoted residents. The staff gathers at the entrance, watching Reyna and Rostin prepare to depart into the snow.
Winter's quiet grip remains steady over the landscape as the scene shifts toward the bustling town.
Iceberry Village comes into view, its snowy rooftops housing a populace unaware of their returning saviors. The townspeople gather in anticipation, their expressions shifting from weary survival to a newfound sense of hope. Reyna and Rostin ride their horses through the village streets while the citizens watch them with awe. The silver-haired princess remains composed, her royal presence commanding respect from everyone standing along the path. Children wave enthusiastically at the passing riders, their joyful faces a stark contrast to previous northern hardships. Reyna observes the cheering crowd, her striking red eyes reflecting the weight of their unexpected adoration. The townspeople acknowledge that the black flames were a shield, crediting Reyna for protecting the entire north. Enthusiastic cheers erupt for Lady Reyna as the residents celebrate her and the magic that saved them. Reyna is visibly shaken, realizing that the people who once feared her magic are now praising her. Staring ahead, the princess begins to reflect on the painful circumstances of her lonely previous life. A somber memory reveals a young girl witnessing her parents' despair in a dark, humble room. A dark notification echoes her past feelings of being nothing more than a burden to her family.
Amidst the cheering, Reyna feels a pang of regret for never making her parents proud before now.
Rostin notices the change in her demeanor, observing that she looks inexplicably sad despite the public celebration.
Reyna offers a gentle, subtle smile, momentarily setting aside her heavy thoughts to acknowledge the Duke.
The princess explains to Rostin that she was simply reminiscing about her family for a brief moment. The Duke listens intently, his gaze lingering on Reyna as he processes her rare display of vulnerability. A flashback shows Duke Rebellite's cold face as he brands his daughter a gateway to ultimate evil. Rostin remains silent for a moment, his expression unreadable as he prepares to make a bold declaration.
With a sincere gaze, Rostin tells Reyna that he wishes to become her new family.
Reyna freezes in place, completely stunned by the Duke's sudden and deeply personal proposal of kinship.
The princess's mind goes blank, her red eyes widening as she tries to process his words. Totally bewildered, Reyna can only mutter a confused response to the man's unexpected offer of family. The pair continues through the village as the surrounding crowd continues to cheer for their returning heroes.
A detailed chart illustrates the complex connections between the Wintersnow family, the Abyss Mansion, and regional figures.
The map of the Grace Empire highlights the desolate north and the distant territories of other nobles.
Production credits appear alongside a whimsical figure, marking a transitional pause in the ongoing narrative journey.
Reyna and Rostin ride through the town square, surrounded by the constant roar of the jubilant citizens.
A sudden shimmer catches the light as the princess's elegant dress flows with her horse's rhythmic movements. Reyna looks at her reflection with quiet confidence, acknowledging her own undeniable beauty during this appearance.
The princess closes her eyes, savoring the peace that has finally arrived in the frozen northern region.
Rostin looks at Reyna, beginning to explain the impact she has had on every resident in the north.
The Duke expresses his profound gratitude, telling Reyna she has done him a truly great favor.
Reyna reflects on his words, wondering if she has finally understood the true meaning of his intentions.
The princess looks skeptical, her expression twisting as she considers the practical implications of his sudden kindness.
Reyna imagines a corporate-style setup where family members must still earn their keep through hard work.
Chibi figures work on a production line as Reyna questions if his offer comes with hidden strings.
The scene shifts to a grand, ornate temple standing tall against the jagged peaks of the mountains. Saint Sarah stands on a high platform before a massive gathering of devoted followers and citizens. The saintess raises her staff high, leading the crowd in a thunderous chant praising her holy presence.
Reyna watches the public display of worship with a mix of exhaustion and quiet, watchful concern.
Reyna recalls the game's original plot, noting the saintess was supposed to conquer the labyrinth alone.
Rostin observes the spectacle at the temple, his eyes remaining focused on the unfolding public ceremony. Standing beside the saint, Reyna realizes that this position of glory was never intended for her.
The princess stares ahead with resolve, accepting her role as the hidden force behind the North's survival. The townspeople look on in silent awe as the reality of the recent battles begins to sink in. The bodies of slain monsters lie in the snow, serving as grim evidence of the struggle endured.
A dark clawed hand hovers over a small purple flame on a bloodied surface.
Intense purple magic erupts, consuming the remains of a fallen warrior on the dark battlefield. A surge of black and purple flames washes over the body of a defeated knight. The magical energy coalesces into the terrifying shape of a massive, horned beast in the darkness. The beast roars with power, its form radiating energy across the desolate and dark landscape.
A floating notification warns the user to disguise themselves to avoid raising any public suspicion.
The purple beast begins to dematerialize, its monstrous features fading into a bright, white light.
A final glimpse of the beast's glowing eye is seen before the transformation concludes.
A small bare foot steps onto the blood-stained ground as the purple magic dissipates. A young, dark-haired boy with unblinking red eyes stands alone amidst a field of corpses.
The boy stares forward with a hollow expression, his eyes reflecting a deep, heavy burden.
The scene shifts to a wide view of a village nestled beneath snowy, jagged mountains.
Reyna stands in the snowy square, watching the northern residents go about their weary lives.
A narration panel confirms that while the demons are gone, the residents' suffering still continues.
Reyna's expression remains grim as she observes a shivering townsperson walking past her.
Narration explains that northern residents still face the relentless hardships of hunger and extreme cold. The princess clenches her fist, manifesting swirling purple magic that begins to envelop her form.
Reyna recalls the Duke's suggestion to view the northern people as her own family.
The princess looks down at the snowy path, contemplating the weight of the Duke's words. Reyna channels her massive magical reserves, intending to use her power to help the residents. Waves of purple magic flow through the town, reaching out toward the shivering people's homes.
Inside a dimly lit house, a woman looks around in shock as the air shifts.
The woman is visibly startled, her eyes widening as she feels an unexpected change in temperature.
A family rejoices as their house becomes warm, marveling at the miraculous disappearance of winter's chill.
Reyna notes that maintaining the warmth in all the houses requires a tremendous amount of power. The princess reflects on reaching level 1000 after successfully clearing the difficult northern labyrinth. Reyna feels confident in her ability to handle and control her newfound immense magical power. The silver-haired princess stands cloaked in dark flames, her presence radiating a calm but overwhelming strength.
Reyna finds it satisfying to wield the absolute power granted by her current level 999 status.
A blonde-haired man with blue eyes looks forward with a troubled and deeply disappointed expression.
The blonde man expresses his frustration that a certain measurement is still stuck at level 30.
Sarah laughs and mentions that Reyna had already cleared the northern labyrinth by her arrival.
The blonde man sighs, admitting that hearing Reyna's name spoken so warmly is quite unusual.
The man finds it strange that Sarah only reached level 100 after the labyrinth's conquest. Sarah looks at him with a nervous smile, sweat dripping down her face as he watches.
The blonde man notes that since the labyrinth is cleared, he will change her current focus.
He decides to assign a specialized training instructor to help her improve for her own benefit.
Sarah stares in silence, appearing stunned by the sudden change in her plans and training.
The scene shifts to a lush green forest where a carriage travels along a dirt path. Mercenaries on the wagon complain about being dismissed from the suppression team without receiving decent pay. A man on the wagon asks for confirmation regarding rumors of the Demon King's location.
A man in a straw hat mentions hearing that the Demon King hides in the north.
The man lifts his straw hat, revealing a sharp eye and a cold, calculating gaze. The companion on the wagon expresses shock at hearing the Demon King is in the north.
The straw-hatted man smiles wickedly, clearly interested in the prospect of finding the elusive entity. A pink-haired man looks forward with a predatory grin, his eyes filled with dangerous excitement.
A small white creature sits quietly on a roof overlooking the snowy, distant mountain peaks.
A purple-haired man watches the falling snow through a window, his expression serene and thoughtful. The man gazes out at the winter landscape, reflecting on the current state of the territory.
Reyna stands with her back turned, her elegant dress engulfed in powerful, protective purple flames.
Rostin's piercing blue eyes narrow as he listens intently during a serious private meeting. In the study, the butler discusses the progress of identifying the assassination incident's client.
Rostin asks his subordinate for confirmation on whether the elusive target has finally been found.
The butler reports that while suspects are narrowed down, a significant complication has arisen. Rostin remains stoic as he processes the news that their investigation has hit a snag.
Reyna oversees a large food distribution, ensuring the hungry northern residents are finally fed.
With a kind smile, the princess hands a warm bowl of soup to a girl.
Suddenly, a small hand firmly grasps the edge of Reyna's elegant dark travel cloak.
Reyna's red eyes widen in surprise as she feels the unexpected tug on her garment.
Turning around, Reyna finds a small boy with dark hair clinging silently to her side.
The young boy stares up with intense red eyes and a completely blank expression. A question mark appears above Reyna as she looks down at the mysterious, silent child.
An attendant explains that they have recently taken the orphan into the manor's care. A grim flashback reveals that guards found the boy walking barefoot through a snowy mountain.
The woman notes the boy hasn't spoken a word or revealed his parents' stance yet.
She expresses total disbelief at how quickly the shy child has attached himself to Reyna. Reyna reflects on the harrowing image of a small child surviving the mountains alone barefoot. The boy looks up at her with big, soulful eyes while refusing to let go.
Reyna offers a nervous, awkward smile, unsure of how to handle the child's sudden attachment.
Bidding farewell, Reyna tells the little one she will visit again and encourages his health.
The princess gallops away on her black steed, leaving the village behind in the snow. Glancing back over her shoulder, Reyna's expression is filled with a soft, lingering concern.
Standing alone in the courtyard, the young boy watches the silver-haired princess disappear into distance.
Reyna feels a pang of guilt as she recalls how the child only followed her. Biting winds howl through the desolate northern peaks, accompanied by a surge of blue energy.
A lone traveler in a blue cloak struggles through the vast, unforgiving expanse of snow.
The figure pushes forward against the blizzard, his movements heavy with exhaustion and biting cold.
Kalen shivers violently, thinking about how the freezing northern air feels like tearing flesh. Identifying himself as a warrior of justice, Kalen vows to overcome the cold with willpower.
His resolve fails as he trips, falling face first into the deep, powdery drifts of snow.
With a heavy thump, the red-haired man loses consciousness and lies still in the blizzard.
A trail of footprints leads to Kalen's motionless body lying abandoned in the frozen wasteland.
A local woman spots the fallen traveler, crying out in alarm at the sight of him.
She discovers Kalen collapsed in the snow and immediately calls for help to save him. The scene shifts to a lonely cabin standing as a small sanctuary amidst the mountains. A simple meal of warm soup and bread is prepared for the rescued traveler's recovery. The woman apologizes for the meager meal, but Kalen gratefully accepts, saying it is plenty. She advises the traveler that it would be best for him to return to the south.
The woman explains that the north is a cursed land tormented by the Demon King. Sitting up in bed, Kalen gazes out the window, his thoughts filled with boiling resentment. A terrifying shadow of the Demon King looms over the memories of the suffering people.
Kalen eats heartily, mentally warning the Demon King that his time of judgment is approaching. He declares that no matter where the villain hides, he will find and punish him.
The Abyss Mansion stands grand and imposing, nestled against the snowy, pine-covered northern mountain range.
Inside the manor, the staff members look on with eyes wide in shock and confusion.
Reyna enters the hallway accompanied by an attendant and the mysterious, clinging, dark-haired boy.
The small child peeks out shyly from behind Reyna's cloak, his red eyes filled with caution. The mansion staff bow deeply, welcoming their lady back while eyeing the unexpected young guest. The boy clutches Reyna's dress even tighter, clearly overwhelmed by the presence of the strangers.
The woman comments on the child's devotion while Reyna laughs, acknowledging his surprising new attachment. Reyna comforts the anxious boy, promising to sleep beside him for just this one night.
The princess gently explains that he must learn to be brave and sleep alone tomorrow. The dark-haired boy listens intently, his large red eyes fixed on the silver-haired princess. Reina offers a warm, maternal smile as she watches over the silent child in her bed.
A somber memory depicts a young girl standing alone while holding a medical IV pole.
Reina's crimson eyes reflect a deep, lingering sadness as she contemplates the weight of loss. The princess asks the boy if he likes the name Trevor as he blends up. Reina smiles affectionately at the child, finding peace in their quiet moment of connection together.
She encourages Trevor to grow up healthy so his parents will regret ever abandoning him. The Abyss Mansion stands silent and grand amidst the snowy, pine-covered mountains of the north.
Morning light fills the room as Reina sits up, rubbing her eyes with a groggy expressor.
The princess looks down in confusion, her sleep-deprived eyes widening as she notices something strange. Reina's face contorts into a comical expression of pure shock as she fully wakes up. A man with long dark hair lies in the bed, causing Reina to sweat nervously.
The mysterious man sleeps peacefully while the princess stares at him with an alarmed, bewildered gaze.
A dramatic narration bubble screams the realization that the figure in bed is not Trevor. Panicked and horrified, Reina screams at the top of her lungs, demanding his true identity. The scene shifts to a magnificent white cathedral gleaming under the bright, clear morning sky.
A cheerful blonde woman skips through the palace, excitedly announcing the start of special training.
Paladin Aiden informs the saint that he will be the one in charge of her training.
The blonde woman blushes happily, wondering if her new instructor might be remarkably handsome. While sitting at a grand table, the woman looks down at her meal with disbelief. A simple plate of plain chicken and salad is presented as her designated training meal. The woman stares at the bland food in silence, questioning the nature of her breakfast. The butler confirms that this strict meal plan was specifically prepared and ordered by Aiden. She reluctantly takes a bite, noting that the training regimen feels incredibly intense and full-fledged. The saint approaches a large, muscular man standing in the center of the vast courtyard. She greets the instructor cheerfully, but he coldly points out that she is 5 minutes late. Aiden declares that he does not tolerate tardiness and orders her to run 5 laps. The saint is absolutely outraged by the sudden and harsh physical demand placed upon her. Exhausted and sweating, the woman struggles to finish her laps against the scenic mountain backdrop. She gasps for air while mentally complaining that her new instructor is far too strict. From a distance, a figure watches the Saint Rana as she continues her grueling morning exercise.
A silver-haired man reflects on the important task he has been given regarding the bro.
He thinks about his responsibility to ensure the Holy Lady is capable of protecting the world. Aiden stands tall on a balcony, vowing to do his absolute best to train the saint.
High walls and grand spires define the imposing architecture of the noble family's massive estate.
A pink-haired man in a purple suit turns around with an expression of pure, unadulterated shock.
Rostin stands stoically as the man expresses total disbelief at the demand for an apology. The dark-haired knight explains that he cannot arrest the Duke under the current legal circumstances.
Rostin advises the man that it would be in his best interest to apologize to Reina.
He reminds the noble that he was the one who organized an assassination against Reina. The man shouts in fury, questioning Reina's innocence after seeing her use terrifying black magic.
He declares that having such power is a sin, while Rostin watches him with cold eyes.
Rostin's gloved hand moves with lethal intent as he firmly grips the hilt of his sword. A dark void emphasizes the weight of the Duke's previous words echoing in the knight's mind. Rostin draws his blade, the steel glowing with a sharp and dangerous light as he focuses. The noble falls to the floor in absolute terror as the knight prepares a powerful strike. A massive wave of blue energy erupts from the sword, slicing through the air with force. Rostin coolly states that the morality of power is determined only by how one uses it.
The knight explains that power is inherently neutral, only becoming just through its intentional application.
His blade descends with incredible speed, nearly grazing the noble standing motionless before him. The warning continues, emphasizing that the very same power could just as easily be evil. A powerful energy strike splits the nobleman's image, demonstrating the knight's lethal and precise prowess. The noble in the purple suit trembles with fear as he faces the knight's wrath.
Rostin acknowledges that Reina saved the North despite the nature of her forbidden black magic.
He threatens the noble, vowing to punish anyone who harms Reina for using her magic. The terrified nobleman cowers on the floor as the knight stands over him in judgment.
Ethereal text warns that when the time comes, the winter snow will not stay still.
The noble scuttles away in terror as the knight's heavy footsteps echo through the hallway. After his humiliating defeat, the man grits his teeth while seething with quiet, impotent rage. The Grand Abyss Mansion remains a frozen sentinel within the snowy, pine-covered peaks of the north. A tall man with long dark hair and striking red eyes appears within the manor. The household staff stares in collective disbelief at the mysterious transformation of the young orphan.
Standing beside the tall man, Reina is noted as the one who tied up his hair.
Looking at the man, Reina reflects on why he followed her so loyally as a child.
Narration reveals that the man, though loyal now, was born as the child of a monster. Reina holds a specialized choker, expressing relief at having finally located the important magical item. The princess approaches the man, preparing to place the dark ribbon around his pale, exposed neck. Standing behind the tall man, Reina carefully fastens the choker while he remains perfectly still.
The man stares ahead with an unreadable expression as the magical restraint is secured in place.
Reina explains that the device acts as a seal to ensure he cannot harm anyone else.
Reina believes that as the Devil King, she can easily control the monster Triver has become.
Reina affectionately hugs Triver from behind while he sits patiently in a large library chair.
The stoic Triver blushes slightly, clearly affected by the princess's sudden and warm physical affection.
A crowd gathers in the snowy town square as a supply wagon arrives with food. A villager excitedly shouts that food aid has finally reached them from the distant east.
Officials instruct the hungry citizens to wait in an orderly line for their turn for supplies.
A worker opens one of the sacks, letting out a confused sound at its unexpected weight. He is horrified to discover the grain sacks have been maliciously filled with useless gray stones. The sound of clinking chains fills the air as a man's hands are locked in shackles.
Guards lead a line of prisoners through the town, ordering their immediate arrest for various crimes.
Rostin walks through the dim, cold corridors of the dungeon with a stern, focused gaze.
A prisoner begs for mercy while narration notes that food theft is becoming a growing problem. The Duke stares into the distance, deeply concerned about the North's rapidly worsening food crisis. Rostin and his assistants inspect the manor's nearly empty stores, finding only a few remaining sacks. He reflects on the inability to sustain the population with such meager stores and seeks solutions.
An official informs the Duke that their current facility remains operational despite the surrounding harsh conditions.
She explains that Reina provides them with fresh crops grown inside a hidden magical greenhouse.
Rostin ponders the mention of the greenhouse, his sharp eyes narrowing as he considers the possibility.
Inside the worm sanctuary, Reina picks cherry tomatoes while praising their nutritional value and delicious taste.
An attendant interrupts her work to announce the arrival of Duke Wintersnow at the manor.
Rostin waits stoically for Reina to appear, his expression unreadable as he prepares for their meeting.
Reina questions Rostin about why he refused aid after fighting with the stubborn Duke Rubelet.
Reina demands to know why he chose to pick a fight with her father specifically.
The two noble leaders share tea in a tense silence, the atmosphere thick with unspoken grievances. Reina reflects on her father's difficult personality while attempting to reason with the silent Duke.
Reina suggests that a vague, simple apology would be enough to secure the vital food supplies.
Rostin flatly refuses, declaring that maintaining his personal honor is far more important than an apology. Reina fumes internally, wondering if his precious honor will actually put food on their tables.
Reina lets out a weary sigh, her eyes closed as she feels the strain of leadership.
Rostin acknowledges the gravity of the food shortage and refuses to ignore the crisis any longer. The Duke's expression remains cold and sharp as he calculates their next necessary move for survival.
Rostin mentions Reina's greenhouse and suggests he has a plan to address their dwindling food supplies.
Reina looks toward the Duke with wide eyes, curious about his sudden suggestion and hidden intentions. A panoramic view reveals the harsh, snow-blanketed mountain range surrounding the noble family's massive estate. Sharp crystalline peaks loom over the desolate frozen terrain of the remote and dangerous northern region.
Reina gasps in disbelief, her expression shifting to one of intense surprise and total shock.
Narration explains that this snowy area was once the primary grain belt for the entire north. Standing on a high cliff, Reina marvels at the sheer scale of the expansive frozen plains.
Rostin explains that their historical source of survival originally originated from this specific vast location.
The dark-haired Duke looks on stoically, his mind focused on the potential revival of the land.
Reina looks up at him, questioning if he is truly referring to this specific desolate territory.
Reina decides to summon Veronica for a thorough investigation, seeing great potential in the promising land.
Rostin points out that the lack of snow is due to the area's proximity to the east. A look of doubt crosses Reina's face as she begins to point out a significant problem. Reina notes that the area is simply too vast to ever be converted into a greenhouse. She observes the frozen riverbed, noting the extreme difficulty of providing water for any future crops. Reina mentions that even with her remaining magical power, the task feels insurmountable and incredibly difficult. The princess looks down with a troubled expression, contemplating the weight of their impossible circumstances.
Reina apologetically explains that performing such feats is nearly impossible in their current world.
Suddenly, Reina stops in her tracks as she questions her own assumptions about her magical powers.
An intense mental query flashes through her mind, asking why she cannot simply create the solution.
The story shifts to a small western town filled with palm trees and desert-inspired architecture. A man in a brown suit introduces himself and a woman in purple to the group.
He announces that he has successfully recruited a skilled craftswoman who specializes in making secure safes.
The group meets with an elderly woman holding a cane within a dusty outdoor courtyard area. A grand, sun-drenched building stands prominently against the clear sky of the western desert town.
A golden statue featuring bat wings and sparkling jewels is showcased as a rare and valuable relic.
Eileen states that the statue is an invaluable treasure that must never leave the town's borders. The man asks Eileen to construct a durable safe to protect the precious golden statue securely. A confident voice agrees to the request while a gloved hand moves gracefully near their face. Eileen introduces herself with a bold smile, exuding confidence in her abilities as a master craftswoman. Someone's boots trudge through the deep snow, leaving a trail of heavy footprints behind them. A traveler's hand grips the side of a tree as they peer out from their hiding spot.
A reddish-haired man exhales a cloud of frost, relieved to have finally reached his destination. He looks toward the mansion, convinced that the legendary Demon King is hiding right there.
The man prepares to use an invisibility spell to observe the mansion's inhabitants without being detected.
With his spell ready, the reddish-haired spy confirms that his preparations are finally all set.
He moves stealthily toward the building's spires, keeping a sharp eye on the mansion's interior.
The spy states his intention to uncover the Demon King's true character and current secret plans.
Through a window, he spots a dark-haired man with a collar standing alone in the library.
The figure inside the mansion looks strikingly handsome and composed as he gazes out from the room.
A tiny purple-haired girl in a witch hat floats playfully above the snowy rooftops of the mansion.
After 5 hours of surveillance, the spy concludes that the man inside is definitely the target. The dark-haired figure sits quietly by the window, focused entirely on the book he holds.
Looking closely, the spy remarks that anyone could tell this man is the Demon King.
From the shadows, the spy wonders what sinister schemes the supposed monster is currently plotting.
Triver is seen peacefully eating his meal, his expression devoid of any obvious malevolent intent.
A maid scolds Triver for dozing off and blocking her path while she attempts to clean. The reddish-haired spy watches Triver standing alone on the mansion's balcony from a distance.
Triver crouches down in the snow to gently observe a small white rabbit near the mansion.
The dark-haired man gazes downward with a melancholy expression, his red eyes filled with quiet sadness.
Hidden behind a stone pillar, the spy observes the scene in a tense and focused silence.
The spy internally questions if the former Demon King has truly abandoned his dreams of world domination. Inside the mansion, Reina turns around as a familiar voice calls out her name. Duke Winters now arrives at the meeting accompanied by a blonde woman dressed in a purple outfit.
The blonde woman introduces herself as Eileen, claiming to be a master of various complex machines.
Reina stares at the newcomer with a critical gaze, analyzing her claims and current appearance.
A close view reveals that Eileen's hands are perfectly clean and show no signs of labor.
Reina is skeptical, questioning how a supposed craftswoman could possess such pristine and unblemished hands. Eileen maintains a confident and subtle smile while being scrutinized by the suspicious princess.
Reina remains silent, her mind racing as she evaluates the potential deceit in the woman's introduction. The princess recalls details from her past life to compare them with the current situation. She remembers her father, who spent his life working tirelessly with all kinds of heavy machinery. She reflects on how her father's hands were always stained and covered in thick machine oil. Suspecting something is wrong, Reina decides she must thoroughly test Eileen's actual mechanical skills.
Reina informs Eileen that a specific preliminary test is required before assigning her the main project.
The scene transitions to a grand view of the massive and snowy Abyss Mansion.
Reina tasks Eileen with installing heating and water systems powered by the princess's own magical energy.
Eileen warns that such an extensive project for a manor this size will be extremely expensive.
Reina dismisses the financial concern with a confident smile, assuring Eileen that money is no object. The princess pulls aside a red curtain, revealing a hidden room overflowing with glittering treasures. Massive piles of gold, jewels, and rare artifacts sparkle brightly within the mansion's secret vault. Eileen stands completely frozen in shock at the sight of the princess's unimaginable wealth. The story shifts to a sunny courtyard where a fountain flows within a grand estate. A blonde-haired girl runs frantically through the grounds, her face flushed with exhaustion and effort.
The girl yells out her frustrations, complaining about the repetitive and basic nature of her training. She visualizes herself performing endless sword strikes as part of her grueling daily routine.
She recalls her constant physical training, including jumping rope for hours to build her endurance.
Looking weary, the girl emphasizes her desperate need to finally level up and gain strength.
She wishes that she could be power level just like Reina was in the past. Cursing the Holy Knight Aiden, the girl continues her run while fuming about her slow progress.
A caption announces that 1 month has passed since the project at the Abyss Mansion began.
Eileen presents herself to Reina with a proud and satisfied expression, her work finally complete. The crosswoman explains her new floor heating system designed to efficiently distribute the Grand Duchess's magic.
Reina is genuinely impressed by the warmth spreading through the mansion thanks to the new pipes.
Eileen showcases the newly installed water system capable of drawing groundwater directly into the large manor.
A butler joyfully notes that the staff will no longer need to manually fetch water.
Reina gazes at the results with wide eyes, acknowledging the incredible success of Eileen's mechanical work. Eileen smiles warmly, having successfully proven her expertise and secured the princess's full trust.
Reina looks at the craftswoman with a new sense of respect and satisfaction for the job.
The scene shifts back to the sunset-drenched western town filled with palm trees and towers. 2 men rush toward a large metal vault, ignoring the strict orders to stay away. One man argues that they can simply blame the craftsman if the theft is discovered later.
He grips the massive handle of the vault, driven by a desperate need for the money inside.
The heavy vault door creaks open as the men prepare to claim the valuable treasure within. The men stare into the dark opening of the safe with looks of pure, confused shock.
One of the men trembles in terror as he realizes that the safe is completely empty.
He screams in horror upon discovering that the legendary golden bat statue has mysteriously vanished. The small purple-haired girl in a witch hat floats playfully above the massive abyssal mansion. One maid asks if it's true, another confirms the strangeness, and Reina asks what's happening.
The elderly maid addresses Reina as her lady and begins to report a troubling discovery.
Narration explains that something strange has been happening lately within the walls of the abyssal mansion. Reina listens intently with a serious and focused expression, her red eyes showing deep concern. The maid reports that a blanket in an unused room was found in a complete mess. Another servant discovers that the food they prepared in the kitchen has suddenly disappeared entirely. The group discusses how unsettling the situation is, while Reina agrees that the events are strange. A maid nervously suggests the mansion is haunted, though the elder maid dismisses the idea.
Reina tells Triver she is heading out and instructs him to keep an eye on the house.
Triver appears calm and slightly content as Reina gently pats his head before her departure. A reddish-haired man in a blue hood peers cautiously from behind a wall to observe.
A decorative text box marks that a full month has passed since the current surveillance began.
The spy reveals he has been hiding in the mansion to monitor the Demon King's activities. The spy thinks to himself that he finally understands something about the target's current behavior. He observes Triver lounging in a chair with a book, living a surprisingly peaceful life. Narration describes the environment inside the mansion as being incredibly warm and cozy for its inhabitants. Lavicious meals are served daily, adding to the comfort and luxury of the Demon King's residence. A bright light emanates from a doorway as the narration leads toward a central figure's introduction. The text describes a beautiful and elegant noble lady residing within the walls of the estate. A close-up of Reina is accompanied by a shocked exclamation of her name from the spy.
From his hiding spot, the spy watches Reina walk across the lawn toward her waiting carriage.
With tears in his eyes, the spy thinks that he has finally found the woman.
A vision shows Reina praying in a white gown, surrounded by a radiant and holy light.
The figure of Triver is seen kneeling in a vast white space filled with brilliant light.
Snow falls over the grand, classical architecture of a large building as the scene transitions.
A dark-haired man walks through the snowy courtyard, his heavy coat trailing behind him.
The man stops suddenly as he hears someone calling out the name Rostin from a distance.
Reina leans out of her carriage, waving enthusiastically as she arrives to meet with Rostin. Reina excitedly tells Rostin that their plan for the granary area now seems to be possible.
Reina praises the craftswoman Eileen that Rostin recruited, calling her work truly outstanding and impressive.
The princess laughs while admitting that she initially had doubts about the woman's actual mechanical skills. Rostin listens to her report with a stoic and thoughtful expression while standing in the snow. Reina looks up with a warm smile, clearly pleased with the progress of their ambitious project. Rostin observes her, noting how excited she appears and how brightly she is smiling at him. Reina explains that the granary's main issues were temperature and water, making greenhouses an impossible solution. She mentions that she and Veronica worked together to research and find a viable technical solution. Reina explains the plan to install underground heating pipes powered by magic to raise geothermal heat. A technical diagram illustrates how water pipes will be connected to draw from underground water sources. The plan involves connecting pipes to water found deep underground or even below the riverbeds. A visual representation shows glowing blue pipes running beneath the surface of the frozen northern land. Sprinklers will distribute exactly the amount of water needed for crops to thrive in the harsh environment. Reina explains this will maximize efficiency, allowing them to grow crops without wasting any magical energy. She declares they can save the North from food shortages and plans to consult Eileen next. Rostin gazes at her with a gentle, supportive expression as she continues to discuss the plan.
Reina reacts with shock and disbelief, yelling about a massive cost of 5,000 gold pieces.
Eileen closes her eyes and confirms the high price of the project to the stunned lady.
Eileen explains that even selling every treasure Reina owns would not be enough to cover everything.
The scene shifts to a grand, sunny estate featuring elaborate fountains and meticulously manicured garden paths. A blonde woman at her desk lets out a weary sigh while working on royal paperwork. The saintess ponders if the holy knight Aiden is actually a suitable match for a trainer. The high priest defends the training regimen, insisting that none of the exercises are unnecessary. Looking puzzled, the saintess asks if this grueling process is part of some mandatory initiation. The high priest explains that Aiden and the other knights will eventually become her trusted comrades.
He looks at her calmly, suggesting that they will all stand together on the battlefield someday.
The saintess stares blankly, trying to process the magnitude of the commitment being asked of her. A heavy silence falls as she contemplates the intense future awaiting her among the holy knights. The scene transitions to the sunlit facade of the Grand Holy Knights Training Grounds Buckham.
Upon entering the gym, the saintess finds a room filled with massive, sweating bodybuilders training hard.
She freezes in utter disbelief at the sight of the overwhelming physical displays before her eyes. Watching the intense workouts, she wonders about the terrifying level of dedication from these muscular people. A towering muscular knight bellows a thunderous welcome to the saintess, who stands there completely stunned. The knights flex their enormous muscles with pride, surrounding the small girl with a sparkling energy. Her face turns pale as she realizes just how grueling her new life will truly be. A moment of profound mental defeat washes over her as she decides she simply cannot cope. Desperate, she internally begs the high priest to reconsider, feeling entirely unable to lead such warriors.
Back at the mansion, a massive financial requirement of 5,000 gold pieces is officially announced.
Eileen smiles confidently, informing the princess that there is a definitive way to acquire the funds.
Reyna looks at her with wide eyes, curious yet skeptical about this mysterious new financial solution.
Standing in the opulent hall, Reyna urgently demands to know the details of this potential windfall.
Snow falls over the intricate architecture of the sprawling abyssal mansion under the cold winter sky.
Reyna and Rostin meet a carriage outside, preparing for a high-stakes meeting regarding their upcoming project.
An elderly man in a suit greets them warmly, tipping his top hat with practiced grace.
The man is introduced as Russell, the central branch manager of the influential and powerful World Bank.
Russell explains that the World Bank will lend the gold using the granary district as collateral.
Reyna and Rostin listen intently, weighing the risks of betting everything on their massive agricultural vision.
The banker notes that since the Duke is the contract holder, they will offer low interest.
Narration confirms the Duke's ownership of the granary naturally places the legal responsibility directly on him. Reyna feels the pressure of the hidden burden, knowing she is the one actually running business.
Russell places the formal document on the table, inviting the interested parties to sign the contract.
Eileen watches from the background, her presence a silent reminder of the high stakes now involved.
A gloved hand moves across the parchment, finalizing the deal that will fund the granary project. A sinister, knowing smile creeps across Eileen's face as the ink dries on the loan document.
Russell laughs heartily, assuring the lady that the massive sum of gold will arrive very shortly.
Reyna feels a wave of relief, pleased by how easily she secured the necessary project capital.
She looks forward with hope, imagining the prosperity the completed granary district will finally bring her.
She confidently believes that the project's success will allow her to repay the debt quite quickly.
Distant narration reveals a chilling revelation, stating it was a mistake to ever trust the craftswoman.
The perspective returns to the bright and daunting campus of the Grand Holy Knights estate grounds.
The Saintess is forced into a group run, struggling alongside the tireless and incredibly muscular knights.
Exhaustion sets in as the relentless pace of the training pushes the girl to her limit.
She gasps for air, her stamina failing as the knights continue to sprint without any effort.
She curses the morning exercise, her resentment growing with every painful and sweaty step she takes.
She questions their diligence, noting that the Demon King has not even made an appearance yet.
Suddenly, a stray rock flies through the air, cutting through the peaceful and clear morning sky.
The projectile hurtles toward the training group, interrupting their rhythmic and repetitive morning running routine. One of the knights reacts with sharp focus, his eyes tracking the moving object almost instantly. With a powerful display of reflexes, the knight catches the rock firmly in his bare hand.
He stares at the stone, his expression hardening as he detects something highly suspicious about it.
The knights halt their run and confront a man spying on them from behind the wall.
The pink-haired man giggles mischievously while peeking cautiously over a large stone wall.
The Saintess notes the knights are focused on physical training within the training grounds. Two observers mock the Holy Knights, comparing them to a gluttonous sports team.
A close-up reveals the Saintess's serious and thoughtful expression as she observes the order.
History recalls that the order was established to support the Saintess against the Demon King.
Despite their origins, the Demon King has not appeared for over 1,000 years.
During the long wait for their Saintess, the knights dedicated themselves to perpetual physical training.
Their lack of combat experience leads the public to disregard the Holy Knight's actual strength. A gloved hand firmly holds a book detailing the extensive history of the Holy Knights. The Saintess studies the records, acknowledging the generations of service the knights have provided. She looks ahead with a somber gaze, reflecting on the heavy legacy she now carries.
Bare feet stand on the tiled floor of a bathroom as water puddles around them. Dressed in athletic gear, the Saintess stands resolutely at the entrance of the training hall.
A muscular knight enthusiastically invites her to begin their grueling daily workout routine together.
The Saintess resolves to meet the immense expectations placed upon her over the past millennium.
A piercing scream shatters the silence of the night, echoing through the grand mansion's halls.
Startled from her sleep, the Saintess sits up in bed, looking around the darkened room.
She listens intently, confirming that she heard a distinct and high-pitched scream from elsewhere.
She rushes into the corridor and urgently asks a frightened maid what has just happened. Trembling with fear, the maid stammers out a terrified warning about a supposed ghost sighting. The Saintess reacts with genuine shock and disbelief at the mention of a supernatural intruder.
Looking down from above, the Saintess discovers a red-haired intruder partially undressed in the bathroom.
Kalen panics internally, realizing his late-night bathing plan has been disastrously compromised by her arrival. Stunned, the Saintess demands to know the identity of the strange man standing before her.
She shouts at the intruder, questioning why he is present in her private bathroom late at night. Kalen quickly pulls his shirt down to cover himself as he faces the angry Saintess.
Captured and cornered, the intruder drops to his knees to surrender to the authorities.
The Saintess prepares to give a formal introduction after confronting the mysterious red-haired man.
Kalen offers a bright, confident smile that contrasts sharply with his current predicament as a prisoner.
The Saintess stares blankly at him, completely confused by his sudden and unexpected cheerful demeanor. Narration identifies the intruder as Kalen, a man who claims to be a warrior of justice. Despite his heroic claims, Kalen remains on his knees after being arrested for illegal trespassing. The Saintess realizes with disgust that he has been secretly living inside her mansion for weeks. She connects his presence to the mysterious disappearance of food and the discovery of messy rooms.
Kalen admits to his actions, confessing that he was indeed the one hiding in the estate. He pleads for her understanding, attempting to justify his lengthy and clandestine surveillance of the home.
He shouts that his sole purpose was to monitor the Demon King residing within the mansion.
The Saintess reacts with absolute shock, her face turning pale at the mention of her target.
She stammers in confusion, finding it impossible to believe that the Demon King is nearby. Kalen points toward a black-haired man, identifying him as the hated and long-sought Demon King.
A tense standoff occurs as Trevor looks on with utter confusion at the wild accusation.
Kalen insists that the man's appearance perfectly matches the description of the legendary Demon King.
He declares that he has finally made up his mind after observing Trevor's suspicious activities.
Kalen stands before the Saintess, towering over her as they discuss the gravity of the situation.
He pledges his life to protect her, addressing her with deep reverence and holy titles.
The Saintess is taken aback by the sudden formality and questions her own identity as Saintess.
In its chivalrous gesture, Kalen takes her hand and places a respectful kiss upon her knuckles.
A decorative text box introduces him again as Kalen, the self-proclaimed warrior of justice.
Kalen gazes at the lady with intense devotion, fully committed to his new self-assigned mission.
Feeling overwhelmed and awkward, she attempts to politely decline his intense and sudden vow of protection. Trevor restrains a struggling Kalen while the Saintess observes the chaotic encounter with wide eyes.
Trevor narrows his eyes with a cold, intense glare directed at the intruder before him. Kalen matches his gaze with a look of fierce determination and unwavering resolve. Surrounded by a fiery aura, the Saintess wonders about the strange tension between the two men.
Kalen insists on guarding the Saintess constantly, fearing the Demon King's unpredictable nature. Kalen begs to be her guard knight, leaving the Saintess absolutely speechless by his sudden request.
Feeling overwhelmed by the sudden proposal, the Saintess urgently tells him to wait a moment.
She clarifies to the young warrior that Trevor is absolutely not the legendary Demon King.
Internally, the Saintess acknowledges that while he isn't the king, Trevor remains a dangerous monster. Turning to the self-proclaimed warrior, the Saintess asks him for a very specific personal favor.
She officially requests that Kalen stays close to Trevor and keeps a constant eye on him.
She explains that Trevor is still young and needs proper guidance to avoid turning toward evil. Both men react with confusion as the Saintess gives her instructions from a distance. Kalen reiterates his holy vow to protect her by staying directly at her side. The Saintess firmly rejects his offer to stay by her side, waving her hand dismissively.
She reasons that if Trevor stays on the righteous path, she won't face any danger.
With a gentle smile, she praises Kalen for his upright and naturally righteous character.
She tells him that his presence will surely have a positive influence on Trevor's development.
Trevor looks away in annoyance while Kalen stands beside him, taking the task seriously.
Kalen interprets her request as a sacred mission from the Saintess and prepares to comply.
Walking alongside his new charge, Kalen introduces himself with a newfound sense of duty. He vows to watch Trevor intently with both eyes open to prevent any demonic awakening. The Saintess smiles peacefully, seemingly satisfied with how she handled the two powerful warriors.
Outside the mansion, she decides to let the current situation continue as a convenient arrangement.
Her expression darkens as she admits her true goal was simply offloading Trevor's difficult upbringing. Snow falls over the village as rumors of the new granary district development begin spreading.
Workers discuss Lady Reyna's incredible power and the feasibility of growing crops in the cold.
Village women hang laundry while expressing deep gratitude for the prosperity the lady has brought. Two commoners sit at a wooden table preparing to eat their long-awaited meal. A bowl of hot stew sits on the table, representing the survival of the village. Inside a quiet church, women kneel in prayer, showing their devotion to their benefactor.
A blonde woman prays with a serene expression, thankful for the safety of her community.
The congregation asks for divine protection for the lady who has saved them from hardship. Citizens walk through the snowy streets past several posters plastered against a stone wall. Veronica stops in her tracks, her eyes fixed on a shocking discovery among the notices.
Her face pales as she stares in disbelief at the information displayed on the paper.
A wanted notice identifies Eileen as a thief and fraudster with a 100 gold bounty.
Veronica reacts with horror, realizing the true nature of the woman they had trusted completely.
Distraught, Veronica sprints toward the mansion to deliver the urgent and terrifying news immediately. She bursts into the room where Reyna asks what has caused such a frantic disturbance. Stammering in panic, Veronica manages to speak the name of the traitorous craftswoman, Eileen. Veronica reveals the devastating truth that Eileen is a notorious fraudster and a wanted criminal. Reyna processes the shocking revelation, questioning how the woman who renovated the mansion could be dishonest. She rushes through the halls, desperately hoping there is some mistake about the woman's identity.
She recalls Eileen's confident smile upon receiving the massive sum of 5,000 gold pieces.
The memory of Eileen promising to begin the granary construction now feels like a nightmare.
Reyna flings open a door in a desperate prayer that her worst fears aren't true. She stands alone in the dark storeroom, the silence of the room echoing her defeat.
Looking down at the bare floor, she realizes that everything of value has completely vanished.
The once treasure-filled vault now stands entirely empty, confirming they have been robbed of everything.
Reyna stands in the dim light, her head bowed as she processes the betrayal.
Her eyes flare with crimson light as she growls the name of her enemy. Fresh tracks in the snow reveal the path the fraudster took during her escape.
Determined to reclaim her wealth, Reyna pursues the carriage toward the remote border regions.
Riding through the freezing blizzard, Reyna refuses to let the treacherous woman get away. A ruined stone bridge stands as a silent obstacle on the path through the forest. The dark-haired man blames himself for the security breach, admitting he introduced the thief himself. He apologizes to Reyna for his haste and failure to verify the woman's background.
The man suggests negotiating with the World Bank for another loan to cover the losses.
The bank official rejects their plea, stating that providing further assistance is too difficult. He reminds the duo that the institution already took a massive risk with them.
The banker cold-heartedly announces that the current contract will be terminated immediately without repayment.
Stunned, the man questions the meaning of termination as the situation grows increasingly dire. The official gives them 5 days to repay the gold or face the consequences. He threatens to seize the granary district if the debt is not settled promptly. Reyna gazes out at the snow, knowing the granary is the territory's last hope. Her hand trembles with rage as she struggles to comprehend the magnitude of the loss. She despairs internally, wondering how her plans could collapse so suddenly and completely. News of the fraud spreads through the village, sparking panic about the stolen treasury. A villager explains that continuing the granary project has become nearly impossible after the robbery. A somber mood hangs over the snowy village as commoners gather to discuss the theft. The locals discuss the devastation facing their leaders after being robbed of their resources. Citizens move through the slushy streets as a plan to help their lady take shape.
Silver tableware is gathered, symbolizing the personal sacrifices the residents are willing to make.
Precious wedding jewelry is brought forward to help save the territory from financial ruin. Caskets of heirlooms are surrendered, representing generations of history given to protect the North. Men and women carry their remaining valuables toward a central collection point in town. A massive line forms as residents voluntarily contribute everything they own to save the granary. The dark-haired man and Reyna watch in disbelief as the people gather funds. An elder representative stands before the leaders, ready to deliver the community's selfless gift. A wagon overflows with precious metals and treasures collected to satisfy the bank's debt. The man explains that the collection should easily cover the 5,000 gold pieces. Narration focuses on the resilience and dedication of the people living in the North. They were not merely surviving the cold, they were building a bond of brotherhood. The crisis reveals the deep trust and unity forged through hardship and mutual support. Reyna is deeply moved, never expecting such profound loyalty from the common people. She closes her eyes, feeling the weight of her duty to such a strong community. These people chose to stay and fight rather than fleeing to more hospitable lands. The elder's eyes reflect the indomitable spirit of survivors ready to give everything to live. Returning to the bank, they present the full repayment to the stunned loan official. The banker expresses shock at how quickly such a large sum was gathered. He offers another loan for the development, attempting to maintain their business relationship. Reyna firmly rejects the offer, her expression cold and resolute as she denies him. She vows to reclaim the stolen funds herself and ensure the thief faces justice. Reyna recalls Kaylin mentioning that the thief was seen looking at a specific catalog. The catalog depicted luxurious southern resorts, hinting at the fraudster's potential destination. A dark, vengeful smile crosses Reyna's face as she plots her next move. She declares that no matter where the woman hides, she will eventually be captured. Reyna vows to force the criminal to work until death once she is finally caught.
In the sunny land of Niras, the fugitive thief prepares to enjoy her stolen fortune.
Reyna pauses in the grand hall, her expression reflecting deep thought about her upcoming journey. She stands before the dark-haired man, both remaining silent as the weight of the situation lingers. The dark-haired man breaks the silence by gesturing toward the group standing directly behind the lady. Reyna presents her companions, prompting the man to ask if they are really accompanying herself. Kaylin introduces himself as a warrior of justice, while Reyna explains he will be their guide. She continues the introductions by identifying the elder man as her coachman and personal porter. Reyna turns toward the silent, dark-haired youth standing beside her to finish her team presentation. She reasons that Trevor is far too young to be left home alone during this mission. The dark-haired official stares intensely at the young man, his gaze filled with suspicion and doubt. Reyna dismissively explains that while Trevor looks mature, his temperament requires her constant personal supervision. The official remains silent, clearly processing the unusual composition of the ladies' traveling party. He declares his intention to join the group, citing personal responsibility for the recent security failure. Reyna reacts with shock, questioning if he can really afford to leave the Northern Territory unguarded. He argues that the lack of monster activity makes it safe for him to provide protection. His eyes remain fixed and determined as he prepares to commit himself to the search mission. He reiterates his desire to help, noting that his presence is more useful here than home.
Reyna accepts his offer, officially deciding that the entire group will hunt for the thief together.
The official watches them closely, his blue eyes harboring a hidden depth of focus and intent. Kaylin watches the man with narrowed eyes, feeling a strange sense of familiarity from his presence. The warrior remains certain that he has encountered the dark-haired official in his past somewhere.
The scene shifts abruptly to the vibrant tropics where a towering palm tree sways under sunlight.
A golden plaque confirms their arrival at the southern resort of Niras, a stark contrast home. Vacationers carry surfboards through the bright sunshine, enjoying the warmth of the coastal paradise.
A man relaxes comfortably on a beach chair, surrounded by the luxury of the seaside resort.
A lavish seafood platter featuring a giant lobster is presented, showcasing the region's immense wealth. Servers bustle past Reyna's group as they stand amidst the lively and energetic beach crowd. Reyna stares in awe at the sheer prosperity and life overflowing in this warm southern region. The camera pulls back to reveal the team looking small against the bustling, sun-drenched coastal landscape. She marvels at the incredible level of prosperity found throughout the resort's busy public spaces. Reyna reflects on the happiness of the local people and the healing power of the sun. She gazes upward with a look of pure wonder, momentarily enchanted by the vibrant atmosphere. A sudden comical thought of moving there crosses Reyna's mind, leaving her companions looking confused.
The dark-haired official remains stoic, focused entirely on the mission despite the beautiful surroundings.
Reyna quickly recovers her composure, her expression hardening as she remembers the task at hand. Her determination flares as she prepares to begin the search for the treacherous fraudster, Eileen. She envisions a future where her northern home achieves the same vitality as this southern land. Success in their current endeavors represents a chance to bring this level of life back north.
Reyna slams her hands onto a detailed map, focused on identifying the thief's likely hiding spots.
She plans to target luxury jewelry shops first, knowing Eileen's predictable obsession with high-value gems. The group decides to narrow their search by visiting every store known for dealing in jewels. Reyna is confident that the fraudster's greed will eventually reveal her location within the resort. Narrative text notes that Niras is uniquely packed with high-end boutiques compared to their territory.
Trevor walks through the city alone at night, reporting that Eileen is still nowhere in sight.
Reyna's feet move quickly across the pavement as evening falls over the busy resort time. She begins to doubt their strategy until she overhears rumors about a major jewelry event. News of rare jewels being sold tonight catches Reyna's attention, providing a potential new lead. Citizens discuss a legendary big spender, expressing hope that the mysterious buyer returns tonight. Reyna looks over her shoulder, her interest piqued by the mentions of a massive jewel auction. A massive crowd gathers outside a prestigious building, buzzing with excitement over the night's events. Wealthy attendees begin to enter the venue, all eager to see the rare treasures on display. At a prestigious southern auction, a masterfully crafted sculpture is sold for 20 gold pieces. The auctioneer excitedly reveals the final item of the night, the legendary Fairy's Tears necklace. Watching from the crowd, a mysterious woman smiles as she prepares to make her move. The blonde-haired woman raises her paddle and aggressively bids 50 gold pieces for the necklace. The auctioneer is visibly stunned by such a massive opening bid right from the start. Suddenly, a strong hand reaches out and forcefully restrains the woman's arm mid-bid. Kaylin glares intensely at the woman, his expression full of silent, simmering rage and recognition.
Startled, the blonde-haired woman demands to know who he is and tells him to let go.
The dark-haired official looms behind her, his presence adding to the sudden, overwhelming sense of entrapment.
The woman's face pales with terror as she realizes her past has finally caught up. Reyna rests her hands on the table, noting that the thief's obsession with jewels remains unchanged. The fraudster's eyes widen in pure shock as she recognizes the lady she once betrayed. A cold, triumphant smile spreads across Reyna's face as she finally corners her elusive prey. Reyna looms over the trembling woman, addressing the treacherous thief by her real name, Eileen. Reyna reflects on her long journey, realizing she had forgotten some lessons while fighting demons. Back at their lodging, the dark-haired official looks down at a tightly bound and captured Eileen. He coldly remarks that some humans are capable of far more evil than any literal demon. Eileen desperately pleads her innocence, claiming she never actually intended to steal from the beginning. She argues that she knows the granary's importance and wouldn't dare risk so many lives. Reyna furiously rejects the lies, reminding Eileen that she blew up the bridge while fleeing. She demands to know where the gold is hidden. Eileen promises to return everything from her room. Reyna stares at the thief, acknowledging that Eileen is actually a very talented and skilled machinist. She questions why someone with such useful skills would choose to live a life of crime. Eileen remains silent for a moment before admitting she doesn't fully understand her own path. She confesses that she developed a deep, insatiable greed that she simply could no longer control. A flashback reveals a young, impoverished Eileen staring longingly at expensive jewelry through a shop window.
She explains that she endured years of hellish poverty with the hope of owning those jewels.
Reina watches the thief, her hard expression softening as she hears the woman's tragic origins.
Eileen recalls how seeing the massive treasure chests filled with gold triggered her overwhelming impulse.
Despite knowing it was a betrayal of the northern people, she chose to flee with the wealth.
The thief looks down in shame, seemingly overwhelmed by the weight of her past actions.
Accepting her fate, Eileen tearfully begs her captors to just kill her and end it.
Reina leans against a wall outside the room, deeply troubled by the thief's emotional confession.
Overwhelmed by sympathy, Reina weeps for the thief. Guess her empathy stats are maxed out today.
The dark-haired man asks if Reina is seriously considering trusting a known fraudster once again.
Reina argues for a less coercive approach, hoping to find a better way to handle Eileen.
She admits that she truly understands the pain of poverty and the desire for something more.
The official remains skeptically silent, his expression suggesting he does not share the lady's idealistic mercy.
Narrative text explains that Eileen led them to her hotel room under the pretense of surrender. She maintained a facade of cooperation while secretly waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The moment their guard dropped, Eileen vanished into the night, leaving behind only an open door.
As expected, the stolen treasury was nowhere to be found within the empty hotel suite.
Reina stands completely frozen, paralyzed by the realization that she has been played for a fool.
The dark-haired official refocuses on the chase, noting that their target is trapped on an island.
He calculates that without a teleportation stone, Eileen's only escape is by taking a boat.
Reina plans to meet with a local ruler to officially block all departing sea routes.
Small boats move through the sun-drenched waters surrounding the vibrant resort island of Nearest. The Lord of Nearest, Count Roman, appears dressed in extravagant resort attire with a smug grin. He dismisses the concern, stating Neros is a city of freedom where no one is controlled.
Count Roman officially rejects the request to detain departing ships, citing the island's unique laws.
A close-up shows a hand with multiple gold rings resting firmly on a man's shoulder.
Count Roman, the man in the purple coat, tells the official to enjoy the pleasures of Neros.
The dark-haired man reflects on the incredible frivolity displayed by the local ruler, Count Roman.
The sound of approaching footsteps echoes across the wooden floor as a new figure joins him. Kalen walks into the room, noting the prosperity and freedom that define the island resort.
He acknowledges that the island's unique atmosphere has contributed significantly to its current immense wealth.
Kalen questions if Neros considers itself above the law, catching Count Roman completely off guard. Count Roman's face pales with visible terror as he begins to recognize the pink-haired man's identity. Kalen leans in with a pleasant but sharp smile, heightening the pressure on the trembling Count. He subtly threatens Roman by questioning how his devout father would react to the island's lawlessness.
Terrified by the implied consequences, Count Roman immediately promises to stop all ships from departing. Roman frantically calls for his guards, ordering an immediate blockade on all sea routes leaving Nearest.
Through the window, a large squad of soldiers sprints into action to enforce the sudden lockdown.
The dark-haired official watches from the staircase, observing the sudden and chaotic mobilization of the guards. He remains silent and stoic, his sharp eyes focused on the unfolding power play between the men. From his vantage point, the official keeps a close watch on the interactions below the grand staircase.
A golden map detail explains that the powerful Kraft family governs the entire Southern Empire region.
Narrative text confirms the pink-haired man is the true and rightful heir to the Kraft family.
Kalen stands with perfect composure, casually holding his wine as his authority reshapes the entire situation.
A formal title identifies the pink-haired man officially as the powerful Southern noble Kalen Kraft.
A small purple-clad character appears in a brief transitional panel as the scene shifts to evening.
Moonlight filters through heavy iron bars, illuminating the cold stone walls of a dark jail cell.
Eileen bites her finger in frustration, cursing her bad luck after being captured at the harbor. She reflects on how the sudden control of all ships made her escape from Neros impossible. Despite being cornered, the fraudster desperately searches for another chance to manipulate her captors once again.
Eileen believes she can still deceive the lady, confident in her ability to trick others easily. She dismisses Reina as a naive noblewoman who knows nothing of the harsh realities of the world.
Her eyes widen in shock as a heavy footstep announces an arrival that shatters her confidence.
Reina approaches the cell, surrounded by a terrifying and massive eruption of dark purple mana.
The lady's feet come to a stop at the bars, her presence radiating a cold, overwhelming power.
Reina smiles darkly from the shadows, letting the thief know that her games are finally over. Eileen stares in absolute horror, realizing the woman before her is no longer the person she knew. The dark energy floods the cell, leaving the trembling thief completely paralyzed with sheer, unadulterated terror. Eileen immediately retracts her previous arrogance, terrified by the sudden change in the lady's cold demeanor. She compares Reina's current appearance to a terrifying demon king born from the depths of hell. Eileen desperately pleads for mercy, claiming she had valid reasons for her betrayal and sudden flight. Reina looms over the thief with glowing red eyes and a cold, predatory smile of triumph. The lady calmly promises to listen to every single word of the thief's explanation tonight. She extends a wreathed finger, her dark purple magic swirling menacingly around her hand and soul.
Dark energy surges forward, revealing a realistic, beating heart held within the lady's magical grasp. A final warning dictates that the thief must now speak with her very heart on the line. Eileen's eyes dilate in pure horror as she realizes the literal nature of the lady's threat. The thief gasps and struggles, feeling the oppressive weight of the magical binding upon her body.
She clutches her chest in panic, her face pale as she experiences the lady's newfound cruelty.
Reina asks if Eileen wonders what she did, revealing she placed a flame in her heart.
Reina warns that any lie or broken promise will trigger the fatal magical consequence immediately. A dark vision shows the magical flame incinerating the heart if the thief dares to betray.
Reina closes her eyes with a peaceful, satisfied smile after setting her deadly magical trap. A transitional bubble prepares the scene for the lady's final condition for the thief's cooperation.
Reina commands the terrified thief to swear to successfully finish the construction of the granary district.
Eileen trembles in absolute fear, her spirit completely broken by Reina's terrifying magical display.
The thief collapses in total surrender before Reina, who stands wreathed in dark purple mana.
Eileen returned to the north and threw herself entirely into directing the granary district's construction.
Narrative text highlights the site of the quickly organized granary district as construction rapidly progresses.
The new development brings a long-awaited sense of hope to the struggling northern people.
The wavy-haired woman looks visibly anxious as she approaches Reina with a pressing concern.
Reina tells her assistant they need massive manpower to cultivate the entire granary district.
The assistant points out that relying only on northern farmers will not be enough for cultivation.
Reina stares ahead with a determined expression, silently considering how to resolve the labor shortage.
A dark thought bubble poses the critical question of what their next course of action should be.
Narrative text reveals that the solution to their labor problems lies within the Eastern Territories.
In the Duke of Rubelite's territory, officials oversee the transport of massive grain shipments.
A farmer asks what they will live on if officials take so much, but is rudely dismissed.
The farmers watch in silent despair as their hard-earned harvest is carted away by nobles.
The scene shifts to a large multi-story wooden building within the Duke of Rubelite's prosperous land. At a tavern, farmers complain that regardless of the harvest size, the nobles take everything.
A farmer stares at his hands, wishing he could keep the grain he grows himself.
A bearded man leans in, mentioning that he recently overheard some very interesting information.
He shares a rumor about the Northern Granary District being successfully developed into cultivable land.
The farmer contemplates the possibilities, wondering what life would be like if the rumor is true.
Narrative text explains that the Northerners alone cannot cultivate the vast new land being developed.
A loud shout of shock echoes through the air outside the Duke's grand white palace.
The red-haired Duke of Rubelite shouts in a fury, demanding to know if the farmers are running away.
He rages at his bowing subordinate, questioning where the fleeing farmers think they can go.
The Duke's face is twisted with intense anger as he processes the betrayal of his subjects.
Meanwhile, a group of farmers works diligently in the northern fields, planting the first new sprouts.
The dark-haired official remarks that they were severely short on manpower before the new arrivals. Reina explains that skilled Eastern farmers are passing knowledge to Northerners who had forgotten it. A close-up shows the official's eyes narrowing as he listens to the lady's strategic explanation.
Walking beside Reina, the dark-haired man concedes that the current situation is actually a good thing.
Reina stops and looks at him with a puzzled expression, asking what specifically he refers to. The wavy-haired assistant runs toward them in a panic, calling out for her lady's urgent attention.
She announces with a terrified face that they have a major problem that requires immediate attention.
The wide, cultivated fields of the north sit under a pale sky as the wind blows.
A group of farmers works in unison, carefully tending to the rows of young plants.
A man in a disguise peeks from behind a wooden post, secretly watching the farmers work.
The Duke of Rubelite, wearing a headscarf, watches with a sweating face and eyes full of malice. He realizes that at this scale, his farmers will be completely taken away by the northern development.
Rubelite's eyes widen with a dark realization as he plots to stop the massive migration.
The scene shifts back to the grand white cathedral where the high priest resides.
Rubelite sprints through the hollowed halls, shouting urgently for the high priest to reveal himself.
He stops a young priest to demand the location of the high priest at once. The Duke fumes in anger, complaining that a high priest should not be sleeping until midday. He pounds on a door, identifying himself as Rubelite, and is told to enter. Rubelite bursts into the room with wide, frantic eyes, desperate to share his discovery. A close-up shows a pair of steady hands calmly buttoning up a formal white clerical robe. The blonde high priest stands perfectly composed in his dressing room, preparing for the day's duties.
Rubelite rushes to the priest's side, breathless as he states the matter concerns Reina.
He claims Reina has developed the granary area using the forbidden power of black magic.
Rubelite warns it is difficult to intervene because of the Demon King's power Reina now possesses.
A name hangs in the silence as a question mark poses a mysterious inquiry.
The dark-haired man questions the presence of a power belonging to the Demon King.
Duke Rubelite stutters in terror, unable to find the words to respond to the accusation. The dark-haired man maintains a piercing gaze, his composure contrasting with the Duke's frantic panic.
A sinister smirk forms as a thought focuses on Reina's true, long-hidden identity. The dark-haired man exposes the secret of the Duke's confined daughter, leaving Rubelite utterly aghast.
Trembling with fear, the Duke demands to know how his darkest family secret was discovered. The man casually notes that rumors reach the royal palace far more often than expected.
Rubelite panics internally, realizing the secret he thought was perfectly guarded has been laid bare.
The blonde man asks the dark-haired crown prince to excuse them for a private conversation. He prepares to speak privately with the Duke, excluding others from the coming sensitive discussion.
A steaming cup of tea rests on the table as the private meeting begins quietly.
The High Priest and the Duke sit across from each other, beginning a clandestine meeting. The High Priest observes that the political landscape has shifted drastically since their last encounter.
He notes that the emergence of the Saintess has fundamentally altered their current strategic situation.
Addressing Duke Rubelite directly, the High Priest prepares to outline their plan for the future.
Reyna walks through a jagged, frozen landscape, her gaze fixed on the challenges ahead.
A close-up reveals Reyna's unwavering focus as she surveys the desolate northern mountain peaks. From her vantage point, she spots a large military camp established on the distant plains.
Narrative text identifies the location as the volatile border between the northern and eastern regions.
It is confirmed that Duke Rubelite has strategically positioned his forces along this critical boundary.
A woman explains the Duke is using his troops to intercept farmers attempting to defect. She laments that any commoner caught trying to escape is subjected to horrific public punishment.
Reyna and the dark-haired man listen with grim determination to the reports of the blockade.
Fury boils within Reyna, her eyes glowing red as she hears of the Duke's cruelty.
History recalls how Rubelite's crushing taxes left his farmers with nothing but misery and hunger.
Reyna realizes with burning indignation that the Duke is now even blocking their final escape.
A scream of the Duke's name echoes through the air, fueled by pure magical rage.
Reyna unleashes her black magic, instantly scattering Rubelite's army and clearing the path for refugees.
The winds of change howl across the barren lands as the military presence is erased.
Standing atop a high rock, Reyna watches over the territory she has just violently liberated.
Her expression is solemn as she contemplates the heavy cost of the freedom she provides. Reyna looks out over the wide, open plains, shouldering the weight of her new responsibility.
A dark question arises regarding why the flow of Eastern farmers has suddenly ceased.
A massive crowd of concerned citizens gathers to hear an urgent announcement from their ruler.
Duke Rubelite stands at a podium, looking somber as he prepares to address the public.
He pledges to tell the truth to his people, putting his family's reputation on the line. Rubelite officially names Reyna as his eldest daughter, revealing she was hidden away for years.
He warns his subjects that the woman now in the north is a grave danger.
The Duke terrifies the crowd, claiming his daughter possesses powers that will end the world.
The formal title screen transitions the scene as the political tension reaches a peak.
Rubelite continues his speech, painting a dark picture of the woman currently ruling the north.
Dust motes dance in the air as the heavy atmosphere of the public square thickens. He repeats the dire warning that Reyna's true goal is the total destruction of civilization.
The Duke feigns sorrow, claiming the choice to expose his daughter was incredibly difficult.
He insists action must be taken before her growing power becomes an unstoppable global threat.
Rubelite frames his betrayal as a noble duty, claiming his responsibility as a leader comes first.
He pleads for public forgiveness for keeping this terrible secret hidden from them for so long. The Duke declares a state of emergency, rallying the people to face this fabricated crisis.
He vows to protect his farmers until the end, masking his true greed with false heroics.
Narrative text explains how Reyna's use of dark magic against the army validated Duke Rubelite's recent speech. Soldiers who witnessed the magic spread terror among the common people, causing them to fear their leader.
Eastern farmers gather in a quiet village to discuss the frightening news they have heard about the north.
Malicious rumors claim that the farmers who defected are being cruelly exploited by Reyna, the alleged Demon King.
Two men speak in hushed tones, further fueling the spread of misinformation regarding the Northern Territory's conditions.
Descriptive text confirms that these false rumors regarding the northern lands continue to spread throughout the region. Duke Rubelite stands at his window, laughing triumphantly at the success of his calculated smear campaign. The Duke wears a satisfied expression, pleased that his strategy to discredit Reyna is working perfectly.
Duke Rubelite and the blonde high priest discuss their next strategic move over a quiet cup of tea.
A close-up of a teacup accompanies the High Priest's order to gather the Eastern farmers.
The High Priest calmly proposes that they should officially proclaim that Reyna is the terrifying Demon King.
Duke Rubelite reacts with visible shock, finding the High Priest's bold suggestion to be truly terrifying.
The High Priest suggests emphasizing fatherly love while revealing the truth about Reyna's dangerous and forbidden power. Duke Rubelite expresses concern that such a public revelation might ultimately tarnish his family's noble honor.
The High Priest reassures the Duke, telling him not to worry about any potential damage to his reputation.
A close-up focus on the High Priest's blue eyes reflects his steady and unwavering commitment to their goal.
The High Priest promises that the temple will protect the Duke's family honor while supporting their agenda.
Duke Rubelite remains silent, staring downward as he considers the weight of the proposed religious alliance.
The Duke mentions Reina's strange behavior and her persistent focus on developing the breadbasket area. Standing up, the frantic Duke asks the High Priest what their specific course of action will be. The High Priest looks down pensively, his calm demeanor contrasting with the Duke's visible state of panic. With a cold smile, the High Priest declares that they will simply transform Reina into the Demon King. Duke Rubelite repeats the phrase in a daze, contemplating the gravity of framing his own daughter. A thought bubble asks if the Duke will actually go through with the plan to condemn Reina. The High Priest confirms his intent, looking composed as he prepares for the coming public accusation. He notes that framing Reina won't be difficult since her power is perfect for such a role.
Duke Rubelite walks down a long hallway, leaving the chamber after finalizing his pact with the temple.
A close-up focuses on the Duke's feet as he walks, symbolizing his hesitant and uncertain future. The Duke stops and looks back toward the room, his face filled with lingering doubt and fear.
Narrative text questions why the Crown Prince was present in the High Priest's private meeting room.
The dark-haired Crown Prince smiles, asking if they truly intend to manufacture a Demon King.
The Crown Prince stands by the open balcony watching the High Priest as the secret meeting concludes. The blonde man notes that the prince was eavesdropping on their sensitive conversation from his hidden position. The dark-haired man admits he couldn't leave after hearing the word Demon King mentioned in their plan. He observes that according to the Duke's reports, Reina possesses a power belonging to the Demon King. Leaning over the High Priest, the dark-haired man wonders if the ancient prophecy is actually entirely incorrect. A close-up shows a hand placing a white porcelain teacup back onto its matching saucer.
The Crown Prince insists that the prophecy is merely delayed and demands that the priest handle it.
The High Priest looks on as a hand rests on his shoulder, promising that the prophecy will be fulfilled.
The Crown Prince smiles confidently, his gaze fixed on the priest during their private confrontation.
A close-up shows a hand reaching out to firmly grasp the High Priest's chin.
Holding the priest's face, the Crown Prince dismissively tells him to take care of the situation.
A dark thought bubble commands the priest to simply trust his prophecy as the prince looms over. The dark-haired man smiles sinisterly, reflecting on how long he has endured this boring and tedious time.
The blonde High Priest stares up at the prince, his expression calm but wary. A close-up focuses on the High Priest closing his eyes, seemingly resigned to the prince's demands.
The scene transitions through a vertical blur effect, signaling a shift in the story's setting. A magnificent white palace sits nestled within a snowy forest, beneath a clear, bright sky. Reina crouches in a verdant field, peacefully petting a small white creature near the snowy mountains.
A man with light brown hair watches Reina from behind a barred window, observing her from within.
The man with reddish-brown hair notes the Easterners have witnessed her dark magic.
The elderly couple acknowledges the public's misunderstanding, admitting they were initially quite surprised themselves. Kylan asks the elderly pair how they should proceed with clearing up the citizens' confusion. The man with light brown hair looks away, reflecting on the complexity of their situation.
Reina and the prince appeared taken aback by a sudden realization or piece of news.
The elderly man mentions Kylan, prompting the prince to ask if they intend an engagement.
Narrative text identifies Kylan as a southern heir who refuses to tolerate the Duke's lies.
Kylan explains that Rubelite spread rumors of Reina being a demon king to control farmers. He notes that his noble family has maintained a very long and deep relationship with the temple.
Kalen proposes that an engagement to him would provide Reina with the protection of his family.
Reina remains silent as she processes the man's offer of a strategic and political marriage.
A close-up reveals Reina's calm gaze as she admits the proposal is a tempting offer.
Reina looks down at her hand, weighing the heavy political consequences of the proposed engagement. She mentions that a lifelong commitment should ideally be shared with someone you actually love.
Kalen is visibly stunned by Reina's response, his face showing complete and utter shock.
The dark-haired prince watches the scene with a serious and unreadable expression on his face. The elderly couple stares at Reina in disbelief, clearly surprised by her mention of love.
The dark-haired woman looks on with a bewildered face, caught off guard by Reina's statement.
Reina smiles confidently, appearing completely unfazed by the stunned reactions of those around her.
Narrative text explains that noble marriages are frequently treated as nothing more than a performance.
A palace painting accompanies text describing marriage as merely a joint event for political interests.
Silhouette art suggests that love is often ignored in the midst of various noble family interests. The prince firmly declares that an official engagement is not necessary for their current goals.
He walks forward, stating there are alternative methods to clear the misunderstanding with the Pharmas.
Reina watches the prince intently as he takes charge of the situation and the discussion. A close-up focus shows a pair of hands beginning to play a traditional stringed instrument.
A minstrel introduces a song about Reina, calling her the Black Flower of the Duke's family.
He sings about how the lady was hidden away in the frozen mansion during the blizzards.
The lyrics recount Reina's endurance through the long nights and the harsh, cold northern winters. The performer smiles broadly as he entertains the crowd with a dramatic and rhythmic love song.
Stylized art depicts a light finally reaching the lady, symbolizing the arrival of hope and love.
The narration describes a passionate internal flame that began to burn brightly within the lady's heart. Illustration shows a couple embracing as the text emphasizes her heart was filled with beautiful love. Groups of people gather with interest as the text notes that love songs are universally popular.
Many minstrels are hired to spread Reina's new story as a romantic heroine among the people.
Duke Rubelite reacts with explosive anger, demanding that his guards arrest every minstrel in the land.
Narrative text explains that the Duke was unable to suppress the song once it began spreading. The romanticized story of Reina spreads rapidly throughout the eastern lands, captivating the common people's hearts.
Descriptive text confirms that the farmer's intense fear of Reina is finally beginning to fade away.
Eileen uses her technical expertise to fix a complicated piece of machinery for the northern colony.
Exhausted, Eileen is thanked by a commoner for her help in repairing the building's essential systems. A close-up focuses on Eileen's face as she briefly confirms that her repair work is complete.
Eileen's thoughts reveal her reluctance to continue these chores, though she feels compelled to obey.
Reina approaches Eileen, stating they need her skills to fix lodgings for the new eastern arrivals.
Narrative text notes that the requested task is distinct from the regular manual farm labor. Reina asks Eileen with a cheerful smile if she will take care of the repair job.
Eileen's heart burns with a magical flame, making it impossible for her to refuse Reina's request.
Dejected, Eileen walks away while reflecting on how she would have fled long ago without magic.
A farmer waves enthusiastically at Eileen, thanking her for fixing his house's plumbing previously.
Eileen looks back with a tired and resigned expression, continuing her duties despite her frustrations.
Eileen blushes and looks down, visibly flustered by the current turn of events. A bead of sweat rolls down Eileen's face as she nervously avoids making eye contact.
The wavy-haired woman approaches Eileen, calling out her name to get her attention.
She admits that she had many doubts when Eileen first arrived with Lady Reina.
Standing in the wheat field, she confesses to watching Eileen with suspicion, fearing a scam.
She acknowledges that Eileen's passionate work has finally convinced her of Eileen's genuine sincerity. Bright sunlight illuminates the sharp, snowy peaks of the massive and jagged mountain range.
Standing before the glowing crops, the woman expresses her simple and heartfelt gratitude. A large speech bubble expresses deep thanks for the work that has been accomplished.
Eileen listens silently, her gaze fixed on the distance as she processes the unexpected praise.
A close-up of Eileen's face reveals her quiet realization and reaction to the woman's words.
Narrative text emphasizes that Eileen is working hard for the people without any deceptive intentions. The golden wheat stands tall and ripe, ready for the upcoming harvest in the field. A minstrel entertains a crowd, singing romantic ballads about Lady Reina's life and legacy.
Groups of commoners gather together, eagerly discussing the popular new songs about the lady.
Trevor, Reina, and the prince walk through the palace courtyard as the snow falls softly.
Trevor wears a warm smile, while the dark-haired prince remains focused on their path ahead.
Stylized artwork depicts a romantic couple dancing together amidst a backdrop of vibrant, glowing flowers.
A group of travelers makes their way through a snowy forest toward the distant mansion.
The scene shifts to the bright, clear sky as more time passes in the north.
Farmers labor in the golden fields, working together to harvest the abundance of ripe grain.
The magnificent mansion sits surrounded by a patch of green life within the frozen landscape. A hand waters blooming hydrangeas while song lyrics describe Reina hiding in the mansion.
The wavy-haired woman smiles warmly, her face lit with genuine happiness and relief.
She marvels at the ability to grow such rare and beautiful crops in the north.
Trevor lets out an angry shout, his expression one of complete and utter frustration.
Trevor slams his hands on the table, scolding the woman for doodling in an important book.
The dark-haired woman indifferently eats her snack, ignoring Trevor's loud and persistent complaints. He demands that if she is going to doodle, she should at least do it properly. Trevor questions when she will memorize the alphabet and make his teaching efforts worthwhile.
Reina gazes out the window at the snow, reflecting on how peaceful her days have become. She notices something unexpected in the garden and lets out a small sound of surprise.
Reina spots a young silver-haired boy standing alone in the middle of a flower garden.
The young boy, Luca, looks up at the window with a bright and happy smile.
A wide shot shows the isolated winter snow mansion nestled within the jagged northern mountains.
A soldier approaches the dark-haired man, addressing him as Your Grace and requesting a moment.
The dark-haired man stops and looks back, his expression serious as he awaits the question.
The soldier asks about the song regarding the Black Flower Lady, Reina, seeking more information.
He specifically mentions the part of the song where the lady finally falls in love.
The soldier stares intensely, his face shadowed as he demands to know the truth.
A close-up of the dark-haired man's eye reflects his steady and unreadable reaction.
The man dismisses the inquiry, explaining that the romantic song is merely a work of fiction.
The soldier argues that everyone is curious about who the lady's actual romantic counterpart is.
The man looks taken aback, questioning if truly everyone is curious about such a matter.
The soldier asks directly if the romantic lead is Sir Kalen or perhaps His Grace.
The man reacts with stunned silence, caught off guard by the soldier's bold and direct question.
Walking away, the man insists that the identity of the fictional romantic counterpart is irrelevant.
A close-up shows the man sweating slightly, appearing flustered by the direction of the conversation.
The soldier yells that Reina belongs to them and must not be taken by the South.
The man remains quiet as the soldier huffs in anger, protective of the lady's status.
Duke Wintersnow's training is interrupted by a soldier urgently calling out for His Grace.
The Duke turns as he is informed that the High Priest has finally arrived.
A subtle and knowing smile appears, hinting at the High Priest's hidden intentions today.
The blonde high priest wonders which man the lady has truly fallen in love with.
The Duke expresses shock that even the High Priest is asking about such scandalous rumors. The High Priest acknowledges the Duke's privacy but insists on sharing a significant concern.
The Duke listens intently, his expression serious as he awaits the High Priest's next words.
The High Priest looks away while preparing to address a very sensitive family matter.
Narrative text in a dark bubble questions whether the Wintersnow family is truly cursed. Duke Wintersnow freezes in shock as his painful and tragic family history is brought up.
Narrative text explains that while the Duke survived, both his parents died from the curse.
A small snow rabbit symbolizes his younger sibling, who remains not entirely whole. The High Priest watches the Duke with a calculating gaze during the somber discussion.
A close-up reveals the Duke's stoic but deeply troubled reaction to the family curse.
Stylized art depicts a ring being placed on a finger, representing a potential marriage.
A lady in a red dress looks upward, highlighting the vulnerability of a future spouse.
The High Priest warns that the Duke's future spouse could also be affected by the curse. The High Priest advises the Duke to be cautious while the man remains in silence. The rhythmic tapping of feet signals someone approaching the parlor at a very high speed. An urgent voice calls out from off-screen, demanding to know the current location of Rostin.
The High Priest asks if the newcomer is the famous Black Flower Lady, Reyna.
Reyna enters as the High Priest repeats the name Rostin and issues a stern warning.
Narrative text reiterates that the Duke's spouse remains at great risk from the family curse. The Duke looks down, appearing deeply burdened by the High Priest's grim family reminder.
Dark text emphasizes that anyone who marries the Duke could fall victim to the curse.
Reyna walks through the hall, appearing calm and composed despite the heavy room atmosphere.
The High Priest greets Reyna as Lady Rubelite, noting that they have met once before.
He mentions hearing of the great things she has been accomplishing in the Northern Lands. Reyna looks at the High Priest with a neutral and unreadable expression on her face. An extreme close-up focuses on Reyna's red eyes as she carefully observes the religious figure. A decorative caption identifies the blonde-haired man as being the powerful High Priest.
The High Priest expresses amazement that she successfully revived the fertile lands in the north.
He claims she seems even greater than someone like him who serves the gods directly. Reyna worries internally, frantically questioning if they have discovered her identity as the Demon King. Reyna politely greets the High Priest while nervously wondering if her true nature is known.
The High Priest mentions he heard that the lady has recently reached her coming of age.
He invites her to attend the coming-of-age ceremony this winter in the Imperial City. Reyna processes the invitation to the ceremony, asking him for more details about the event. Reyna concludes that the invitation proves they do not suspect her of being the Demon King. Reyna and the High Priest continue their conversation as she smiles at his official request. The High Priest explains that participants typically bring a romantic partner to the official ceremony. He mentions the popular song and asks which of the two men she will bring. Reyna looks completely baffled, mentally questioning exactly which two men the High Priest is referencing. The High Priest politely bids them farewell and states he will be taking his leave. A final close-up shows him reiterating that it was a true pleasure meeting Lady Rubelite. He walks away while telling the Duke he will see him at their next meeting. A subtle and knowing smirk spreads across the High Priest's face as he exits. He reflects that seeing Reyna in person has finally confirmed his suspicions regarding her identity. Stylized art depicts a shadowy version of Reyna with a terrifying and glowing red smile. Dark, abstract imagery closes the scene, hinting at a looming and dangerous revelation for Reyna. Dark text confirms that the woman is undoubtedly the Demon King. The High Priest walks away, internally pleading for a specific outcome.
A sinister smile appears on the High Priest's face as he departs.
He vows to expose the hypocrisy of those hiding behind deceptive masks. Reyna reflects on their meeting while the Duke questions her sudden arrival. Reyna mentions her conversation with Luca, prompting a confused reaction from the Duke. She recalls the joy of harvest festivals she witnessed in northern regions. The Duke listens carefully as Reyna prepares to share a new proposal. Reyna suggests organizing a harvest festival to celebrate their newly fertile lands. A bright smile reveals Reyna's genuine excitement for the upcoming community event. The dark-haired Duke remains focused on Reyna's explanation of her ambitious plan. Reyna excitedly discusses the abundance of food they will offer the people. Narrative text notes Reyna's determination despite her lack of prior northern connections. A dark vision depicts a woman cradling a fallen figure in shadow. Reyna makes a fierce internal vow to protect someone very dear to her. Bull text emphasizes her commitment to safeguarding the entire northern territory. The Duke stands alone, deep in thought regarding Reyna's recent festival request. After careful consideration, the Duke agrees to proceed with the festival plans. Reyna is overjoyed, but the Duke warns of a serious logistical problem.
He notes the lack of local laborers, but Reyna remains confidently unfazed.
Reyna reveals that Kylan is already securing the necessary outside help. The Duke reacts with skepticism, questioning the nature of Kylan's new contacts. A wide shot depicts a bustling town nestled within the jagged, snowy mountains.
Two women shiver in the snow as a carriage arrives in the village. Text identifies them as Jenny and Lila, expert festival organizers from the south. They shiver violently, wondering how anyone can survive in such extreme cold.
Layla notes that Kylan's world travels make his northern residence less surprising.
Jenny sighs, worrying about the difficulty of working in the sub-zero temperatures.
Lila looks determined, her gaze sharpening as they prepare to start their mission.
Narrative text mentions Kylan's previous oath to never marry amidst floral imagery.
Romantic rumors claim Kylan has finally fallen for the famous Black Flower Lady.
The experts huddle together, stating their goal to identify the mysterious lady.
Stylized art shows a romantic proposal occurring within a beautiful, sunny garden.
The women discuss their assignment, viewing it primarily as a matchmaking mission. They resolve to ensure Kylan gets married by the end of their trip. Raina looks surprised as she processes the arrival of the two southern guests.
Raina shows them a bundle of straw while pitching her festival concept. She explains that the recent harvest has left behind massive piles of straw.
Raina suggests using the straw to build stalls and entertainment facilities for guests.
Raina ponders the creative possibilities of her plan while the experts listen. Conceptual imagery shows lively attractions and happy families enjoying the straw festival.
Raina laughs nervously, hoping her unconventional idea will actually work as intended.
Raina offers polite praise to Jenny and Lila for joining the project.
Lila stares intensely at Raina, carefully analyzing every detail of her appearance.
A dark thought bubble highlights the title of the elusive Black Flower Lady.
Raina Rubelite smiles warmly as her identity is finally confirmed by the visitor.
Narrative text notes that Raina has earned great respect from the northern residents. Her lively and proactive personality is cited as the reason for her popularity.
Lila observes Raina from afar, noting her beauty and excellent physical condition.
Lila trembles with excitement as she prepares to execute their matchmaking plan.
Narrative text suggests Raina is the ideal choice for a traditional Southern Duchess role.
The pink-haired woman weeps with joy over Kylan's new acquaintance while her companion tells her to stop.
A close-up shows a hem near straw piles being gathered from the local granary region.
Raina suggests a more eye-catching idea while the gray-haired woman asks for clarification on her vision.
A hand snaps to signal the start of a magical demonstration for the visiting experts.
Raina ignites the straw with black magic flames, causing the pink-haired woman to scream in terror. As dark energy consumes the straw, Raina asks the visitors for their thoughts on the display.
The three women watch the black fire, with the experts completely paralyzed by the magical sight. Raina offers a bright smile, seemingly oblivious to the fear her magic has just inspired. The visitor questions the meaning of fire watching while sweating from extreme nervousness. Someone's definition of relaxation is clearly a bit more incendiary than most people's. Dark text highlights the shock of seeing black flames consuming the straw piles during the demonstration. Narrative text explains that using such dangerous black magic for trivial tasks is highly inappropriate. The visitor panics, wondering if the bride-to-be has actually been the Demon King this whole time. Kylan smiles awkwardly and admits that the sight of Raina's magic is naturally quite shocking. Looking at the burning straw, Kylan mentions that he has encountered these specific flames before. Kylan recalls being stunned the very first time he witnessed the power of Raina's unique magic.
The black flames continue to flicker intensely as the story shifts into a brief flashback.
In a memory, Raina asks Veronica if the current amount of magic is sufficient for their needs.
Veronica suggests lowering the flames while a frightened Kylan watches from a distance in the background.
A younger Kylan gapes in horror upon realizing that Raina is actually utilizing forbidden black magic.
A textured transition creates a somber mood as Kylan reflects on his past misconceptions about her.
Kylan admits that he initially mistook Raina for a holy saintess when they first met.
Returning to the present, Kylan asks Lila and Jenny to look at the burning magical straw.
An urgent voice calls out for the Lord as a hand reaches toward the dark energy.
Kylan looks down with a serious expression, his profile illuminated by the glow of the fire.
Kylan stands alone by the magical flames, appearing deep in thought about Raina's true nature.
Jenny and Lila share a meaningful look, their expressions turning serious as they judge the situation.
Kylan explains that despite frequent misunderstandings, Raina is definitely not the actual Demon King.
He explains the origin of her famous song as a strategy to dispel rumors of her darkness.
The pink-haired woman looks skeptical, beginning to piece together the truth about Raina's public image.
A romantic vision questions if the pair are truly in love despite the fabricated marriage rumors. Jenny sighs and walks through the snow, concluding that the marriage plan is effectively over. Lila stops and looks back, clearly disagreeing with the idea that the relationship is fake. She reflects that Kylan's behavior whenever he was with Raina told a much more romantic story.
A close-up of Kylan's gentle face confirms Lila's belief that he is truly a man in love.
Glowing text states the necessity of preparing a grand stage according to their secret matchmaking plan. The two experts resolve to build a romantic stage that will finally unite the two together.
A decorative caption introduces the grand finale of the Northern Festival featuring the lady herself. Stylized art depicts Raina in a gown standing with a tall, shadowed man at a ceremony.
Raina points to herself in surprise, questioning the specific details of her role in the finale.
Jenny enthusiastically explains that this scene is the festival's most anticipated moment for the local audience.
Kylan enters the room with a massive bouquet of yellow flowers, catching Reyna by surprise.
A sparkling caption suggests that the spotlight and flowers should belong to Lord Kylan this winter. A soldier shouts in fierce protest, refusing to allow anyone but the Duke on the stage.
The scene shifts to Duke Roston's office, where the soldier insists His Grace takes the stage.
Jenny yells in frustration, demanding to know why there is opposition to Kylan being the lead. The soldier argues that as the Duke of the North, Roston is the only appropriate choice. Visual sparks fly as Jenny and the soldier engage in an intense standoff over the festival's lead.
Reyna and Kylan stand awkwardly in the distance while she holds a small white snow rabbit.
The tiny snow rabbit makes a happy face, completely oblivious to the heated conflict nearby. The debate regarding Kylan's participation in the festival's finale is interrupted by a sudden, loud objection. Chase suddenly appears and makes his firm opposition to the current festival stage plans known. As the argument continues, Chase claims that the song for the performance is actually a romance. The man shouts a passionate final word as he prepares to deliver his ultimate argument. Chase argues that someone in love should be on stage, prompting Lila to ask for clarification.
A hand reaches out as the heated discussion over the festival's romantic lead reaches its peak.
Lila stuns the group by loudly declaring that Kylan is truly in love with Lady Reyna. A shell-shocked Kylan stares blankly in total confusion and can only utter a bewildered response. While Reyna looks on calmly, Kylan is overcome by extreme nervous tension and visible embarrassment. Kylan blushes furiously and asks what as he struggles to process the sudden romantic accusation. The tiny snow rabbit remains completely blissful and content amidst the surrounding romantic chaos. A romantic vision depicts Reyna dancing gracefully with a mysterious and elegant shadowed partner. Northern residents are envisioned looking up with hope, awaiting their lady's grand festival ceremony. During a meal, Reyna sighs and asks if her role is simply standing on the stage.
Veronica questions why such a trivial matter is being treated with such exaggerated importance.
Reyna looks pensive as she reflects on the underlying significance of the upcoming festival finale.
Veronica explains that for noblewomen, participating in public events is a deeply political act.
She notes that your stage partner can significantly influence the public perception of the residents. Reyna reflects on the idea of her presence having the power to change local thoughts.
A vision shows children joyfully playing on the straw slides built for the community celebration.
Villagers are depicted exploring the intricate straw maze during the lively and vibrant Harvest Festival. A large crowd gathers at the festival grounds, eager for the main entertainment to begin. Performers act out a scene on a grand stage beneath bright spotlights and red curtains. A decorative caption formally announces that the Grand Northern Festival has officially begun.
Reyna tries on a magnificent pink dress while the Southern experts watch her in awe.
Standing elegantly in her new gown, Reyna radiates beauty and Southern-style noble sophistication.
Jenny and Lila explain that such extravagant dresses are standard for high-ranking Southern noblewomen. Narrative text highlights that the Duke's family of Craft is the wealthiest noble household.
Lila suggests that Reyna would fit perfectly in the South alongside Lord Kylan. Reyna looks radiant in her elaborate pink dress, preparing for the festival's main event.
Reyna quietly considers the implications of traveling to the southern regions with Lord Kylan. A moment of sudden clarity strikes Reyna as she stands before her southern guests.
Kylan looks handsome and kind while holding a bright bouquet of yellow flowers.
Reyna holds her hands together, appearing moved by the sincerity of the romantic moment. A luxurious carriage crosses the drawbridge of the snowy castle as the event approaches.
The castle staff and residents gather outside in the snow to welcome the arriving delegation.
Chase and Veronica stand together, watching as the important arrival finally takes place. Reyna looks upon her guests, noting that she finally understands the true situation. A warm and genuine smile spreads across Reyna's face as she prepares for her stage. A polished shoe steps onto the wooden stage, signaling the start of the final ceremony. A stunning bouquet of fresh pink roses is prepared as the centerpiece for the finale. Reyna turns in surprise as someone approaches her during the festival's grand finale.
Duke Roston appears with the roses, confirming that Reyna chose him for the stage.
Reyna smiles at the crowd, determined not to disappoint the hopeful northern residents. Duke Roston gazes softly at Reyna, his presence illuminating the grand festival stage. Reyna looks into the Duke's eyes, momentarily caught off guard by his gentle expression. The Duke and Reyna stand together on stage, united before the cheering northern audience. The title card for Chapter 39 features the main characters in a dramatic, stylized pose. The audience roars with approval as the Duke and Reyna appear together on stage.
Kaylin and the Southern experts watch from the side, appearing defeated by the outcome.
Layla and Jenny attempt to comfort Kylan after his rejection, while he insists he was not dumped. A child watches through the wooden slats as a heavy platform moves during the festival preparations.
A decorative text box announces that the play featuring the Duke and the Lady has officially ended.
Reyna questions Roston about his emotional performance, noting that he actually cried while delivering his lines. Duke Roston offers a gentle and sincere smile as he stands under the theater spotlights. A chibi-style Reyna blushes in confusion, wondering why the Duke is suddenly smiling so warmly. Roston explains that it has been a very long time since he organized the Northern Festival. A distant view of the castle highlights the narrator's hope of refilling the frozen grain storages.
Rostin admits he never expected such a peaceful day without defeating the Demon King first.
Looking intently at Reyna, the Duke expresses his desire to do anything he can for her.
Rostin asks Reyna to tell him if there's anything she wants so he can repay her.
Overwhelmed by the Duke's sudden sincerity, Reyna remains silent and stares at him with wide eyes. Reyna internally admits that Rostin is actually quite handsome whenever he chooses to smile like that. Reyna clears her throat awkwardly, explaining that she did not help him just to get something back.
A soft glow surrounds Reyna as she looks up, seemingly moved by the Duke's earnest offer.
An old artisan remarks that in 30 years of work, he has never made such a statue. The soldier explains that the unique statue was a special request from the Duchess herself.
After looking at the plans, the artisan confirms that the project should not be difficult to make.
The soldier notes that the subject for the statue is conveniently located right nearby in the mountains.
Workers in the snow shout instructions to tie the ropes tightly and pull toward the cliffside.
Rostin watches from behind as Reyna stands near the edge of a high, snowy mountain peak.
Reyna stands alone against the vast winter landscape, overlooking the rugged terrain of the northern peaks.
Reyna explains that placing the new statue on this specific hill will serve a strategic purpose.
A worker shouts for the group to pull well as they move a heavy object through snow.
Thick ropes strain under extreme tension as the workers coordinate their strength to move the massive load.
A villager remarks that this is the first time he has seen such a statue in his life.
The completed statue depicts a humble peasant woman holding a massive loaf of bread toward the sky.
Narrator text explains that traditionally, most statues depict gods, emperors, or high-ranking members of noble families.
The narrative text highlights that honoring common farmers with a grand statue is an incredibly bold move.
Reyna looks up at her creation with a sense of pride and a faint, satisfied smile.
Reyna explains that the farmer statue will naturally show everyone that the laborers are respected in the north.
She notes that Eastern farmers can use the statue as a guidepost to cross the border easily.
Reyna's expression remains warm as she discusses the benefits for the northern residents and incoming farmers.
Suddenly, Reyna's inner thoughts reveal her malicious true goal of completely ruining the Eastern Duke's reputation.
Reyna breaks into a maniacal, chibi-style laugh as she revels in her secret plan for political revenge.
Rostin watches Reyna's sudden change in mood with a serious and contemplative side profile expression.
Rostin reflects on the strangeness of a duchess who is so intent on ruining her own father.
A wide panorama shows the contrast between the frozen northern cliffs and the lush valley below.
As night falls, a man suggests heading home, but his companion suddenly spots something in the dark.
A group of hands reaches toward a cluster of rare, glowing mushrooms found in the dark woods.
The villagers excitedly begin digging up the mushrooms, urging each other to work quickly before total darkness.
A man hauls a heavy sack over his shoulder, rushing to finish the harvest before night deepens.
The man stops in his tracks, alerted by a strange and ominous noise echoing through the woods.
Sudden, jagged blue cracks tear through the ground and rocks, glowing with a strange magical energy.
The villagers recoil in terror as they witness a mysterious hole opening up in the mountainside. A massive, dark abyss swallows the landscape as the ground continues to crack and shift violently.
Glowing text warns that a mysterious hole has appeared deep within the heart of the snowy woods.
A quiet mansion stands illuminated under the moon, surrounded by the shadows of the high peaks.
Kylan yawns sleepily in the middle of the night, appearing completely exhausted from the day's events. Kylan notices a dark silhouette approaching and questions if the person is Trevor in a cautious tone.
Kylan finds Trevor in the dark and questions why he is wandering so late.
Trevor turns around with a cold gaze, shrouded in an ominous and flickering purple aura.
Kylan looks on in visible shock and sweat, clearly alarmed by the dark energy present. Observing the strange phenomenon, Kylan fearfully questions if Trevor is actually practicing forbidden black magic.
Narrator text reveals the terrifying discovery that Trevor is somehow utilizing Reyna's own black magic.
A divine vision depicts a winged saint descending from the heavens to save the world.
A silver-haired man reflects on a divine revelation he received over 1,000 years ago.
The decorative title card officially announces the start of a new chapter in the series. A nervous blonde woman peeks around a stone pillar while sweating profusely from the stress.
Aiden catches her in the act and asks if she was attempting another sneaky escape. Aiden addresses the saint while she acknowledges him with formal respect as Sir Aiden.
Aiden leans in closer, directly questioning her about her obvious intentions to sneak out again.
The saint remains awkwardly silent, sweating as she fails to come up with a valid excuse.
She admits that she did not expect him to return from his duties quite so early. Aiden firmly reminds her that she is prohibited from ever leaving the confines of the temple.
The saint attempts to offer a protest, but her words fail her under his stern gaze. Aiden emphasizes that she is the only person destined to save the world with her power.
He warns her that the outside is dangerous and no one can ever replace her position. Aiden requests that she strictly adhere to the internal schedule he has personally set for her.
The saint looks down with a sorrowful expression, feeling the weight of her heavy, forced destiny.
She turns away from him in silence, clearly frustrated by her lack of personal freedom.
Aiden watches her walk away, his expression remaining cold and unwavering despite her obvious distress.
He gazes after her with a look of intense calculation and silent, rigid authority. The saint looks back over her shoulder one last time before retreating further into the temple. Later, the two sit together in a lavish sitting room for a formal and tense meeting. Aiden provides a simple and direct affirmative response to a question during their serious discussion.
A memory shows villagers witnessing the ground crack as a new monster labyrinth suddenly opens.
Graphic text warns of the urgent need to act before dangerous monsters begin to spread.
The saint looks solemn as she prepares herself for the difficult task of clearing the labyrinth. Aiden gives a faint, satisfied smile as he continues his discussion with the reluctant saint. He reassures her that he would never send her into a dangerous labyrinth without proper support.
A vast panoramic view of the fog-shrouded western mountains establishes the location for the next mission. The saint charges into action with a battle cry, swinging her ornate staff with great force. She strikes down a large, red-eyed frog monster with a powerful wave of magical energy. The saint stands deep within the dark cave, ready to face the next wave of enemies. A massive creature is completely vaporized in a brilliant explosion of holy light and divine power.
Pausing to catch her breath, the saint lets out a sigh after defeating the monsters.
The surrounding soldiers praise her skill, predicting they will clear the labyrinth at this rapid rate.
Aiden watches her from the shadows in the background, keeping a very close and silent watch. He continues to observe her performance with a calm, analytical face that hides his true intentions.
The saint looks toward the next chamber of the cave, preparing herself for a greater threat.
A monstrous snake creature lunges from the darkness, hissing loudly as it attacks the group. The saint releases a magnificent burst of blue light, surprising everyone with her incredible magical capacity.
She joyfully announces her level up while the soldiers celebrate her conquest of the Western Labyrinth.
Aiden remains silent and observant, his thoughts obscured while everyone else cheers for the victory. Back in the library, the saint peeks out from behind a shelf and calls for Aiden.
She asks if she can finally go outside and play with friends now that the work is finished.
Aiden immediately denies her request, his expression remaining cold and firm as he continues reading. He tells her that she may socialize with her friends at another time in the future.
The saint looks absolutely dejected, her face falling at the realization of her continued confinement.
Aiden asks the saint if she is dissatisfied with the training schedule he created for her. Aiden questions why the world's savior is unhappy, while the saint looks on with extreme anxiety. In a flashback, the saint stands in the library and asks Sir Aiden to be friends. Aiden looks at her with a stern, cold gaze, showing no emotion toward her friendly request. Aiden denies her request immediately, stating that any personal friendship between them is strictly prohibited. Narrator text explains that Aiden's duty is strictly to train the saint, precluding any personal friendship. Birds fly over the Grand Temple as the memory of their tense interaction finally fades away. A foot in a leather shoe dashes quickly across the stone floor of the temple hallway. A messenger rushes toward Aiden in the hallway, calling his name to deliver some urgent news. The man reports that a massive fire has broken out and is spreading across the entire capital. The messenger confirms that flames are engulfing the whole city, appearing extremely panicked by the disaster. Aiden realizes with dark frustration that the saint skipped her training to play in the capital. The scene shifts to a sunny day at a mansion where someone questions what is happening. Raina asks Kellen to explain his strange claims, looking confused by his sudden and serious mood. Kellen accuses Trevor of practicing black magic while pointing toward the man standing nearby in the room. Raina's expression turns sharp as she reacts to the shocking news about Trevor's alleged forbidden magic.
Raina walks quickly toward Trevor's room, wondering if he is truly the monster Kellen just described.
Raina flings open the door and shouts for Trevor, bursting into his private study with urgency.
Raina pauses in the doorway, her eyes wide as she takes in the scene inside the room.
Trevor has fallen asleep at his desk, apparently defeated by the sheer power of boredom and textbooks.
Trevor lies deeply asleep on a large bed with research materials and books scattered all around him.
Raina and Kellen look down at the messy room, seeing books and papers strewn across the floor. Raina steps onto a discarded piece of paper as she approaches the bed to investigate Trevor's state. Trevor wakes up and rubs his eyes, questioning Raina about her sudden presence in his bedroom.
Kellen demands to know where Trevor went last night, appearing highly suspicious of his recent activities.
Raina watches the confrontation between the two men from the background with a neutral and silent expression. Trevor claims he simply fell asleep at night, looking confused by the intense questioning from Kellen. Kellen calls Trevor a liar, insisting that they bumped into each other during the previous night. Trevor questions the mention of black magic while Kellen tells him to stop feigning his innocence. Raina crouches down to pick up the various papers and letters strewn across the bedroom floor. Raina carefully examines the letter she found, her expression becoming analytical and deeply focused on it. The document in Raina's hand shows extremely messy, childlike writing that is barely legible to her. Raina tells Kellen he must have seen wrong because Trevor was clearly just studying all night. Chibi Raina suggests Kellen's hallucinations are caused by his constant suspicions about Trevor being the Demon King. Kellen is left speechless and sweating, clearly shocked by Raina's firm and sudden defense of Trevor.
Raina notes that Trevor should practice writing, though she commends his studious nature as a natural trait.
Kellen screams in total denial, refusing to believe that Trevor would ever actually choose to study.
In an ominous purple thought bubble, Kellen points out that Trevor is currently smiling like a villain.
The perspective shifts back to the past, showing the capital city burning under a dark sky. Knights survey the smoldering ruins of the city, overwhelmed by the scale of the fiery destruction.
Narrative text emphasizes that the entire city has been completely leveled and burned to the ground. A survivor peeks out from the rubble, questioning if the approaching men are the Holy Knights.
The man asks what brings such prestigious knights to a place that has been completely destroyed. A desperate woman holding a baby begs the passing knights for help and some water.
The woman repeats her plea for water as she holds her weak, soot-covered child closer.
Aiden commands his soldiers not to look back at the suffering villagers they are currently passing.
Aiden looks forward with a cold gaze, reminding his men that they have a mission to complete. The soldiers look back at the villagers with visible guilt but follow Aiden's strict, cold orders.
The knights continue walking through the ruins, leaving the coughing and desperate survivors behind them.
Aiden thinks to himself that the situation is unfortunate as he leads his men away.
Knights are ordered to divide into pairs and locate the missing Saintess within the ruins. 2 patrolling knights approach a soot-stained survivor to ask if he has seen the Saintess. The survivor laughs, claiming the Saintess is far superior to anyone like the common knights. He looks up with a joyous expression, seemingly unbothered by the chaos and destruction.
One knight labels the man delusional and advises his partner to search elsewhere in town.
The 2 knights pause as a brilliant light begins to illuminate the dark, smoky street.
A close-up reveals the soot-covered face of a villager who has succumbed to the fumes.
Aiden stands amidst the corpses, wondering where the Saintess could have gone during the disaster. He turns his head slightly, his expression cold as he observes the scale of destruction. Aiden's sharp eyes narrow as he focuses on an unexpected development nearby in the ruins. A miraculous glow surrounds the fallen villagers, causing a bystander to gasp in utter shock.
Aiden realizes that the people he presumed dead are inexplicably reviving before his eyes.
He walks through a stone archway, following the trail of divine energy through the rubble. Aiden shields his eyes from an intense radiance that has completely transformed the surrounding landscape.
He stares ahead with wide eyes, stunned by the magnitude of the holy power displayed.
A massive, glowing angelic figure with wings of light appears within a pillar of radiance.
The Saintess stands with her hands clasped in prayer, serving as the source of light.
Aiden watches the Saintess from a distance, mesmerized by the display of her hidden potential.
A soldier looks on in awe, praying for God to be with the miraculous one.
Aiden's mouth is set in a firm line as he observes the unfolding scene silently.
The Saintess releases a massive burst of holy energy that washes over the ruins.
A close-up captures her serene face and closed eyes as she focuses on her task.
The scene shifts to a grand white estate surrounded by greenery under a clear sky.
Kellen sits in a luxurious room, pensively holding a cup of tea during a meeting. He notes that the Saintess should have prioritized gaining more experience in the Northern Labyrinth.
Kellen's gaze is analytical as he reflects on the strategic value of the Saintess. Narrative text explains that the current Saintess is not yet a match for Lady Reyna.
Kellen concludes that Reyna must be assigned a different task until the Saintess grows stronger.
Reyna reacts with shock, questioning how Western bandits could have possibly stolen all their supplies. She expresses her disbelief to her attendants about the theft of 10 food carts. Back in the ruins, the Saintess remains standing in the center of her fading circle.
She turns her head, her expression neutral as she senses someone approaching from behind.
The Saintess recognizes the knight and addresses him formally as Sir Aiden amidst the embers.
She bows her head, offering an apology for skipping her training and sneaking out again.
The Saintess admits she never envisioned her small escape coinciding with such a tragic fire. Villagers rush forward, begging the knight to punish them instead of scolding the Saintess.
They insist they were the ones who persuaded her to leave her training that day. A close-up focuses on the Saintess's foot as she stands amidst the charred remains.
One of the villagers is gripped by sudden terror, sweating as he realizes Aiden's rank.
The other man stammers in fear, finally identifying Aiden as the captain of knights.
The Saintess looks at Aiden with worry, questioning his silence after her formal apology. Aiden drops to one knee and bows deeply, offering his own apology to the Saintess.
He declares that as her servant, his true duty is to assist her always.
Aiden continues his formal apology for his previous cold behavior toward the young woman. The Saintess stares down at him with wide golden eyes, clearly confused by his humility. The villagers excitedly ask if they are now free to visit the capital city.
The Saintess looks pensive, stating there is a certain knight's rule she wishes to break.
Aiden looks up with a curious expression, asking her to specify which rule.
She points toward the masses of injured survivors, pleading with him to help them.
She acknowledges the rule against interference in disasters, but asks for an exception today. The Saintess pleads with Sir Aiden to help the people she has worked so hard to save.
Sir Aiden looks down with a calm and thoughtful expression as he considers the Saintess's heartfelt request.
Aiden tells the Saintess he will do as she wishes and adds that there is more to say.
The Saintess looks relieved and peaceful after hearing Aiden's promise to help the fire victims. Sir Aiden maintains a stoic and serious expression as he prepares to carry out his new mission.
A close-up captures Aiden closing his eyes in a moment of silent focus before taking action.
Narrative text explains that for the first time, holy knights were deployed to help during a civilian disaster.
A man leads a group of survivors in a joyous celebration amidst the recovering town.
Narrative text states people believed the saintess would protect them even from the Demon King.
A close-up shows hands clasped in prayer as a villager expresses faith in the saintess's victory.
A dark silhouette of the Demon King Reyna appears as the narrative mentions how she invades. Reyna is furious, exclaiming it is already the 50th carriage robbed and vowing to personally destroy the bandits.
A map identifies the Empire's northern and western regions, separated by a vast mountain range.
Narrative text highlights the West's prosperous supply chain for spices, jewels, alcohol, and fabrics. Carts carry surplus grain to the trade route in exchange for valuable items from the western region. Reyna is visibly angry as she reports that western bandits have robbed them of all their grain.
Reyna fumes with purple energy, questioning how they dare touch her belongings and vowing to punish them.
A man drives a carriage that is enveloped in the purple glow of Reyna's intense anger.
Narrative text notes that when Reyna joined the convoy, not a single trace of bandits was seen.
Reyna notes that bandits never show up when she goes along, but she cannot accompany them always.
Shadows of bandits watch the convoys from the cliffs, waiting for Reyna's absence to launch an ambush.
Rostin explains that many nomadic tribes have lived in the mountain range for ages.
Reyna concludes the western bandits are likely a nomadic tribe who move through the mountains easily.
Rostin expresses his desire to search every corner and punish the bandits despite the steep terrain.
Reyna gestures emphatically while complaining they are now lacking even basic supplies like salt and pepper.
A dialogue bubble asks for any possible solution to the supply shortage caused by the bandit thefts.
Rostin offers to deliver supplies personally using the teleport stone, asking Reyna what else is needed. Reyna looks surprised and slightly flustered by Rostin's sudden and generous offer of assistance.
A large, white estate stands quietly amidst a cold and snowy mountain landscape.
Reyna walks into the building past two armored guards as snow falls gently around them.
Reyna thinks to herself that the Rostin guy has become unexpectedly kind for his character.
Reyna reflects that people only get generous once they are well fed while heading toward her carriage.
Rostin watches Reyna's carriage depart from his window as snow continues to blanket the grounds. Rostin resolves to eliminate the bandits for Reyna's sake as he watches her carriage leave.
Rostin wonders why the nomads who used to settle well in the mountains turned into bandits.
Narrative text poses the question of why the peaceful nomads suddenly chose a life of banditry.
The chapter title and credit page for I Became a Level 999 Mastermind Demon King are displayed. A grand mansion is shown nestled among snow-covered mountain peaks under a bright moon. A man with short hair walks through a dark hallway at night, yawning from exhaustion.
The man pauses in the darkened corridor, noticing something strange that catches his attention.
He wonders why Reyna's bedroom door is standing open as he peeks cautiously inside the room.
Reyna is shown sleeping soundly in her bed, surrounded by a swirling, dark purple energy.
The man is shocked to see a shadowy figure standing over the sleeping Reyna, questioning if it is Trevor. A hand suddenly covers the man's mouth to silence him before he can call out to Reyna. The man's feet are dragged across the floor as he is forcibly taken away into the darkness. A grand white mansion is shown nestled in a snowy valley during the daytime. Kellen wakes up with a sudden panicked gasp, his eyes wide as he sits up in bed. Kellen sits up in bed and wonders what just happened, looking shaken by his vivid dream.
Reyna, disguised in a cap and traveler's attire, yawns while sitting in a carriage in the daytime.
Disguised Reyna feels strangely tired as her carriage finally passes the marker for the western region.
Narrative text describes the grain transport convoy traveling from the Empire's north to the west.
Narrative text reveals that the Demon King Reyna has once again joined the trade convoy. Disguised in a traveler's cap, Reyna explains she is pretending to be an errand boy today. A close-up captures Reyna's determined gaze as she reflects on the bandit scoundrel she's hunting.
Reyna vows to wipe out the bandits if they finally show up during this trip.
Reyna fumes with intense anger, prompting a nervous Rostin to try and calm her down. The convoy successfully reaches the western region, though Reyna remains visibly tense and focused. Narrative text notes that despite their arrival, the bandits once again failed to make an appearance. A hand slams a wooden mug onto the table in frustration, echoing Reyna's inner disappointment. Reyna sits dejectedly at a bar inside a western tavern, her boyish disguise still intact. Reyna stares ahead with a serious expression, deeply contemplating the reasons for the bandits' absence. She considers that there could be three possible reasons why the bandits didn't show up. She imagines the bandits either taking a break or being too full from their previous robberies.
Reyna suspects a traitor among the northern merchants is leaking information about her to the bandits.
Reyna stands up from her seat, her mind racing with potential ways to catch the thieves. A voice from behind comments on Reyna's preoccupied appearance as she ponders her next move. A purple-haired man approaches Reyna at the bar, observing her with a gentle, knowing smile. Reyna is shocked when the man calls her a beautiful lady, realizing her disguise failed completely. Reyna tells the man to leave, but her eyes widen as she recognizes his true identity. The newcomer is identified as the Duke of the West, standing tall and refined. Reyna stammers out the name Temis in disbelief upon realizing she is facing the Duke. The Duke of Temis maintains a serene and friendly expression as he addresses the young woman.
He mentions hearing about her struggles from Duke Wintersnow and addresses her formally as Lady Rubelite. Reyna recalls how difficult it was to convince Rostin to stay behind during her departure.
The Duke shares her concern, wondering why the peaceful nomads suddenly turned into a bandit gang.
A dark-haired man sitting nearby interrupts, claiming the change is due to a gold mine.
The stranger continues eating calmly, seemingly untroubled by the gravity of his sudden revelation.
Reyna demands to know what the man means and asks if he possesses inside information.
She leans in close, questioning the dark-haired man about the specifics of the gold mine.
Narrative text explains that the nomads were only peaceful because they possessed a secret gold mine.
The man explains the nomads secretly mined and sold gold for a living until they lost it.
Reyna and the Duke look stunned as they learn the nomads ultimately lost control of the mine.
Reyna's eyes narrow in confusion and alarm as she asks for clarification on losing it.
She stands up and demands to know how a common traveler could know such sensitive information.
The man ignores her intensity for a moment, focused entirely on finishing his meal. A sudden realization hits Reyna as she stares down the man sitting at the bar. Reyna erupts in purple energy, accusing the man of being in cahoots with the mountain bandits. The sun sets over the quiet exterior of the tavern as tension builds within its walls. Panicked patrons flee the tavern as Reyna begins to shake the building's interior.
Swirls of dark purple magic fill the air as Reyna fully unleashes her intimidating aura.
The dark-haired man begins to sweat, finally identifying the woman standing before him. The man recognizes her as the famous Reyna Rubelite as her power illuminates the room.
Reyna stares him down coldly, asking if he has indeed heard of her reputation.
The man confirms he has heard of her, though he appears remarkably composed under the pressure. He mentions hearing about her ominous black magic and her code of never harming innocent people.
Reyna lifts the man's chin with a mocking gesture, asking if he considers himself an innocent person.
A close-up captures the man's uneasy expression as he faces the overwhelming power of the Demon King. The tavern owner quickly intervenes, begging Reyna to listen before she takes any drastic action.
He identifies the man as Kai and explains he left his nomadic tribe to live peacefully.
Reyna remains surrounded by her swirling energy, staring at Kai as she processes the owner's explanation.
Disguised Reyna explains that the mountain nomads were not always the bandits they are today.
Sitting at the bar with Kai, Reyna asks how the nomads eventually became common bandits. Reyna leans in and sternly demands that Kai reveal everything he knows about the situation.
Sturdy boots step cautiously across the jagged, cracked rocks of a steep mountain path.
Two small figures stand atop a massive towering cliff overlooking a vast mountain range. Reyna recoils in surprise as a sharp, high-pitched sound echoes through the rocky mountain pass. Reyna tries to hide her fear as Kai leads her toward the secret nomadic village.
Kai looks off into the distance with a somber and observant expression on his face.
Kai explains the warning whistles make it impossible for them to venture any deeper into the mountains. Kai reaches out and points toward a specific spot on the distant, lush green mountainside.
Kai identifies a small, dark opening in the distance as the entrance to the gold mine.
Disguised Reyna stares intently toward the distant cave, her eyes narrowed with focus and determination.
Kai explains the tribe mined gold because livestock alone couldn't support their difficult mountain life. Narrative text reveals the mine was suddenly sealed by a mysterious barrier, shocking the listening Reyna. Kai looks down with a heavy heart, mourning the loss of his people's vital livelihood. A massive white stone palace stands silently amidst the frozen peaks of the snowy mountains. Loston listens to the report with a cold, serious gaze, processing the information he received. Narrative text confirms that the priesthood was responsible for placing the barrier on the mine. Reyna and Loston stand in a grand hall, debating the ethics of the nomads' recent crimes.
Loston suggests the nomads should have found honest work, while Kai argues that was impossible.
Kai explains that his people simply could not adapt to life at the mountain's base. Narrative text states that Reyna immediately understood the weight and truth behind Kai's desperate words. A group of villagers stares coldly at a newcomer, illustrating their lack of hospitality. Narrative text notes that Loston's noble birth prevents him from understanding the struggles of commoners.
Reyna surprises Loston by declaring she is taking Kai's side in the ongoing nomad conflict.
Reyna argues it is better to provide a new livelihood than to endlessly punish the thieves. Reyna asks Loston to petition the high priest to return the gold mine to the nomads. Loston looks deeply into Reyna's eyes, stunned by her sudden display of mercy and compassion.
Reyna maintains a resolute and firm expression, signaling her unwavering commitment to helping the tribe.
Kai bows his head in silent gratitude, visibly moved by Reyna's defense of his people. Loston watches Reyna with an intense, searching gaze, trying to understand her recent change. Loston lets out a long, weary sigh as he prepares to fulfill Reyna's difficult request. Loston arrives at the temple where an attendant asks him to wait for the high priest.
Loston sits alone in a chair, his mind occupied by thoughts of Reyna's strange behavior.
Loston reflects on how Reyna has suddenly become unexpectedly lenient toward the mountain bandit tribe.
Reyna and Kai stand together in a soft, glowing light, united by their shared mission. Loston remains deep in thought, his face partially obscured as he waits for the priest.
Loston recalls Reyna's previous fury and wonders why she is now being so remarkably soft.
Loston closes his eyes and touches his forehead, appearing physically exhausted by his own swirling thoughts.
Loston sits isolated in the vast empty temple hall, looking small against the grand architecture. Narrative text poses a pointed question about whether Loston's internal turmoil is actually fueled by jealousy. Loston finally stands before the high priest, who looks down at him with a calm expression. The high priest claims total ignorance regarding the magical barrier placed at the gold mine entrance. Loston walks down the grand temple stairs, appearing frustrated by the lack of useful information. Loston finds it suspicious that the high priest would be completely unaware of such powerful magic. Narrative text questions who else could have climbed the steep mountain to set the magical barrier. Loston pauses mid-step, his eyes widening as he senses a strange presence nearby in the temple. Loston turns his head to look toward a glowing blue light emanating from a garden courtyard. A brilliant, swirling blue light shines from a stone monument, illuminating the surrounding temple gardens. An unseen figure asks Loston if he has ever encountered a magical barrier stone before. Loston stares ahead with a somber expression, deeply absorbed in his own private thoughts. The Southern Duke, George Craft, appears and greets Wintersnout with a calm, practiced smile. George asks if the monument is a barrier stone, prompting Loston to confirm its mystical nature. Loston silently ponders if this artifact is identical to the magical barrier sealing the mountain cave. George mentions that his son has recently been seen in Loston's company, seeking confirmation. Loston hesitates before identifying George's son, Kalen, while a single bead of sweat rolls down his face. In the mansion of the Abyss, Trevor shouts aggressively about nighttime hygiene habits to a servant. Loston looks visibly stressed as he recalls Trevor's explosive personality and total lack of noble refinement. George sighs and refers to his wayward son with a mixture of fondness and deep disappointment.
George explains that Kalen left their home following a specific family incident and never returned.
The Southern Duke requests that Loston deliver a message demanding his son return as the successor.
A massive, ancient stone palace stands tall against the backdrop of a frozen, snow-covered mountain range.
Back at the palace, Reyna questions whether a barrier stone was truly used at the mine.
Loston confirms the theory, but admits they still lack a motive or a specific culprit.
A magical vision shows a purple barrier stone sealing the entrance to the nomad's gold mine. Reyna considers the possibility that someone is trying to monopolize the gold for their own gain.
Reyna declares that if the temple is truly uninvolved, they have every right to destroy it.
Loston suggests they can simply destroy the stone since its origin remains officially unrecognized and unknown. Reyna clarifies that the high priest's ignorance gives them a perfect excuse to shatter the seal. Loston reminds her that the terrain is too steep for them to climb the mountain themselves. Reyna wears a confident and mischievous smirk, indicating she already has a clever solution in mind. Kai stands ready as purple energy begins to coalesce around him during the preparation. Reyna channels her immense power into a blank piece of paper to create a specialized scroll.
A close-up captures Reyna's serene expression as her destructive magic flows effortlessly into the artifact.
Swirls of dark magic bind the energy into the parchment as the ritual nears its completion. The paper glows brightly as the high-level destructive spell is successfully imprinted onto the scroll. The energy fades, leaving behind a finished magical scroll designed to annihilate any spiritual barrier. Reyna presents the completed scroll, explaining its power to the stunned man standing before her. Reyna hands the scroll to Kai, formally asking him to perform a dangerous, high-stakes task. Kai looks at the magical item with a serious expression, fully aware of the responsibility.
Reyna instructs him to travel to the cave and tear the scroll to activate the destruction.
Reyna outlines the distraction plan, involving decoys to lure the mountain bandits away from Kai. She visualizes Kai reaching the mountain's peak and tearing the scroll to shatter the mine's barrier. Kai remains silent, processing the complexity and danger of the plan he has just accepted.
He eventually accepts the mission, promising to carry out the favor for the sake of his people.
Kai admits that the ongoing nomad raids make it impossible for him to live peacefully elsewhere.
Reyna offers a warm, sincere thanks to Kai for agreeing to help her resolve the conflict. A sudden thought strikes Reyna as she realizes one final preparation is needed for Kai's safety.
Reyna takes Kai's hands in hers, her skin beginning to glow with a vibrant purple radiance.
A massive pillar of dark energy erupts around them as Reyna begins an intense magic transfer. Reyna explains that Kai needs a significant amount of mana to successfully activate the powerful scroll. Kai blushes furiously and looks away, overwhelmed by the physical proximity and the surge of power. Loston watches the intimate exchange from a distance, his face darkened by an obvious wave of jealousy. Loston's eyes narrow with irritation as he finds himself unable to tolerate the sight of them together. Narrative text reflects Loston's internal struggle with the casual Reyna treats others with her magic. The narrative explains that while the plan was simple, they underestimated one very important factor. Reyna's true identity as a level 1000 Demon King looms over the success of the mission. The text highlights that magic intended for pure destruction carries far more power than anticipated. Kai stands alone in the forest and tears the scroll, releasing the magic Reyna stored inside. Instead of a small burst, the scroll unleashes a cataclysmic blast that carves a massive trench. The narrative highlights the terrifying and overwhelming scale of the Demon King's destructive magic. A text box explains that the true power was unleashed without any form of restraint. The narrator explains that Reyna accidentally destroyed the entire mine while targeting the barrier. Reyna notes Kai's extreme reaction while Loston considers the destruction a perfectly reasonable response.
Reyna remains silent, her expression suggesting she is deeply absorbed in her own private reflections.
Narrative text questions if the nomads will return to theft after losing their mining livelihood.
A man kneels in the snow before the nobles, his head bowed in deep shame.
The kneeling man appears physically and emotionally broken by the weight of his recent failure.
The man offers his own life as compensation while the nobles watch his desperate display.
Reyna looks on with a mixture of surprise and concern at the man's extreme request.
Narrative text reveals the nomad leader has personally arrived to plead for mercy and forgiveness. The green-haired man explains he personally negotiated with the nomads to secure their cooperation. He details how he leveraged the threat of Reyna's power to force the nomads' hand.
The man explains that the nomads fear Reyna will obliterate their mountain home next.
Reyna realizes her accidental overkill turned her into the neighborhood's most feared demolition expert.
A tight focus on Reyna's eyes captures a moment of intense, wordless realization and planning.
Reyna declares that the farmer's hard work cannot be compensated by a single man's life.
She dismisses the leader's offer of death, emphasizing the true value of the stolen labor.
Reyna asks for confirmation on the total population of the mountain-dwelling nomads under his leadership.
The shackled nomad leader confirms the numbers while guards stand watch over his vulnerable position. Reyna commands the entire tribe to relocate and perform agricultural labor to repay their debts.
The leader clenches his fists in frustration, finding the proposal of forced labor deeply insulting. He looks up with a defiant expression, clearly finding the queen's conditions to be entirely unpalatable.
The leader rejects the deal, demanding that they execute him rather than enslave his people.
Reyna clarifies that this is a fair opportunity for restitution, not a sentence of eternal slavery.
The man continues to beg for death, unwilling to accept the terms of the nomads' relocation.
Reyna and Loston maintain their stern composure, refusing to be swayed by the leader's dramatics.
Reyna closes her eyes, seemingly preparing herself for a more aggressive display of her authority.
Reyna threatens to annihilate the entire mountain if they refuse to comply with her orders.
Narrative text explains that the terrified leader eventually led his entire tribe down the mountain.
The nomads began their new lives by performing heavy labor in the village's storage facilities.
Loston notes that the influx of labor solved the shortage while serving as a legal punishment. Reyna looks satisfied as she enjoys a quiet moment with a warm cup of tea. Loston reflects on the situation, finding the current outcome to be a practical and effective solution. Narrative text acknowledges that while submission was forced, the long-term benefits for society are significant. The text suggests that consistent labor will eventually help the nomads integrate into the local community.
A beautifully prepared dessert sits on the table, representing the temporary peace they have achieved.
Narrative text hints at a brewing conflict, suggesting a fundamental error was made in their judgment.
The Grand Temple stands tall, serving as the setting for the next phase of the conflict. The red-haired Duke George discusses the bandit situation with the blonde high priest over tea. Duke George listens intently, his expression darkening as he processes the information regarding the nomads. George warns that showing mercy to commoners is a mistake he personally regrets making before. A close-up of the high priest shows him calmly drinking his tea, seemingly indifferent to the Duke's malice. A promotional banner provides information about the translation team and their official digital reading platform.
Farmer representatives June and Anne express their profound appreciation for the recent changes in their land.
June reports that the abundant grain fields have significantly improved the standard of living for everyone. June explains that the community made a genuine effort to welcome and integrate the former nomads.
He describes the village's willingness to accept the repentant thieves because of the dire labor shortage.
June details the nomads' total lack of agricultural knowledge, causing significant frustration for the experienced farmers.
He explains that the nomads' stubborn pride has led to frequent physical altercations in the fields.
The brown-haired man expresses his deep frustration and exhaustion with the current state of affairs.
He feels as though the innocent are being unfairly punished for the crimes of thieves.
Reyna stares out at the frozen landscape, contemplating the failure of her nomad integration plan.
She reflects on her hope that the nomads would eventually blend into northern society.
The nomads maintain isolation, clinging to their traditional diet, clothing, and exclusive communal lifestyle. They stubbornly refuse to adopt the local culture, insisting solely on practicing their traditional ways. A villager attempts to engage with a nomad outside a modest, snowy log cabin.
The nomad cold shoulders the villager, retreating into his home and shutting the door.
June reports to Reyna that the nomads are refusing any form of meaningful communication. Reyna realizes that the escalating tensions between the groups will inevitably lead to more conflict.
A panicked guard rushes through the palace corridors to deliver urgent news to Reyna.
Reyna is incredulous as she receives an urgent report about a new wave of thefts.
She questions how thefts are possible when the known bandits have already been relocated. A grim realization dawns as the true nature of the situation begins to emerge.
With the original tribe relocated, a new group of nomads has occupied the empty mountains.
The new arrivals have immediately turned to theft, restarting the cycle of mountain lawlessness.
Reyna clutches her head, overwhelmed by the cascading failures of her humanitarian efforts.
She struggles to manage the uncooperative relocated nomads while facing a new criminal threat.
Reyna stands alone in her chambers, feeling that her entire social plan is in shambles.
The grand architecture of the northern capital stands indifferent to the growing social unrest. She considers if she relied too heavily on the overwhelming power of a demon king.
Reyna wonders if her habit of solving problems with magic has finally backfired on her.
A nomad leader kneels in the snow, a broken figure pleading for a final end. He begs Reyna to execute him rather than force his people to live in exile.
Reyna looks on with a heavy heart, her red eyes reflecting her deep internal conflict.
The nomads appear tired and displaced, struggling to survive in a land they don't understand.
Reyna admits to herself that she became complacent. Assimilation would be an easy process.
Loston watches Reyna, his calm gaze offering a silent anchor during her moment of doubt. She compares her current feeling of helplessness to her past isolation in a locked room.
In a dark memory, Reyna recalls a time when she felt like a useless burden. The silence of the room underscores Reyna's deep introspection as she sits alone.
Reyna questions if her reliance on raw power is the root of the current disaster.
Loston focuses on Reyna, preparing to challenge her self-deprecating thoughts with a new perspective.
Loston refutes her doubts, stepping forward to offer his support and clarity on the situation.
He approaches Reyna with purposeful strides, his presence filling the quiet, intense room.
Loston reminds her that she acted with compassion to secure a better future for them.
Reyna looks at him, surprised by his unwavering belief in her intentions and leadership.
Loston joins her, explaining that her actions were guided by more than just brute force. He encourages her to reassess the problem, confident that her wisdom will find a solution.
Reyna stares at Loston, visibly moved by his words and his sudden physical proximity.
Loston emphasizes that her true strength lies in her character, not just her destructive magic.
He offers a gentle, reassuring smile, affirming his total confidence in her many capabilities.
A close focus on Reyna's eyes captures her transition from despair to quiet hope. Loston gazes at her with warmth, providing the emotional support she desperately needed.
The intimate atmosphere deepens as Loston leans closer, his eyes fixed intently on hers. Reyna's hand suddenly moves with aggressive speed, grabbing Loston by his clothing.
Reyna angrily accuses Loston of slacking off and dumping all the administrative work on her.
Reyna surveys the vast, snowy valley below, her focus shifting toward a new strategic plan.
She resolves to move past her self-doubt and actively tackle the complex social crisis.
Reyna determines to launch a thorough investigation into the root causes of the nomad conflict.
The Grand Eastern Palace hosts a lavish feast to celebrate their honored guest's arrival. A platter of perfectly roasted chicken glitters under the lights, appearing remarkably delicious. The blonde woman enjoys the meal, praising the East as a bountiful and sweet land. Duke George insists that the Saintess must be treated with the highest degree of respect.
George claims the Saintess is the only one who can save the world from the Demon King.
He asks the Saintess to help the kingdom by addressing the issue of the Eastern Labyrinths.
The blonde Saintess smilingly agrees, stating that such tasks are part of her natural obligations. George expresses his relief while the Saintess questions why he was concerned about the North.
She asks if the North is already well guarded by Reyna and Duke Wintersaw.
Duke George slams his hands on the table in a sudden, violent burst of anger.
He stands up and shouts that Duke Wintersnow has been completely deceived by Reyna.
The blonde Saintess looks up with an expression of deep confusion and sudden concern.
George continues his tirade, claiming that Reyna has somehow managed to manipulate the Saintess as well.
Duke George declares that Reyna's true identity is actually that of the ruthless Demon King.
Memories show Reyna allegedly kidnapping farmers and enslaving nomadic tribes for her own purposes.
The blonde woman looks horrified as she processes the Duke's accusations against her friend.
An old game cover on a tablet confirms Reyna's appearance was indeed very Demon King-like.
A tight focus on the Saintess shows her struggle to reconcile George's words with reality.
She sits alone in contemplation, softly whispering Reyna's name while feeling a sense of betrayal.
Dark Text Against a Void asks if Reyna was truly the Demon King all along. A heavy garden tool strikes the hard earth, signaling a shift to the labor fields.
A group of workers toils in a barren landscape under the watchful eye of gods.
A silver-haired youth in a cap sweats while performing heavy labor in the freezing cold.
Narrative text reveals that Reyna disguised herself to investigate the nomads' current living conditions personally.
A close-up of Reyna's red eye under the cap highlights her intense, secret observation. She watches the nomads gather for a midday prayer, noting the deep somberness of their ritual.
An elderly nomad woman prays with closed eyes, begging for escape from their current hell.
The nomads beg to return home, leaving the disguised Reyna shocked by their extreme misery.
The scene shifts back to the palace as snow falls over the grand northern architecture. Back in her true form, Reyna listens as her advisor explains the nomads' pastoral history. Flashbacks show how a disease killed their livestock, leading them to discover a hidden gold mine.
The advisor explains that the tribe viewed the gold mine as a gift from their god.
He describes how being forced from the mountain feels like being abandoned by their deity.
Reyna clutches her head, frustrated that her plan for integration is being viewed so negatively.
The advisor notes that the nomads became fierce warriors specifically to protect their mountain's treasures.
Reyna realizes that their departure allowed new bandits to move into the now empty mountain range.
Her red eyes narrow with a sudden spark of inspiration as a new plan forms.
Reyna decides to send the nomads back to the mountain, confusing her green-haired advisor. She explains that the tribe needs a role that actually suits their combative, territorial nature. Reyna looks toward the distant peaks, resolved to return the nomads to their ancestral home. Duke Loston questions if she intends to turn the former bandits into the mountain's police.
Reyna sips her tea, arguing that guarding the mountain is a better fit than farming.
She explains that the plan relies on earning the tribe's trust rather than just giving orders. Loston watches her with curiosity, wondering how she expects to gain the trust of thieves.
Surrounded by a dark aura, Reyna declares her intention to become the nomad's new god.
The scene shifts to the modest log cabins where the nomadic tribes are currently residing.
A nomad woman steps out of her home, heading toward the well to fetch water. She approaches the wooden well in the quiet, snowy yard of the residential area. A majestic, glowing white goat suddenly appears from the misty woods, looking directly at her.
The woman freezes in shock, unable to believe her eyes as she sees the sacred animal.
The nomad woman remains frozen in awe, staring at the majestic, glowing white goat.
A close focus captures the serene and otherworldly appearance of the sacred white animal.
The nomad woman gazes at the creature, her thoughts beginning to race with wonder. She thinks to herself that it is almost like a sign.
As the goat stands on a small rise, the woman wonders if the animal is beckoning for them to follow its path.
The sacred goat turns and begins to walk away, its hooves crunching softly against the snow.
A nomad takes a decisive first step forward, following the path set by the mysterious animal. The woman peeks through the brush and encourages the others to follow, urging them to move forward together as a group.
She walks alone through the deep forest, determined to see where the sacred goat leads.
A sudden explosion of dark purple energy swirls violently in the middle of the snowy woods.
The dark energy solidifies into a massive, twisted pillar that looms over the quiet winter landscape.
Tendrils of shadowy power creep across the frozen ground, emanating from the base of the pillar.
The nomad woman stands before the towering energy structure, completely dwarfed by its massive, ominous presence.
She slowly reaches out her hand, hesitating as she prepares to touch the dark, textured surface.
Bright pinkish-purple runes begin to glow on the surface, revealing a hidden message left behind.
The glowing text reveals a promise that if they return to this place every night, a messiah will appear to guide them home.
The nomad woman is visibly shaken by the discovery, gasping as she realizes she has witnessed a divine revelation intended for her people.
She returns to the settlement and gathers the tribe, standing before them to deliver the news.
The woman announces that a revelation has descended and tells the gathered crowd that God has finally heard their desperate pleas.
Under the light of the full moon, the message is delivered that they must all move together quietly that very night.
A line of nomads moves through the dark forest, their boots sinking deep into the cold snow. The entire tribe follows the woman through the woods, heading toward the site of the revelation.
The lead nomads stop in their tracks, overwhelmed by shock. One of them whispers that what they are seeing simply cannot be real.
An incredibly ornate and glowing golden carriage waits for them in a small, moonlit forest clearing.
The nomads marvel at the sight of a golden carriage in such a remote place, seeing it as proof that the revelation was entirely true. The group stares ahead with wide eyes, their faces illuminated by a strange, flickering light. They agree that the sign was indeed real.
A close-up shows a pale hand holding a string of prayer beads. A thought bubble indicates an intent to see how things proceed.
Reyna appears in a masked, horned disguise, surrounded by swirling purple flames. She expresses her excitement that everyone arrived without exception.
A tight focus on the horned mask highlights its intricate jewelry and the dark, empty eye sockets. Two nomads look on with expressions of pure terror, sweat beads rolling down their tense, shadowed faces.
Sitting atop the golden carriage, Reyna watches as a trembling nomad asks if she is truly the messiah they have been waiting for.
The masked figure looks down and confirms the nomad's question, stating simply that the man is correct.
She promises to place them in the golden carriage and return them to the sacred mountain. The nomads respond with whispers of, "Oh, dear heavens," in awe.
As the nomads begin to kneel, the masked figure stops them by stating that there is one final condition to her offer.
She snaps her fingers and a spark of purple magic ignites in the air. She declares that they must meet a specific requirement first.
A massive wall of purple and black flames erupts suddenly, blocking the path to the carriage.
The Tower of Darkfire roars toward the sky, illuminating the forest with an eerie glow.
A nomad recoils in fear, shielding his face as he gasps at the sudden intensity of the flames. The tribesmen look on in horror, questioning why a wall of flames has appeared to block their path to salvation. Reyna explains that only those who sincerely repent for their past thefts and swear never to steal again will be worthy. She declares that only the repentant will be able to pass through the magical flames and board the golden carriage.
The nomads look at the wall of fire with deep uncertainty, clearly weighing their past actions and future intentions. The nomad woman looks down thoughtfully, contemplating her own worthiness before the terrifying test of fire.
A nomad takes a brave step forward, his boot making a crisp sound in the snow.
He throws caution to the wind and sprints headlong into the roaring wall of purple and black fire.
The nomad woman watches with wide eyes, shocked to see someone actually attempt the dangerous crossing.
A close-up of the masked figure reveals a subtle, knowing smirk behind the wooden facial covering.
The remaining nomads watch with intense focus, their faces filled with a mix of fear, hope, and determination.
A man leaps through the center of the flames, his silhouette disappearing into the magical fire.
On the other side of the wall, the nomads celebrate their success. One shouts that they made it, while another notes the fire wasn't hot at all.
One man remains behind in the snow, looking conflicted as he watches his companions successfully cross the boundary.
The conflicted nomad watches his companions pass through the flames, his expression full of doubt.
He begins to run through the snowy woods, moving away from the sight of the carriage.
Suddenly, he is thrown back by a searing heat, crying out as the magic wards repel him.
The masked figure points at him, declaring that his lack of repentance makes him a scoundrel.
He collapses into the snow, apologizing profusely for his past sins while terrified by the divine judgment. The other nomads watch with glowing eyes, realizing the gravity of angered divinity and their own luck. They pin the man down, offering to sacrifice him as a token of atonement to appease her.
The masked figure is momentarily stunned by the nomad's sudden and violent shift toward bloodthirsty sacrifice.
Reyna is overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events as the situation spiraled far beyond her control.
The man pleads for his life as his fellow tribesmen hold him firmly against the cold ground.
A nomad raises a sharp blade, prepared to execute his comrade to prove their loyalty to God.
A voice calls out to stop the execution just as the silver-haired nomad prepares to strike.
A flurry of purple sparks erupts near the hem of the masked figure's ornate white gown. The masked figure stands motionless, surrounded by swirls of dark, crackling energy in the moonlit forest.
A moment of tense silence follows as the magical flames flicker around the mysterious masked figure. The masked figure reflects on the terrible cost of a lie that endangers a person's life.
Her red eyes gleam through the mask as she admits there are things she cannot say.
The tribe stops their assault and gasps in recognition as they realize Lady Reyna is present.
Several nomads whisper among themselves, looking puzzled and slightly fearful of the unfolding scene.
The nomad woman asks with deep uncertainty if the noble lady was actually a god. Reyna quickly corrects the misunderstanding, stating clearly that she is not a divine being.
The woman is bewildered, questioning the origin of the divine revelation they all witnessed earlier.
A majestic white goat stands behind a tree as Reyna explains her method for creating miracles. Bai is revealed as the operator behind the mechanical goat, exposing the trickery used on the tribe.
A young nomad boy stands close to his mother, looking saddened by the loss of divinity.
Reyna confesses to the deception and offers a sincere apology to the entire gathered nomadic tribe.
A silver-haired youth asks if the promise to return them to the mountains was also false.
Reyna assures him that her intent to return them home remains genuine despite the initial ruse. She shows an image of the mountain pass, highlighting the importance of trade for the northern region. Reyna explains her original thought process regarding relocating the tribe to solve the local bandit issue. She admits her plan backfired as another tribe moved in and began raiding the trade routes.
The nomads identify the new threats as the Manuka tribe, confirming the mountain is no longer empty.
Reyna praises the Northerners' hard work and expresses her desire to secure better resources for them. Looking toward the tribe, Reyna announces that she has a specific proposal for their future together.
She explains that their unique history and skills make them the most suitable candidates for a task.
Reyna invites the former bandits to become the official mountain police force, startling the gathered tribe members.
She encourages them to use their raiding skills to protect northern merchants and their valuable goods.
Reyna clarifies that the role is a professional job and she does not expect free service.
She promises a significant signing bonus to any member of the tribe who accepts the new position.
The nomads break out into excited chatter, shocked by the generous offer of 1,000 coins.
A close-up focus highlights the intensity of Reyna's red eyes as she awaits the group's reaction. She wears a confident, knowing smile as she observes the tribe beginning to accept her terms.
The elder nomad looks at her with new respect, remarking that she truly acts like a messiah.
He approaches her to discuss the details of the proposal that will return them to power.
The elder nomad stands in profile, his expression thoughtful as he considers the tribe's new path.
Reyna smiles softly in profile, satisfied that her complex plan to integrate the tribe is working.
The majestic mountain range stands tall under the bright blue sky, reclaimed and newly protected.
A supply wagon travels safely along the mountain road, marking the beginning of the new era.
Sentinels stand guard on the high cliffs, ensuring the security of the pass for all merchants.
The nomadic tribe begins their transition from fearsome raiders to the mountain's most dedicated protectors. The brown-haired youth looks back cautiously while steering a wagon through the lush mountain forest.
He raises a hand in farewell, looking back toward the high peaks as he departs.
A long line of wagons travels the pass, marking the nomadic tribe's return home.
The tribesmen cheer with raised fists, celebrating their successful transition into their new guardian roles.
A single fist is held high against the mountain backdrop as a symbol of their resolve. The attendant addresses Reyna, informing her that a letter has arrived from Noel Temis. Reyna accepts the envelope while questioning why the Duke of the West has sent her mail.
Noel expresses joy over northern trade and invites both of them to a commemorative party.
Reyna's intense red eyes narrow as she processes the unexpected social invitation from the Western Duke.
Reyna mentions her exhaustion and need for rest, but her attendant insists on sharing one more detail.
A magnificent, glowing golden tiara is revealed as the special gift mentioned in the Duke's letter.
A shocked exclamation highlights that the legendary Tears of the Desert has finally been revealed.